5,000 years ago, Erebos, the primordial evil, almost wiped out humanity. 4 heroes stood up to him, but only one survived. Kyle, the last human hero. Luna, with the sacrifice of his comrades, defeated the darkness but was doomed to be forgotten. The story got twisted and now everyone thinks Luna was the one who beat Erebos. Reborn in the present era, Kyle finds out his name was erased from history. The story kicks off at Dylan's royal school. The teacher was grabbing everyone's attention, saying they're living in the era of heroes right now. It's been 5,000 years since the first hero showed up in this world. The underworld has changed a lot since then, and Dylan's royal school, for example, was picked to host the entrance exam to Lumenia. The teacher said he had no doubt that every student in front of him had mad potential to become heroes. He was hyped. Until he noticed one student was straight up snoozing and said, "Pay attention, dude." He called out that student Leo and started roasting him, saying he should already know all the course material for such an important class. And right then Leo was asleep, so the teacher hit him with a question. "By any chance do you know how heroes did their rituals 5,000 years ago to actually be called heroes?" Leo slowly got up and said, "Well, if the person was famous, it didn't really matter much." This is Leo, 15 years old, plop. The teacher told him obviously that was wrong and asked if anyone wanted to answer correctly. Then, the student next to Leo raised his hand and said that back in the day, heroes were recognized by the gods. Only sacred rituals were used to pick heroes. One of the first was the blood ritual. The teacher said, "Excellent, this student nailed it." And added as expected from him, Julian, the top mage genius of this kingdom. His name was Julian Tratton. The teacher kept hyping him up nonstop. Julian acted all superior around Leo. But Leo didn't care one bit. He thought finding gods back then was a piece of cake. The ritual was useless, he thought. It was explained that a miracle was granted to the underworld to honor the great heroes who faced Erebos. The hero records. Leo wondered why he was the only one not pictured there. The record revealed that this guy Leo is the reincarnation of the great hero Kyle, who as you can see now was completely forgotten by time. At that moment, the students got distracted by something big outside, seemed like VIPs, especially a heroine right in the middle of it all. Then, a message from the school told the students to gather in the auditorium for a mandatory assembly, because the school was getting a visit from the Serdinger clan. Julian asked, "Hey Leo, you gonna try to get the Serdingers' attention?" "Why would they care about me?" Leo replied, not even standing up because he was heading home. Unlike them, he had zero interest in that kind of stuff. Julian got mad, saying he didn't care either. Later, Leo was training. There was a sword on the ground, but it looked like he was training with a long stick. Leo thought part of what he was doing was some serious responsible training. But his body didn't seem to hold up much, especially compared to his past life's body, until someone asked what he was thinking so hard. It was a woman who came up with a real sword, not even wooden. Leo desperately defended himself and asked, "You ambushing me like that?" The woman said it'd been a long time since they had a duel, and that mediocre talent wasn't enough to get into Lumenia. She told him this would be Leo's final test, then charged again with mad ferocity. He didn't expect it. The woman asked, "You ever gonna get a little stronger or what?" Leo had to back off or it'd go south real quick. He was already wiped out. Leo said she wasn't showing much love like a mom, right? The mom replied, "You say that, but you're blocking everything." This time she was really fast and Leo realized maybe she was going a bit too hard. He wondered, can Leo dodge this? Leo almost made it, but part of his hair got ripped out, so he took that chance. He managed to take down his mom and make her surrender, winning the duel. He asked, "You good mom?" Leo's mom wondered how far this kid had come with his training, then got up, cleaned his clothes, and asked if he really wanted to go to Lumenia. She explained that it was the biggest human hero academy. Among the academies of the 4 races registered in the hero records, this was the one Leo believed he could find more clues about his past. Leo said, "Of course I want to go." Leo's mom told him that the Sutherlands passed through Dylan's royal school and that they'd be staying at their mansion here. This caught Leo a bit off guard. Actually, his mom said she'd take the chance to ask a small favor. Maybe Louise, her friend, could teach Leo the Serdinger aura technique. So he'd definitely pass in Lumenia. Leo thought Serdinger aura, huh? But sighed, thinking he'd get in. This year, not next. Later at the mansion, a girl got off the carriage and thought, "Why does my uncle want to stay here so bad? With the money and respect they have, they could rent out a whole hotel just for themselves." This is Celia Sutherland, also 15 like Leo. Celia thought she wanted to focus on the Lumenia exam. But why come to such a small family like this? Until the man approached and asked if she wasn't curious to see what Leo was like. He was the only one who said he wasn't interested in the Serdinger clan. This is Louis Serdinger, the sub-patriarch of the Serdinger clan, but Celia said he couldn't even use aura yet, and probably wasn't that impressive. Louise chuckled a bit and said, "Well, I don't think that's true, no." Later at the mansion, the Serdinger clan was received, and Louise said it was an honor to see Lady Reina again. Leo's parents were there. She was Reina Plop, his mom, and his dad, Mr. Date Plop, the matriarch and patriarch of the Plop house. Louise told Celia to introduce herself too, and she introduced herself as Celia Serdinger, the sword princess of the Serdinger, thanking them for opening their home to them. During that next week, Reina shook her hand and said it was a pleasure to meet her. Celia was surprised she took the initiative. Before the men and paused for a moment thinking, "Black hair, red eyes, are they related by chance?" Louise said, "Ah yeah, that's right. I forgot to mention Reina Plop is your aunt." Later, with servants running around, a conversation developed over tea. They talked about visiting the royal school where the students were totally chaotic, but Luis told his friend it seemed like Leo wasn't scared of anything, not even worried. Reina said that must have been a huge blow to the Serdinger ego, right? She apologized if her son's behavior was a bit disrespectful, but said he didn't mean it. Naturally, he's not interested in many things. Luis asked what kind of kid Leo really was, while Reina tried to think what to say. Leo and Celia were dueling outside, and Reina said he had incredible talent, but Luis asked a serious question: if she really believed Leo was worthy enough to inherit the Serdinger flames. Reina said she wasn't just saying it because he was her son, but because he truly was worthy. Luis commented that with her talking like that, she was making him really interested in Leo, but added that he himself would still put that kid to the test. Meanwhile, Leo had finished the race with Celia outside. While she was all scared, he was calm with a smile on his face. Later, he meditated and focused his power. He was surprised by something. It seemed he finally reached the power level he'd been craving. He completed something that could hold everything he wanted. He thought the reason he hadn't learned to use his aura yet was because the moment you accept your aura, your body naturally starts adapting to it, and you lose the chance to stack more mana and soul energy. If in his past life he'd taken that chance, he wouldn't have let that disaster happen. So now he was going to change that. At that moment, Celia called him. They stared at each other for a moment, and Celia said he seemed to have good control over basic powers. She added she could guide him, especially in swordsmanship, asking what he thought. But Leo asked, "Who the hell are you?" She introduced herself as Celia Sutherland and said the world called her the Sword Princess. So Leo got up and was like, "All right, cool." Thanked her for noticing and all that, but said he wasn't really interested in learning anything from her. No, she asked if he thought he was stronger than her, and Leo said that in a deathmatch he'd probably be stronger. That was even though he still couldn't use his aura, but in a fair duel, that was a whole different story. Celia looked over and saw a sword behind her. She grabbed it and said, "All right, if you're so confident, why don't we face off?" Leo thought if he believed he'd get stronger by learning her aura, she'd give him a reality check. Celia said if he beat her, he'd become her servant while he was in that house. Leo asked, "And if I win?" Celia replied it'd be the other way around, she'd be his servant. Then Leo grabbed his wooden sword and asked, "All right, we good, let's start." He charged with crazy speed and she didn't expect it, but she managed to block it. He thought that hit was strong, but not strong enough. But Leo's eyes were literally covered in blood as he started putting mad pressure on Celia in the fight. She wondered, what kind of strength is this? This dude ain't normal, and she was forced to doubt herself. Otherwise, she'd have taken that hit and dropped right there. But Leo didn't even give her time to breathe, and she thought she couldn't block the next attack. Then when Leo landed the hit, he asked, "Oh, you covered yourself with aura armor. Wasn't this supposed to be a clean fight?" Celia said it was just a reflex that she actually protected her body with an aura barrier. But Leo shot back, "Doesn't matter, I'm still gonna win." Celia was already pissed and said, "Do you even know what you're talking about? You don't even know the difference between an aura user and someone who can't use it?" Leo replied, "Well, why don't we put that to the test?" He threw the magical weight bracelets on the ground. To sum it up for Naruto fans, they're like Rock Lee's weights. Then he smirked slightly with his body feeling super light, and started hitting her aura armor like it was a piece of bread. Celia, already feeling huge pressure with her broken sword, wondered, what the hell is this? Meanwhile, Reina and Luis were walking nearby, and Reina asked, "Yo, what about Leo?" She told him to introduce himself to Luis, who was their big guest, so Leo introduced himself, politely like Leo Plop, and Willie said, "All right, you probably already know, but this is Willie Serdinger, his uncle." They shook hands and Reina asked Leo, "By the way, do you know where Celia is?" Leo looked back and said, "Well, she was being carried on a stretcher." The staff asked what happened, then Luis came over and asked what went down. After hearing everything, Luis wondered if Leo really beat her without using aura. He approached and said, "Defeating Celia is pretty impressive." But Leo said she underestimated him, and Luis, who already knew Celia, asked, "All right, what bet did you make this time, Leo?" Said the loser would become the other's servant and said, "Well, she's gonna be my servant for the next week." Wiz commented that keeping your word is super important, but since she's from the Serdinger house, you can't just do that with her. Luis said since he's gonna break his promise, he'd give a reward instead, but Leo refused and said that'd be her punishment for losing. She has to take responsibility for what she did right. So Luis asked even if the reward was that he'd teach Leo to use the Serdinger aura. Leo replied that aura taught like that just so his niece wouldn't get humiliated. Shouldn't be worth that much, right? Luigi looked pretty annoyed with Leo and said he just declared he's gonna make a direct descendant of the Serdingers his servant, and also said Laura Serdinger isn't worth it. "Is that right?" Leo answered, "Exactly that." Wiz asked, "Don't you think he's being reckless?" Leo said it wasn't his intention to insult him, adding that if the reward was for beating Celia, he'd have accepted it, but not just to avoid her being humiliated. It's like they don't want to accept their loss. He added that it seems Luis thinks if she hadn't let her guard down, she wouldn't have lost. However, Leo said Luis's thinking is wrong because even if she'd used all her power, she still would have lost. Leo says Luis's thought is straight up wrong because even if she had used all her power, Luis still would have lost. He thinks Leo turned down the offer because of how it was presented. Dude's seriously one of a kind. And he wonders what if the Sutherland kids were like that. Then Wiz calls the guards and says send Celia to the maid's quarters. Everyone's obviously shook. Then Wiz speaks up again, saying that in times like this when it's unofficial, Leo can feel chill calling him uncle, and Leo replies, "Yeah, uncle." Later they say their goodbyes. Wiz talks to his sister Reina and reminds her that she had asked him before to show the aura to Leo, right? And he says he can convince him to learn something else with him, the phoenix's breath. Later in Leo's room, Celia was there, introducing herself as his personal maid for the upcoming week, already in uniform. Then Leo, seeing her, says the outfit fits her pretty well, like who would have thought she'd look so good in that kind of outfit, and Celia replies she knows she's pretty but there's no need to talk to her like that. Leo says he didn't mean to make fun of her looks, sorry, and mentions he had a friend who really valued beauty, even if sometimes his habits were pretty annoying. Then he remembers what his dear friend used to say, the beauty of eternity is unmatched. If peace ever returns to this world, I'll dedicate the rest of my life to spreading beauty all over. The protagonist thinks the problem was that he was too honest and his friend was talking to two girls. And even though one of them was aggressive, Lisanas was more beautiful than any other woman, and Luna no doubt. He said that for the sake of art, they could pose naked for him. Obviously the answer was a brutal beating. But meanwhile, in reality, outside Leo's thoughts, Celia asks what kind of book he's reading, and Leo says it's a story he used to read a lot, The Great Hero of the Beginning. And Celia thinks, wow, a fairy tale I read when I was 5, and keeps thinking this guy is really weird. Then she goes to her bookshelf and comments she really likes that story. She says an investigator of the great hero shouldn't even be compared to him, but Leo replies it's just a collection. However, Celia says it's really worth reading so many books about the great heroes at the start of everything, but she wonders why there are so many books about Kyle, and Leo explains that among all the things the heroes did, many are hard to assign to a specific hero. So Leo says those kinds of achievements should go to Kyle, but Celia says that Kyle must have been just a fraud who tried to steal the fame of the real heroes, and Leo asks Kyle, and Celia replies that's what everyone thinks. And of course she believes it too. Leo silently wonders, oh, so that's what everyone thinks of me. Then Leo stands up and says, let's grab some coffee and train. Celia asks if she can really train with him, but deep down she's thinking, I'll discover the secret to his strength. But Leo warns her if she trains with him, she won't be able to keep up. She says it's fine, and of course she feels offended, but later she couldn't keep standing. Leo explains that when her stamina runs out, when she hits her limit, her reflexes slow down and she has a lot of openings in her moves, and when that happens, she drops her guard, and what we already know happens. Celia asks, abusing. Your own body like that is good for training, you really do this every day, and Leo says this generation is super weak. Leo thinks that compared to the past, aura techniques have improved a lot, but that just made people more careless with their own bodies. Aura improves. Body strength, but 0 times 1000 is still 0. Then Celia, all shaky, yells, what are you calling me weak? Leo thinks if you train your body, your aura also improves, so at that moment, Celia gets up again and yells at him, don't underestimate me, damn white hair. Then she charges, but Leo just throws a punch and knocks her down again. She falls like a staggering deer. Leo approaches her while she's super mad and says, tough, huh? And he hands her a magic bracelet, but when she takes it, it sinks from the weight. Leo says she'll wear it during training starting tomorrow. Later outside, Celia was getting wrecked again, but Wiz thought this would be a good experience for her before going to Luminia. She needs to let go of some ego and pride. Luis was also watching Leo closely, who was standing firm up front. He approaches, super chill, and tells him she was thinking maybe she could teach him the Phoenix Breath. What he thinks about that leaves Leo super interested. He thinks the Phoenix Breath is the origin of all the family's powers. Serdinga remembers hearing that only people chosen and recognized by the family can use it. Celia says Leo won't get accepted that easily, but Wiz says that's why there's a catch. He has to pass the entrance exam to Luminia. Celia says that's a big deal, super hard. She adds that the guy can't even use aura, so it's gonna be really dangerous for him, but Leo just smiles and replies, I don't really have combat experience, though. In his mind he remembers his past life, where he had tons of experience, and thinks what she said is true too. In this life, Willie asks what he thinks about that condition. And Leo answers, what about my parents? Luis replies, considering they'll leave, of course. Leo says, alright, I'll do it. Then Luis smiles with some pride, thinking this dude already planned to take that exam this year. Leo turns to Celia and says, alright, now rest up. A week later, the day of the Luminia entrance exam arrives, and everyone's shook to see Celia there. Obviously, she's the center of attention. She asks Leo, so young master, you nervous? And he replies, not really. But then he asks, what was that tone? As she gets super nervous until someone calls her attention. Turns out it's Julian, who's shook seeing Leo next to him. Julian asks what he's doing there if he doesn't even have aura. He also asks how Celia is there, but both ignore him. Julian introduces himself again as Julian Trayton, saying they already met that day at school. They know he's called the Great Magic Genius. Celia says she doesn't remember then, grabs Leo's hand and leaves him hanging until someone else calls Celia. This time she looks a bit more surprised. It's Abbat Ligolin and Chelsea Ligolin. Abbat says it's been a long time, and Leo asks Celia who those are. She tells him they're the Ligolin siblings, same bloodline as the heroes of the Order Empire. But Celia doesn't seem to like them much, not because she says if they enter the path they can't lose to them. The Serdinger clan will never lose to the Ligolin family, but Leo says he's from the Plop family. Meanwhile, the brothers stand there looking imposing and handsome. Celia comments, yeah, it's been a long time. Then Abbat asks, who's that guy next to you? Celia replies, he's Leo from the Plop House, a noble family from Dylan Kingdom. Abbat says so he's a small fish. Leo frowns for a sec, but Abad turns to his sister and says first place is definitely ours. Celia mutters those guys are so arrogant and she's gonna make sure to end their run. At that moment, the person who seems to be running the whole thing shows up saying everyone's gathered. It's Alvillaron, professor at Lumina Academy. Celia, knowing everyone, is obviously impressed. But Leo, knowing no one, asks who that dude is. Celia, surprised, says seriously, you don't know him, Albie's a registered hero in the hero registry. Leo thinks, oh, so in this era they call them heroes. Then he looks closer at Albie and notices a very weird mana in his left eye. Albie starts explaining how the test will work, challenges will be one-on-one duels, and also monster subjugation. Each person gets their turn, but Albie says that's boring. So he just burns the paper with the valid list, then looks at everyone. Grabs the book and opens the hero registry. Albie's world opens the prologue chapter, The Wild Forest. The whole place starts getting invaded by magic. A magic circle that transforms everything into Albie's world. While she's totally desperate, Albie declares he hates inefficiency, so he's gonna combine all the challenges into one. Leo watches closely, remembering his master taught him the hero registry isn't just a book, it actually holds real value. A power that manifests the hero's world and contains past experiences of that hero. Also, when someone enters that world, they can inherit the power of a previous hero. Leo thinks, so this is a training method for heroes. Then he squints because of the light that appears. All the students were now in the wild forest. The hero world from the outside, Albie says his goal is simple, survive, they can join or eliminate each other. Do whatever it takes to survive, and whoever wants to quit the test can break the orb in their hands to return, so the challenge begins. Leo looks at this environment, this forest, and thinks nothing has changed. He remembers it used to be the home of the elves, before being corrupted by the witch queen and Latina until someone yells, "This is too much," and breaks their orb. But others say this is just an illusion. How pathetic, Leo exclaims. However, he thinks that's a mistake. This world comes from Albie's memories. Everything that happens here is real. And even the deadly stuff here could actually kill in real life. Suddenly a spear almost hits Leo. It was thrown by someone approaching, not exactly an enemy, yes, but it was another student, Chelsea Legolin. She says it'd be sick to take someone out from the Serdinger clan. Leo replies again, I'm a plop, but Chelsea says she was on Celia's side. Then she summons her wind scythe. Leo thinks that spell didn't exist before, but the basics haven't changed. He draws his sword and Chelsea smiles slightly, asking if he's still so chill. Then she starts spinning her scythe and launches a full-speed attack at Leo, but he dodges easily. Chelsea watches and thinks he blocked that so easily, huh? I didn't even see his aura. Is his aura that hard to detect? Leo sighs and says the attack was too simple. Isn't it easier if we team up? Whoever survives longer gets more points as a mage. You don't need to pass at least one test. But Chelsea laughs and says unfortunately, she's a super annoying battle mage. She asks if her attack seems simple. Leo answers, well, for wind magic it was too straightforward, compared to the power you could have. Yeah, it was pretty simple. Chelsea snaps, furious. How dare he wants to teach me magic? I'm a direct descendant of the Legoland. Then she grabs her staff and says she'll crush him with that simple power. She starts casting multiple wind spells, but when she realizes Leo's not there, she can barely feel any trace of mana from him. And then he suddenly appears with a direct hit a moment after her scream. We see her scythe and staff flying. She falls to her knees. Leo repeats the offer, what if we team up? Meanwhile, people watched from outside, and when the broadcast finally started, what appeared was Chelsea tied to a post, while Leo lit a campfire with a small smile on his face already at night when it was completely dark. The fire was way bigger. Chelsea woke up from the heat and realizing the situation panicked. Leo asked again if she'd cooperate with him or not. Chelsea said she never would, that she only needed her brother. She tried to cast another wind spell, but apparently something blocked it. Leo explained it was a magic restraint spell. However, he didn't think it'd last long since there was a huge amount of mana in that body. Chelsea claimed she could get out without magic. But Leo questioned if she really thought he'd let her focus on that. Then he started untying her, making her fall against the post, and closer to the fire her dress started to catch fire. Chelsea, desperate, agreed to cooperate, but Leo asked her to swear on her mother's name on her family. Chelsea swore on her family's name, promising to cooperate once fully untied. She immediately fell, but Leo caught her in his lap and introduced himself, saying nice to meet you, referring to her as a Legoland mage. While all this happened in Lumania, they watched what was going on in the tests. The professor thought everyone followed the same pattern, choosing to fight each other. To him, they were a bunch of idiots. Only two people went straight to the point, Celia Serdinger and Abad Llewellyn. Then he realized another pair had formed while watching them kill a creature. The professor wondered if that was Leo Plop at first glance. Leo didn't seem very strong, but the fact he convinced Chelsea to join him showed he had something else, even though he didn't have the power or grace of Celia or Abad. Even so, Albik was super interested in that dude. At that moment, another creature got taken out. Chelsea shot a wind arrow, and another one got sliced by Leo. Chelsea thought, honestly, having a night fight right in front of her was pretty chill. She asked Leo what kind of aura he used, since she hadn't been able to detect any yet. Leo said he didn't know any aura. Chelsea was shook to find out he didn't have one. But Leo said having a solid foundation was way more important than aura. He asked if she knew the basics of her wind magic. She'd only used magic to detect stuff before, then cast a wind spell to wipe out what was in front of her, a poor goblin who died instantly. Chelsea complained it was kinda rude to talk about wind magic in front of a Legoline. Leo told her not to get it twisted. He was actually powerful, no cap, but she was just using it wrong. Of course that rubbed her the wrong way, but then Leo felt something weird and told her to stop. He crept closer, and they both saw bodies on the ground. Chelsea said they looked like mummies, and Leo said he'd seen victims like that before. He thought the previous test conditions were exactly like this moment. Suddenly something almost caught them, but Leo dodged and saved Chelsea. Two people came up saying they almost had him and needed to take Leo out first. One was a nobody named Julian who stepped forward with another guy carrying an axe. But Leo triggered his instincts and quickly took down the axe guy. It wasn't just those two, there was a whole squad surrounding them. Leo just told Chelsea to cover his back. Chelsea was totally impressed with him. The group chased them, but Leo wasn't having it. After a bit, only Julian was left running. Leo thought he couldn't just let it end like that, he needed backup. Passing by Celia, she saw him running and decided to head that way. When she and Abad arrived, they found the massacre that had gone down. Chelsea recognized her brother, and Abad was relieved to see her okay. Celia asked why they were together. Leo explained he just suggested they team up. Celia said that stubborn girl would never agree to that. Leo said he convinced her his way. Then Leo started helping the people who'd just been taken out. Chelsea asked why he was helping the enemy. Leo said there was no need to keep fighting, that together they could end this world. That blew everyone's mind. End the world. Leo explained there was some weird anomaly in the forest. He told them to check the bodies. It looked like something sucked the life out of them. He added there were barely any monsters around. Celia agreed, saying the monsters seemed scared of something. Leo guessed it had to be some high-level creature that showed up and scared them off. Abad concluded that Albic's first big feat must have been beating the huge creature living in that forest. At that moment, Leo felt a massive presence, a pressure spreading through the whole forest. Everyone else felt it too. Leo knew it had finally revealed itself. Meanwhile, Julian, totally alone, kept moving forward, lighting the way. He muttered that no matter how long it took, he'd finish Leo off. But as he walked, he noticed something on the path, a body. He freaked out and fell, then felt something super weird, a kind of slime dripping on him. It was the saliva of a huge spider right above him, ready to devour him. At that moment, everyone was watching from Luminia. One staff member who'd already left said they'd counted about 15 or 16 students. Another added they'd taken out some too. Albie said out of 500 people, everyone there had already failed. But someone else reminded him he had to pass at least 100 people or it wouldn't make sense compared to other regions. And at that point, only 50 people were left in the test. Albie still insisted that if they didn't meet his standards, they'd fail. One staff member who had already clocked out said he counted about 15 or 16 students. Another added that some had been eliminated too. Albie commented that out of 500 people, everyone there had already failed, but then someone else came up to him and reminded him he had to pass at least 100 people or it wouldn't make sense compared to other regions. At that moment, only 50 people were left in the test, but Albie insisted that if they didn't meet his standards, they'd fail. Director Kalyan put him there for a reason, and he believed true heroes only show up in tough times. He kept his eyes locked on Leopold, who had noticed the anomaly in the forest but wondered if he could really beat that world he himself had created. At that moment, the group was running. People were saying that place was a super dark forest. Celia stepped ahead of the group and announced there was something in front of them, then lit the way with her aura, and they found Julian being eaten by the spider. Celia couldn't believe what she was seeing when Abad was about to attack. Leo stopped him and yelled at Julian to break the glass or he'd die. He had to give up right then. Julian broke the glass and managed to escape from the spider's mouth. That's when Abad could attack and dealt major damage to the creature, but it wasn't enough. The spider started regenerating. The group was terrified, but Leo stayed calm. He had a feeling that was the spider princess, the tarantula. Then the axe guy charged at her but got hit immediately and thrown far away. Celia said she'd take down that creature with just one hit. She used the power of the prominence and fired a high-speed projectile straight at the monster's head. But the spider regenerated instantly, completely unharmed. Celia couldn't believe it. Abad got up and said the difference between a knight's destructive power and a mage's was like night and day. Then he cast his wind spell, creating a massive tornado over the spider that sucked up everything around it, ripping off legs and parts of the monster's body. But when the attack ended, he was stunned to see the creature fully intact again. This time, the tarantula charged straight at him. Chelsea cast a spell to try to save him, but Abad only got hit in the arm, all thanks to Chelsea's spell. Luckily, the wound wasn't serious. The rest of the crew was completely shook, wondering what kind of creature this was. Its regeneration ability was monstrous, unimaginable. And the tarantula was running straight at them. Leo explained that this was the daughter of Silatina, Queen of Tartarus. This creature had come from Erebus's army to the Elven Forest. Some were wondering. Tartarus Leo thought about the mana from Albie's left eye that he had noticed before. He was sure it was the mana of the Fairy Queen. The tarantula had fallen into that forest like a curse, destroying the forest and the elves living there. The survivors begged the Fairy Queen for help, who gathered her power to kill the tarantula. From what Leo remembered, it was Luna who killed the creature, but it seemed the Fairy Queen's power that remained in the tarantula's stomach had saved it. More precisely, the ring it wore on its hand, the Ring of Life. Abad declared that if that spider was the key to passing the trial, he would defeat it. Celia responded that he wouldn't do it alone. Then both of them lunged forward, starting a combined attack on the spider. The creature was hit from all angles, but Leo warned it would keep regenerating until everyone's mana ran out. They wouldn't be able to do anything, and that's exactly what happened. The spider fully regenerated again. Celia asked what Leo suggested. He said 2 people should work together on the front line. But Abad refused, wanting to be the MVP. Celia insisted she'd be the one to do it. Leo then declared that if they couldn't beat Albie's world, everyone would fail the trial. the group started getting nervous. Abad objected that even working together they wouldn't kill it at once because it would regenerate. The rest of the team thought it over too. Everyone then looked at Leo, who assured them he would pull it off. Celia called him suicidal, he barely could use his aura. Leo said he knew but could buy 5 minutes. Abad asked what would happen if the attack failed. Leo just gave a slight smile while grabbing the other guy's axe and said he didn't think that would happen. After all, fire and wind have always been besties, they work insanely well together. So Celia and Abad stared each other down as the tarantula wasted no time and lunged straight at Leo. That reminded Leo of the old days, so he started facing off against that huge spider with the axe, chopping off its legs one by one to buy time. People were impressed by his skill. While he kept hitting the creature, Leo said it had been a while since he'd faced a monster from Tartarus. Started fighting that huge spider with his axe, chopping its legs one by one to buy time. People were blown away by his skill. As he kept hitting the creature, Leo said it had been a while since he'd faced a Tartarus monster. Then, a flashback showed an elf girl running through the forest, escaping the creature but ending up trapped in one of the tarantula's webs. Just as she was about to die, she thought it was all over. Until she saw a light at the end of the tunnel, it was a heroine ready to save her. That woman declared that the creature dared to mess with her homeland and had even devoured the queen's right hand with pure determination. The hero attacked the creature with all her power, using vital-type magic and creating a massive explosion in the area. She thought it was wild that Erebo had so much influence in the real world. Then Kylie showed up and asked if the girl was okay. Back to the present, Kyle, who's now Leo, thought he'd hit his limit. He couldn't do more damage without using his aura. Suddenly he called Chelsea and asked her to use her wind magic to throw all the floating weapons his way. At that moment he had to dodge an attack from the tarantula, but someone said he'd end up hurt if he kept going like that. Leo replied he'd catch them all, told her not to worry. When asked what weapon he wanted, he said any. Chelsea started using her wind magic and Leo figured out from the sound she'd thrown a sword and a scimitar. Leo grabbed both like they weighed nothing and said, "Now we're talking." Then he started doing double attacks with both hands. He asked Chelsea for another weapon and she kept throwing him more. Leo used them one by one to see which worked best against the creature. Chelsea thought he had to be the same age as her, but still looked like a martial king in battle. Abad commented he definitely wasn't a small fry. At that moment Leo got cut on the face but stayed conscious. He thought if he didn't stop that little pest in this life, his friends would roast him in the afterlife. Then he broke another weapon, hitting the spider, and asked for the next one, but Chelsea said that was the last. Leo asked why she hadn't warned him earlier, but Celia stepped in, saying she'd already prepared the final move. To finish off the creature, Celia used her fiery power directly on the tarantula, which started burning while screaming in pain. After a while, the life ring fell from its stomach. Finally, the creature was dead, and the prologue of Albie's world, the wild forest, was purified. Celia sat down exhaling, saying finally done, and reflected that Leo had really held his own against the creature. For 5 minutes, Leo was impressive, and just when she was about to tell him he did a good job, Chelsea started shouting excitedly, good job, good job." She was totally hyped, and said he was like a hero straight out of the stories. She also said she wanted to learn more about hand-to-hand combat, and asked him to teach her. Celia, however, commented with a sigh that she hoped Chelsea could handle at least one training session with Leo. She said it like it was some kind of traumatic experience. Leo picked up the life ring and wondered if it was really intact until a fairy popped out from inside the ring. It was Prince Silith. Leo asked Silith if he remembered him. He was Kyle, but Silith just smiled and went back inside the life ring. Leo thought it looked like he'd managed to become the fairy king, apparently thanks to the treasure Albie had found. That ring had gotten his mana eye, confirming the condition to finish the trial had been met. They returned 5 seconds later, but before that, a figure appeared in front of Leo and he recognized the person. Before he could say anything, everyone snapped back to reality. Meanwhile, somewhere else, an old man said the Western trial was over. He was the director of Luminia Academy, Khalil Badian. The secretary with him asked, surprised, how he could say it was over when there were still so many territories left to resolve. She asked how many Albie students had passed. The director replied that since Albie led the trial, 40 people passed, which was a lot. The woman said 40 didn't seem like much, but the director said he'd only expected 10. She mentioned that surely Abadi and Celia were the first, right? The director admitted it must have been a tough choice, but said there was one recommended person. The woman was impressed Albie had personally recommended someone. The director said it was a man he'd never heard of before. The secretary wanted to see the name. Meanwhile, during the trial, everyone was rooting for Celia or Abad like it was some organized fandom, but Albie, he was paying attention to Leo and had thought it through before personally recommending Leo Plop as the rookie rep. The director pointed out that for Albie to talk about a student, they had to be seriously next level. In a special message, Albie wrote that this dude had the talent to become a hero down the line. Elsewhere, chilling Leo was in his jacuzzi, saying that pain needed to be handled real carefully. This is fire, he thought, relaxed in the hot water until he submerged and started thinking about something. He remembered the person he saw at the end of the test and got a message saying his reward was the Fairy King's promise. While still a living hero in another life, he deserved way more but would take that consolation prize. Then he heard a noise and wondered what it was. When he saw who came in, it was his mom. She showed up asking if he knew why he'd been kicked out of the house. Sutherland Leo was shocked because he didn't know. Reina explained that while trying to rescue a teammate, He ended up losing the Serdinger flames but never regretted that decision. She wanted Leo to use that power and congratulated him for getting into Luminia Academy. Later, in a totally futuristic place with magic, tech and everything else, it was explained that Leo had finally arrived in Luminia City. A voice told everyone to make sure they grabbed their stuff before stepping through the portal. He admired the beautiful view in front of him and thought this place was the center of his world, Lumania. In the distance, he could already see Luminia Academy. Someone approached saying it'd been a month, right? They came to congratulate him on getting in. Leo asked if they came just for that, but Whis explained that the Serdinger house had been caught up in a non-stop debate. The last month, Leo asked if it was about the Phoenix Breath Consensus. Louis said yeah, that was it. Even though his older sister Reina was no longer part of the Serdinger family, he was still their son, a legit descendant, plus the elders were super impressed by how he passed the test, so Louis handed him a subspace key and told him he could open it. Leo focused his magic on the key to form a lock. That lock appeared in front of him like a window, and inside appeared a book that would teach him everything he needed to know. The next step was to drop a drop of blood on the blank page. He bit his finger and did it. A huge amount of magic started building up in the book, and Whis told him now only he could read it. He added it wouldn't be easy learning all the Serdinger techniques, but he was sure Leo would crush it, and congratulated him for becoming the youngest member of the Serdinger house. Later in the city, Leo was walking down a crowded pedestrian street wondering if this was the spot to meet Celia. Then he accidentally bumped into someone and all his books dropped to the ground. Obviously, this was the start of many novel-worthy stories. It was a girl with glasses who shyly started picking up the books and apologized for not watching where she was going. As Leo passed, he saw something on the ground. It looked like her ID, Chloe Muller, a newbie at Luminia Academy. When they got to the store, Celia asked why she took so long. They had to buy uniforms, books, and a bunch of other stuff. Where was she? Leo said he had a meeting with his uncle Luis. Celia got hyped and asked if they reached a consensus. At that moment, Leo used fire magic and created a powerful aura around him. That was his answer. Celia dropped everything in her hands, totally shocked. She said it took weeks to learn the basics of that technique and wondered if Leo was a monster. Later at Luminia Port, a huge ship was docking. People were impressed by its size until suddenly a man appeared behind everyone, causing a startle. He introduced himself as Professor Allen, who would be in charge of the Rookie Knights class. People were stunned by its size until suddenly a man appeared behind everyone, causing a jump scare. He introduced himself as Professor Allen, who'd be in charge of the Rookie Knights class, and announced they'd be heading to Luminia on that ship. Allen was the Ice Knight and also a professor at Luminia Academy. So the ship sailed across the Great Sea while people enjoyed the feast on board, but Leo and Celia were there barely interacting, until someone came up and asked if they could talk for a moment as a couple. Celia was caught off guard by the word couple. The man introduced himself as Cardomas, an alchemist from the Moira Kingdom. He said he sold potions and weapons of all kinds and handed them a business card. Leo thought this dude was pretty interesting, and said it was a pleasure to meet him. He introduced himself as Leo Plot from the Kingdom of Dylan. Thomas mentioned he was from the Western region, which seemed impressive, but Leo started wondering if he was the only one who thought this whole situation was kinda weird. Even though everything was super chill, something felt off. However, the supervisor explained they gave a warm welcome to everyone who passed the exam. It wasn't supposed to be the norm, but Leo noticed the professor in the corner and the card he had, and thought there was nothing to worry about. Suddenly, the ship started shaking violently, and Leo said it was about time. A huge tentacle rose from the sea and started attacking the ship, tearing it apart and making several holes. The crew started calling for help, but the professor declared that the students of Luminia Academy as hero candidates had to face the situation on their own. In front of the ship appeared a massive creature that looked like a kraken. Leo got ready right away, drew his sword and told Celia to stay alert. She was also cutting a tentacle and told him to worry about himself. The kraken, noticing its tentacles were under attack, shot a blast of water straight at Celia's face. Leo explained that was normal since the creature felt intimidated. At one point, the kraken grabbed one of the students with a tentacle. Leo and Celia rushed to save him, cutting the limb to free him. Meanwhile, Cartomas was terrified, hiding under a table. He said it was natural for Celia to be able to do all that, since she had been the best in her region. But then he wondered what was up with Leo. What kind of kid was that? At that moment, the tentacle in front of him froze. Thomas realized the girl who did it was the same one Leo had met days ago, Chloe Muller. She raised a magic barrier and started attacking the kraken with multiple ice spells. She asked why Leo wasn't defending himself or the others. Thomas commented that strong people, like her, were all the same. They didn't care who got in their way. Another tentacle was cut right in front of Thomas. This time, it was the Legalin siblings who stepped in. Abad ran toward the creature, saying the competition wasn't over yet. Celia admitted the feeling was awesome, while Chelsea gave Leo a shy smile. Meanwhile, the professor kept sipping wine and mentioned there were many similar creatures in Luminia Academy's lake. He thought the kraken was perfect for throwing a welcome party. Everything was going as planned. The best from each region were facing the creature Senna from the east, Celia Cordingley and Bettelwell from the west, Chloe Muller from the north, Walden Tyden from the south, and Duran Moida from the center. The professor thought the new students that year were really excellent, but after another sip of wine, he concluded that the person who impressed him the most, even above all those students, was that unknown guy. He thought about Leo, who seemed to have perfect control. With no unnecessary moves, like he could predict every action of the kraken, He smiled slightly and thought he'd soon take care of his case. Finally, when the students arrived at Lumenia Academy, everyone was exhausted from what they'd been through. Thomas resigned, said he was out of all the potions he'd brought. Then the professor got off the ship and told the students they'd have to cross that lake every time, so they'd better get used to it. Then he announced it was time to head to the entrance hall of Lumenia Academy. That's how a bit of the campus was introduced. The first stop was Electra Center, where veteran students watched the newbies checking out the whole campus and commenting that it was cool to have interesting people that year. Then the entrance ceremony would start. The professor asked everyone to organize by region, and for the top scorers from the exam's front line to stand at the front. The director would show up soon to say a few words. Shortly after, the principal kicked off his speech saying that fresh blood had finally arrived at the academy. He hoped they'd become heroes and mentioned he had a few things to say if everyone there dreamed of becoming heroes. They'd have to give it their all, risk everything, push past their limits, and those who couldn't weren't worthy of being there. Then he dropped a heavy-hitting statement: anyone who couldn't keep up simply shouldn't stay. Right after, he wondered out loud if maybe he'd been too harsh. Someone shouted at him for saying that, and the students started thinking the longer they spent with the principal, the worse his rep would get. It was time for the rookie rep to speak. Everyone was shocked to see who it was, some scared, others clearly annoyed. The rep was Leo Plot. At that moment, Leo locked eyes with Albie, the one who'd recommended him. Albie had a small smirk, then Leo stepped up to the stage to give his speech, clutching his book. As he started talking, everyone wondered why he was the rep. No one had heard of this dude. While the staff looked unhappy with the pick, Leo addressed the vets and teachers, declaring that the new students were now proudly joining the ranks of Lumenia Academy. He kept going, though his speech was cut short and not fully shown. The MC thanked him and then asked what his goals were as the rookie rep. Leo figured the academy probably wanted him to stir the pot, so he introduced himself as the rookie rep, Leo Plot. The older students hearing this said the guy seemed well-mannered, which was encouraging, and thought things would stay chill this time. But Leo threw down a direct challenge: if anyone wanted his spot, come and take it. The crowd didn't react well, some thought not again. Leo said it didn't matter who they were, anyone could try. Later that evening, in the Lumenia dorms, final instructions were given before lights out. Starting the next day, there'd be a week of exploratory classes. During this time, no matter what research they wanted, each student could pick any class they wanted. At the end of that, everyone would settle on the 3 classes they were most interested in. After that info, everyone was assigned rooms to settle in and pack. Leo's room was 302, right next to Tomas and 303, who said he was hyped for the next day. Thomas wished Leo good night and a good rest. Leo said goodbye and lay down on the bed, still in clothes and shoes, totally wiped out. Quietly he thought, what do I want from Lumenia? He remembered a huge stone pillar. Above all, he was after astral knowledge, pure power. Leo wanted to find the perfect story for himself. His hero record couldn't accept being forgotten in the past. The next morning, at the cafeteria, Tomas was excited to share breakfast with Leo, who let him sit down. But then, someone showed up, slamming the table, calling out the rookie rep. Leo saw the scene and thought it was game on. It was Duran demanding an explanation for what Leo said the day before. Leo replied that his words were probably pretty provocative, since even a total stranger had come looking for a fight. Offended, Duran asked if Leo didn't know who the captain of the central region was, but both Tomas and Leo totally ignored him and kept eating. Clearly pissed, Duran started gathering energy, and Tomas thought they were seriously screwed. Suddenly, food the table, everything flew from a hard kick by Duran. But Leo reacted fast, picking up all the food like nothing happened, putting it back on Tomas's plate and neatly stacking the tray with the burgers. Then Leo told him to be more careful next time because wasting food was unforgivable. Furious, Duran said he'd knock Leo off his pedestal. At that moment, a hand landed on his shoulder. It was Professor Allen, who hugged both of them and said it was interesting to see the Central Region captain. And with the rookie rep, Duran wondered when the hell that guy had even shown up. The professor said if they were already throwing down on day 1 at Lumenia, they were more than ready for what was coming later in the Knights department. Professor Allen was standing with the students, and one of them asked why they were there since class was about to start soon. Meanwhile, Celia was wondering where Leo was when suddenly Leo and Duran showed up, both wiped out. Leo was clearly less tired, and Celia walked up confused, asking what had gone down. Duran felt humiliated and drained, while Leo said there was no need to get into details right now. Once everyone was there, the professor announced class was starting and introduced himself as Alan. He said he'd be in charge of the rookies in the Knights class, and Duran couldn't stop staring at Leo. But Leo didn't even give him the time of day. Thomas wondered if a war had already kicked off on day 1. The professor started explaining there are 3 types of power derived from mana, the magical energy, soul energy, and aura. Among these, aura is the hardest to get. He asked if anyone knew why. Celia answered it was because aura loses mana's flow during the conversion process. The professor confirmed she was right, while soul energy and magical energy use mana in its natural state. Aura absorbs it. Then the professor focused his aura and asked if anyone could explain why aura is used that way. Inside the body, Celia asked if it just didn't leave the body. Leo jumped in, explaining aura burns mana like fuel. The professor said that was correct and asked what the most important factor was when burning that fuel. Leo answered it was resistance. The professor said Leo was killing it in class and asked if he'd studied this before. Leo said no, not really. Alan thought it was crazy that a student that young understood the essence of aura. Then the teacher suggested they get moving a bit. When he gathered his magical energy, everyone was shook because Professor Allen started floating like he was walking on air. He explained that was the aura step, a basic principle, just focus the aura in your legs. But he added that even more important, aura's application potential is infinite as you level up. During class, the students tried to copy what the professor did. Leo was also training his aura in other ways. Celia told him she'd teach him how to use his aura if he called her sis. Leo said that was cool. Suddenly, the professor looked at Duran, who was suspiciously gathering his magic. Alan smirked slightly and grabbed everyone's attention, saying that as they knew. There'd been a little commotion that morning. Celia, confused, wondered what he meant. Thomas said he could spill the tea. At that moment, the professor called Leo and Duran to the front and asked Duran what had pissed him off so much. Duran said he wasn't mad. Then the teacher told him to get in position and introduced Duran Moira as the captain of the Central Region and Leo Plop as the rookie rep, announcing they'd have a direct competition to decide who'd be class rep. They could use aura without any restrictions, which even surprised Duran a bit. Meanwhile, Thomas was already placing bets on Moira Genius Heir to a hero line. The Electric Aura Master going up against the mysterious Black Knight who'd crushed all the regional captains to become Rep Leo Plop. Then the students started arguing among themselves, betting on who'd win. The teacher said whoever crossed the line first would be the winner. No matter the outcome, the loser had to accept it. That's what chivalry's about. Celia, thinking realistically, believed Leo had no shot, but she also knew he was the type to always exceed expectations. So Duran charged up his electric aura while Leo started running. Duran told him he'd win, and sure enough, he surged ahead thanks to his aura-boosted speed. The others were saying as expected Leo was leading and focusing something in his legs. But at the moment he was losing badly, people didn't get how that was even happening. Still, Chelsea kept hyping Leo up non-stop. At that moment, Duran had a big lead and had already reached halfway through the course. Thomas was super worried. Then Leo looked at the crowd and noticed something. He stopped, slammed on the brakes mid-run, and started sprinting toward the wall. Celia didn't get it at all and thought he was a total dummy, but then Leo focused his flames. Red flames on his feet and climbed the wall like it was nothing. Once up where the crowd was, he gathered so much power the ground cracked, and with a blast so strong it caused a massive explosion behind him. He launched back into the race like a rocket past Duran in a flash, saying he'd leave him in the dust, and crossed the finish line like it was nothing. Duran was so shook he even stopped running. Leo just gave him a small smirk. Seeing the huge explosion and the crack he left, everyone there was blown away and wondering what the hell had just happened. They said he beat Duran the fastest first year, and that Leo had barely learned the aura step. Celia thought that wasn't aura but the phoenix. Chelsea and Tomas, hyped, were shouting that Leo had won, that it was seriously sick, while the teacher was thinking he knew Duran's specialty was electric aura that massively boosted user speed. He didn't expect to see that kind of speed from Leo. However, Leo, who was slower, had actually thought his strategy through better. He concentrated his blazing aura on his feet, creating a unique aura-powered movement method. It was a dope application. Then Leo went to shake Duran's hand, saying it was a good duel, and added that if the race had been a bit longer, he would have lost, but Duran walked off humiliated without even returning the handshake. The teacher thought then that in this generation, a hero had finally been born. Chelsea came up to Leo and said what he did was straight up impressive, and that's why she wanted to train even more with him. Thomas, curious, asked Celia why she was always so into Leo. Celia said it was obvious then. Thomas suggested they all hit up a cafe and he'd pay, but Leo apologized and said he wasn't going. He left without saying anything else. Thomas asked where he was headed, and Leo said he was going to summoning class. Thomas didn't get why a knight would want to attend summoning class, and Celia could barely imagine what Leo was thinking. As he walked, Leo was silently reflecting. There was something he still didn't get, why the Fairy Queen had given him that reward. Rewards in the hero world matched the user's strength, and the one he got had to do with summoning. But Professor Albion had no connection to that kind of magic. Normally he'd have gone to a general magic class, but to make a contact with a spirit, you had to go to the spirit land. That's when someone appeared behind Leo, asking if he was also going to summoning class. Leo realized it was the East Captain Senya, who introduced herself politely. Leo replied it was nice to meet her too. Senya, sure he belonged to the Knights division, asked why he was going to summoning class. Leo explained he was interested in spiritualism. Senya said then they'd be seeing each other a lot. Leo asked what spirit she had a contract with, and she showed her water spirit. Then she asked if he had one too, but Leo said he hadn't completed his contract yet. Senya offered help if he needed it. Leo said that was cool and he'd count on her, but he also wanted to know how old she was. Senya said she was 17. Leo was surprised she looked even younger than Chelsea at that moment. Senya stared at him and asked if he'd thought something rude. Leo denied it, but Senya changed the subject and said anyway. She thought what he did against Duran was really impressive. Leo asked if she'd been there, and she confirmed she had, that she'd seen everything and was really blown away. Senya then asked him to accept her challenge too. Leo smiled and said yes. Later in the Summoners Division, there were some high-level people, including the South leader besides Leo and Senya. Leo asked if that was the whole group, and Xenia explained that summoning wasn't exactly a popular choice. Leo said he kinda expected that since the class would be held outdoors. Right then a huge flying creature appeared in the sky. It looked like a wyvern, and yep, it was with someone riding on its back. The wyvern flew closer to the students. They were all freaking out, but the teacher riding it said the wyvern just vibed with one of them. She introduced herself as Professor Marin Yura, the summoning instructor for that year, and everyone instantly fell head over heels for her. Leo remembered his old buddy who always said romantic stuff about beautiful girls. He was sure that dude would have lost it seeing her. The professor called them big heads and said the fact they were in this class meant they'd already tried summoning right. Then she said they'd head straight to the practice area. She called Carlos a first-year associate professor who was holding a griffin. More griffins flew over to the students, and then Yura announced they'd all pair up and ride the griffins. The students were obviously worried since none had ever ridden one before. Yura said that sounded like an excuse to skip out. Then she hopped on her wyvern and said anyone not down to join didn't have to show up. The wyvern flapped its wings hard and roared, whipping up a huge wind over the plains. Yura soared into the sky while Carlos urged the others to follow her. Slowly the students started mounting the griffins. One kid was struggling to control his griffin. Senya asked Leo if she could take the reins and he told her to do whatever she wanted. They flew over the big lake at Lumina Academy. People were seriously impressed seeing them ride griffins and fly so high. Just like you'd expect from Lumina Academy, Xenia said she was a bit worried, but the griffins were way kinder than she thought. Leo warned they still had to be careful since griffins are tough to handle the first time. Right then the professor blew a whistle, causing a commotion among the griffins who started going wild and furious, knocking several students off. Leo explained to Senya that the griffins had behaved so far because they obeyed Professor Yura. She shouted, "If you really want to be called Lumenia students, if you can't control a griffin, you won't make it." Even Senya had a hard time. Leo grabbed her tight to keep her on the griffin, and she blushed hard. Leo warned her griffins are powerful and proud, and trying to fight their strength only makes things worse. Then Leo gently took Senya's hand and told her to take it slow. That's how they managed to control the griffin and even flew alongside the professor still riding her imposing wyvern. Yura asked Carlos if Leo was a knight. Carlos totally stressed checked the papers and said yes, or at least he thought so. Looking over Leo's file, Yura asked if he had any standout records, but Carlos said no, there was nothing. Then Yura said that was pure talent. It seemed like there was a hidden gem in that class. Later at the Summoning Island, the training center for summoners, the group arrived exhausted, though Leo looked fresh as if nothing happened. While the others rested, he explored the area and found a tree with a huge fruit. Then he saw a feather fall onto it. Without hesitation, Leo grabbed the fruit and gave it to the griffin, which devoured it happily. Yura then announced they'd do a practical test. The students were shocked. A practical test on day 1. Some said they were still in the exploration phase. But the professor explained that compared to the two main classes, knights and mages, summoning was a path that required moving forward much faster. She asked if they knew why, then explained that a summoner shouldn't just control mana. To form a contract with a spirit, a special affinity was needed, and to command those creatures and spirits. To form a contract with a spirit, you needed a special affinity, and to command those creatures and spirits, you needed the ability to tame them. That's why the number of summoner heroes was way lower than other classes. However, among all heroes, a summoner had a higher chance of achieving huge conquests. Yura claimed everyone came for that, but it wasn't like that. Then a student asked what kind of exam it would be. It was Elisa Gergen, a renowned summoner from the Gergen family. Yura explained that the island, as its name suggested, was full of summons everywhere. And since summons were the summoners' weapons, they now had to train their skills to tame them. The test was simple. They had to tame a summon right there and then form a contract with it. That was it. The students, impressed by the place's majesty, ran off to find creatures, but Leo deliberately stayed behind. Elisa approached him and said the rumors about his win against Duran had spread. She asked what he was doing there. Other captains also started watching him with curiosity, but Leo just said he'd do his best and kept walking, leaving Elisa a bit annoyed. Yura watched all this and thought those 4 would be the best summoners of the year. He felt something special was about to go down between them. While the students explored the forest looking for summons, many were surprised to see Leo. He was the first-year student rep, and people wondered why he was there. Some said he probably wasn't that good at this and that if he scored 0 on the test, he'd go back to the knight's class with his tail between his legs. But when Leo was completely alone, he pulled out the feather he'd picked up earlier and using the phoenix's power burned it. Just as he suspected, but his thoughts were interrupted by something unexpected. Elsewhere, some people were enjoying a chill moment. It was Queen Plop, Leo's mom. Louis asked why she looked so worried. Meanwhile, Leo was being consumed by the forest's heat. It wasn't burning him directly, but almost. Queen said that was exactly what could happen. Leo felt that heat, that intense fire wasn't normal. It was definitely one of the 3 great summoning spirits, a phoenix. Then the flames started talking to Leo, asking if he was a Syringer's son. Though they admitted that they expected something more impressive, they said they could smell Queen's scent. Leo, surprised, asked if they knew his mom. The flames replied, he's her son, so no mistake. Finally, those flames revealed themselves as a phoenix. The creature introduced itself as Farina, one of the 3 great summoning spirits. Leo, shocked, introduced himself as Leo Ploppy. She asked what his relationship with his mom was. Farina explained that Queen saved the life of her summoner, Ellen Nonda. Leo asked about the hero Ellen. Farina told him Ellen was clearing a dungeon but lost all her teammates and almost died. Queen appeared and saved her, losing her Syringer fire aura in the process. That's why she never became a great hero. She sacrificed her power for a teammate. Leo said his mom always said she didn't regret what she did that day. The beast replied that Queen was that kind of knight. Leo then asked why the creature was in Luminia. Farina said she couldn't tell him but asked him the same question. Why was he there? Wasn't he supposed to be a knight? Leo said he was also taking summoning classes. Even the creature was surprised by that and started analyzing Leo's body. She said it was something very interesting, that destiny dwelling inside him. Then she declared she could finally repay the debt she owed his mom. She asked him to extend his hand and take that flame, that living ember with him. When he did, an egg appeared in his hand. Farina explained it was her daughter and hoped that the day Leo became a great summoner, he could form a contract with her, but Leo asked if he could make the contract right away. Farina was shocked by that question. She told him it was way too soon and that he could die trying. However, Leo started focusing that blazing power around him. Farina, seeing his determination, remembered Queen and wished him luck with the contract. Meanwhile, deep in his subconscious, Leo was lost in darkness, seeing only that small ember. When he took it, it exploded over his body and started consuming him with its flames. Leo felt the phoenix's burning heat. He thought the heat of a phoenix was insanely powerful, and understood that those who wielded that power suffered the pain of burning every day, but he also understood that a phoenix was a being that was reborn forever from its ashes. Accepting that pain, he joined her and was able to master the flames around him. The creature's eggs started cracking. The contract was about to begin, the shell barely containing the power coming from inside. Farina wondered if he had really pulled it off, and Leo said yes. Farina smiled admiringly and said he was truly a genius. He would be the greatest summoner the world had ever seen. She congratulated him for making the contract. That creature was called Fiore, also Phoenix, one of the 3 great summoning spirits. Then Farina took her human form and said she trusted him to take care of her daughter Leo. Amazed, he thought Fiore looked more like a chick than a phoenix. She looked at him adorably, and he confirmed, yeah, definitely a chick. Back with the teacher, the students were starting to come back with the summons they had tamed. She asked Carlos how much time was left, and he said there were 5 minutes left to finish the test. Apparently only 4 students were still out. Suddenly, a huge summon appeared, a bear with glowing eyes. It looked fierce but was totally tamed, and on it was Senna. The teacher, surprised, asked if she had tamed a baby water bear. Insane! Another student arrived riding a flying summon. It was Alden coming back with a dark crow. The teacher commented that was impressive too, although he admitted he hadn't made the contract yet, just tamed it. Then Elisa came back accompanied by a huge white snake. The teacher identified the creature as a gorgon snake. Elisa said she tamed it right there because she thought it was pretty and it didn't belong to her family yet. Carlos announced time was up just in time because the last student was about to return, and it was Leo with a chick on his head. Everyone started laughing at him, mocking him because he only got a chick. Typical useless knight in summoning class. But the teacher felt something that left her completely stunned. She thought this son of a got a phoenix. Later, back in the gym, Leo got ready and knocked on an office door. He was going to meet with Professor Yura. She was dressed a bit lighter than usual. She asked him to sit down, then commented it was the first time she'd seen a baby phoenix. In fact, she didn't even know a phoenix existed on the summoning island, much less that a first-year student could make a contract with one. That was unprecedented in the Academy's history. Leo, a bit confused, asked what she was doing. She got closer and said she wanted to know who he really was. Leo got a little nervous, fearing they'd found out he was a reincarnation. But the professor lunged at him, pressing her chest to his face, and said he was a genius, a summoning genius. She said she felt super happy when she saw he'd gotten a phoenix. However, for now, they'd keep it a secret. If that got out, things would get wild. She also asked him that when the exploration period ended, he'd choose summoning as his main class. She warned him he had the talent to become the greatest summoner in the world. The next morning in the gym, Chloe was walking down the halls, yawning, still sleepy. Thomas told her mouth was gonna break from opening it so much and that she looked really tired. Chloe said she stayed up reading magic books. Then Leo approached and asked if she was Chloe Muller. He returned her ID, the one she lost the day they bumped into each other, and she thanked the first-year rep a lot. Chloe, surprised, asked why he was attending magic class. Leo explained he was in the exploration period and was just exploring. Thomas sat next to him and said that woman might be the most powerful mage in the division, Chloe Muller. Chloe gave him a death glare and he joked that suddenly it got cold in there. She tried to escape. But right in front of him, a huge ice pillar formed a massive shard blocking his way. Chloe stared at him and ordered him to sit in the front seat immediately. Since he seemed so interested, she decided to keep him close. Later, when Leo was alone, the one who called him was Chelsea. Right behind him, the siblings Chelsea and Abad showed up and greeted him. Leo thought, oh yeah, they're here too. At that moment, the professor entered the classroom and introduced himself to the first-year magic students, saying it would be a pleasure to teach them this year. His name was Len Horse. The professor didn't waste time and went straight to the point before starting the exploratory class. He was already using his fingers to cast magic and handed out a sheet to each student announcing they'd have a theoretical magic test. As expected, everyone got super nervous. Professor Len explained that students who didn't pass wouldn't be welcome in his class. If you studied at Luminia Academy, you had to match its level. He said that after finishing the test, they had to hand it to his assistant Anna, who was sitting and waiting. Leo was shaking with worry. This was the magic of the current times and he didn't get it at all. Why was that formula so complex over time? Everyone started taking the exam while the clock mercilessly ticked down. As the end approached, panic took over. Leo thought he hadn't solved a single question, so he decided he'd learn more about magic before coming back. He left the classroom determined to study on his own. When time ran out, the professor snapped his fingers and all the exams magically returned to their hands. Then he focused a magnificent power above the classroom, the power of the stars. Len explained that this was the essence of magic he had created from scratch and hoped every student there could also create their own magic. That's why he gave them that test, 49 simple memorization questions. And one last one worth 51 points to analyze the true essence of magic. He said he hoped everyone had solved it. Chelsea commented that, ironically, that was the only question she hadn't been able to answer. She wondered if Leo had given up. After all, he didn't really fit well with magic. Then Anna approached Professor Len and said that one student had indeed solved the last question. He let out a loud, incredulous laugh and asked, "Who among you pulled that off?" "The first person in history, the one who got a perfect score, please stand up." Len was hyped, surprised someone could do it. He said it was both bad and at the same time excellent. Anna clarified it wasn't someone who solved everything, just a student who only managed to solve the last question. That student was Leo. Plop! The professor called him, but Leo was already gone from the classroom. Chelsea raised her hand and said he'd left right. After handing in the test, the professor was stunned. Leo had been the only one to get all 51 points, the highest score in the class. Later in the cafeteria, Celia laughed in Leo's face, saying he bailed on class after solving just one question on the exam. She mocked him for summoning a chick and barely solving anything on the magic test. She told him to focus on his sword skills since he was a knight. Leo asked if she wanted to train with him. Celia smiled. Just then, someone appeared behind Leo. It was Professor Len, super mad. He asked if that was Leo Plop, the knight who dissed his class. He demanded to know why he left after answering only one question. Did he think the exam was so easy he didn't need to do it? But Leo stood up and explained it was all a misunderstanding. He actually thought he hadn't passed. The other questions seemed way too hard and he only managed to answer the last one. He added that he studied magic through old books he found in his family's library, so he didn't know much about modern magic. The professor, Len, got hyped and lifted him off the ground while Leo was totally confused. Len, excited about something on his mind, asked Leo to come with him for a moment. He grabbed his clothes and ran off, dragging him out of the cafeteria with a big smile. Anna ran after them while Celia asked what the magic theory professor was doing there. Anna asked if anyone knew where the professor had gone. Celia said she saw him running off with Leo, and Anna retraced her steps, wondering what that guy was plotting now. Back in the magic classroom, the professor erased some stuff from the board and wrote new things. Then he hit the board and told Leo to solve it. Len wanted to see if Leo had solved the question by pure luck. Or if he really understood his essence now, he'd see what he was capable of and check for himself if it was just a lucky break or real skill. But Leo just said he had already figured it out, and the professor was totally blown away when he looked at the board. Leo had mentally solved all the questions. Leo explained well. More or less, the professor muttered excitedly. Finally found him. Meanwhile, Professor Albie Len was in the hallways. He ran out to find him full of happiness. Albie thought, oh, here he comes, and turned to leave, but Len grabbed his leg, thanking him over and over for the recommendation. Albie stood up and said it was the first time he'd seen him act like that. Why was he behaving like that? Len said it was because he'd found a genius. A full-on magic genius. Leo Plop, the student Albie had recommended. Albie got thoughtful, a mage. Not a knight, but Len insisted he had to become a mage no matter what. Just then, Anna showed up running, saw Len floating, and right when Albie let go of him, she caught him before he hit the ground. Len thanked her, but Anna got super mad, telling him they had to get back to class. She thought she was gonna kill that lunatic someday. Meanwhile, Albie walked up to Leo and gave him a small smile. Before leaving, Leo thought mages hadn't changed at all, still total lunatics. A week later, the day the temporary exploratory classes ended, Leo was reading his little book. When he closed it, the title was revealed, Kale, Hero or Fraud. Leo was on the roof at that moment. Watching the chaos below, people were running toward the principal's office, clueless. There, 3 main professors were gathered, Professor Allen, Professor Len, and Professor Yura. Allen exclaimed that what was happening was unacceptable. Leo's file showed he was enrolled in all the main classes, knights, mages, and summoners. While Yura and Len started arguing, Allen insisted. Director, he has to become a knight. Actually, that dude should be at the military academy, but the director just laughed and said Leo reminded him of some fictional hero. When they asked who, he said it was the 5th grade hero, also known as the hero of the beginning, Kyle. The only hero in human history to master all 3 main classes. Later at the training center, Celia and Chelsea were grinding hard and Thomas was watching with curiosity. Wondering why they were training so much, Leo explained at the end of the week that Chelsea had asked to train with him. Thomas, confused, asked why they were running then. Where were their weapons? Leo said there were things more important than weapons, and Celia chimed in, our stamina. Chelsea added that stamina was the most important stat for a battle mage, so that's why they trained like that. When Thomas stepped aside, Chelsea sat next to Leo, who offered her some water. She said the training was actually going pretty well, and she also wanted to run with him. Hearing that Celia spit out her water, shocked, Leo said he'd already planned on it, so no problem there. However, Celia said she wasn't running with him. Thomas, intrigued, wondered why Celia and Leo were so close, even thinking they might be dating. Celia, exasperated, cleared it up, for God's sake, he's my cousin, son of my dad's sister. Both Chelsea and Thomas were surprised. You're a Surdinger? Celia said technically no, due to some circumstances, but she preferred not to get into details. Then Leo stood up and said, all right, let's get started. Chelsea was hyped. Thomas decided to dip and explore Lumeria City. He wished them good training, but Celia, hanging on him, begged to come along. Thomas muttered, why am I surrounded by such weirdos? The day of class assignments arrived. Leo walked into classroom number 5 where Thomas was already waiting. Leo asked if Thomas knew he'd be there. Thomas said there was nothing he didn't know and asked if Chelsea was there too. And sure enough, she was there looking wrecked after training. Thomas kept wondering what the hell they'd been doing all weekend. Leo said it was just the basics. Then someone walked by mocking class 5, calling it the class of despair. One student said those kids would drop out in the first semester, and another was already offering condolences. Another guy stepped up and asked if they felt sorry for them, saying the two people in front of him were even more pitiful. When they turned around, they saw a super intimidating dude who asked if they disagreed with him. It was Harry Edmond, the head teacher of class 5 first year. He ordered chair now, and the students turned a chair into the teacher's seat. Harry sat on the backrest facing the students and said, "Nice to meet you, you bunch of trash." That class was for those who had failed and gotten the lowest grades. Among the new students, he said they'd probably already heard rumors about him. They called him the Wailing Wall. Someone asked why he got that nickname. Thomas asked if it was because he helped improve grades, but Harry replied, "Dear Thomas." That's a typical answer from someone who ended up last. Then he asked if anyone knew what the duty of a Lumeria Academy student was, especially one from a lower class. Chelsea answered that it was to conquer the hero's world through practical missions. Harry said that was right, but added that their faces looked like people who die as soon as they stepped into that world. It was better to be expelled than to die, so he decided to take charge of class number 5. And that's why they called him the Wailing Wall. Then Harry glanced at Leo and thought he'd probably survive. He ordered everyone to put on their training clothes and head to the practice field. It was time for combat studies. While everyone was baking under the sun in their sports uniforms, Harry was chilling comfortably under an umbrella, sitting in a beach chair sipping coconut water. He said that class needed to fix the mindset they'd developed. Before entering Lumeria Academy, Harry asked who would save them in real life, where lives came and went like nothing. Sitting in a beach chair sipping coconut water, he said that class needed to fix the mindset they'd developed. Before entering Lumeria Academy, Harry asked who would save him in real life, where lives came and went like it was nothing. A student raised her hand. Her name was Nella Carvin, and said it would be her classmates by her side who'd protect her. But the teacher shot that down, saying no, only his own skills would save him just by leveling up his own abilities. Shining even through all kinds of dangers, only then could one think about helping others. Then another student raised their hand and asked if he really trusted his teammates. Professor Harry said, "All right, then let's see your skills, Mage Knight. Create a fireball." Eliana Leiden was a student with a dual class Knight and Mage. She created a fireball, but Harry asked, "Is that all?" He said, "With a fireball like that, you wouldn't even kill an ant. Only by injecting more mana." Did she manage to make 2 bigger fireballs? They asked what the professor thought about it, and Harry sarcastically commented, "Impressive, doubled the amount and size." Harry then created a wind sphere and said, "Why don't you hit that target here, huh?" But actually he summoned a fairy that flew straight at Eliana and started tickling her nose, which made her furious. She tried to hit it but failed. The fairy danced on her face, and Harry asked, "What's the point of creating such a powerful skill if you can't even hit it?" He wanted everyone to understand the difficulty they faced and how far they still were from reaching Lumeria Academy's level. They had to push themselves and improve way beyond what they were until they got it. That class wouldn't end until then. Harry closed by saying, "Give it your all, descendants of Lumenia." Leo thought Harry's words were harsh but all true. He also thought the real class was just getting started. Harry kept watching Leo. Plop. He considered that Leo really resembled that fictional hero Kyle. While the other students tried to catch the fairy, Leo prepared with his flames. He launched himself like a rocket straight at the fairy. Harry thought maybe this guy was the only person born in this world capable of mastering all 3 classes. Chelsea asked how he could be so fast, and Thomas replied that he couldn't keep up with him. Leo was running at an insane speed. Using his fire steps, he jumped super high toward the fairy, and just as he was about to catch it, it dodged him, but Leo smiled, prepared a skill, and just as he was about to capture it, Duran appeared and got it first. Duran stared at the protagonist while a man appeared clapping. It was Sedan, the teacher of class number 1. He said his students never disappointed him. Harry replied, "Oh yeah, you want to teach in my place?" He shot a look at Sedan, who clearly wasn't comfortable with the idea. Thomas explained that this was a rivalry between the 2 pillars of the academy. Leo asked what those pillars meant, and Thomas said both had been working at Lumenia for over 20 years. According to what he had heard, Lamy and Yura had been apprentices of those 2. Nela asked how Thomas knew all that, and he answered, I'm just good with info, you know." Sedan said, Harry, unaware of what he was plotting, when he decided to take charge of the class of losers. But he'd find out soon enough. Then he pulled out a ball and proposed a competition between Class 1 and Class 5. Harry asked, "Ball sports? You want a Bastera competition?" He stood up and added, "What else would you expect from genius Sedan? Learning through real experience is the best." Sedan assured his class would win. Harry accepted anyway. Laid back again and said it didn't matter. He could keep teaching Class 5 with no problem. Sedan wondered how he ended up losing the training class to that guy. Then he called his students to leave. Harry, on his part, announced to his own that he was giving them a chance to put their skills into practice. There would be a Bastera match between Class 1 and Class 5. Harry stood up and added something even more important. If they lost, they'd be expelled. Of course, everyone was shocked by that statement, asking if he was serious. Harry replied that if they didn't want to get kicked out, they had to push past their limits. Also, they shouldn't worry so much, since the first-year student rep was on their side, right? Harry asked Leo to pick his reps to join him in the Bastara match. Leo thought this was clearly a test for him, but the teacher wasn't doing it out of spite. Some students had lost the will to keep going at the academy. Harry surely wanted him to choose those who seemed to have strayed from the path to then bring back their spirit and drive through this match. It was a way to boost Class 5's morale. He began. So the showdown between Class 1 and Class 5 went down, and Leo noticed Chelsea was looking super nervous. He asked why she was so scared, and Chelsea said she probably never even heard of Bastet. It was a combat sport, a huge tradition in Numenia. Thomas explained it wasn't just some ball game, but something way more dangerous. Someone asked why Chelsea was so shook, and it was Celia who hinted maybe she already knew she was gonna lose. Chelsea snapped back, saying she was the one who was gonna lose, cursing Cinderella. Leo hugged Chelsea and Thomas, trying to chill them out, telling them his class wasn't gonna lose. Celia said she'd see the results of her training, but next to her was someone way more intimidating. Then Sedan announced everyone could step into the arena. Leo asked who'd roll with him, and the first to step up were Eliana and Chelsea, both hyped AF. Other students joined too, including Neela. Someone told Thomas the last spot was his, but he was hiding. Still, Leo said Class 5 was ready. Sedan responded with a solid excellent and tossed the ball up to start the match. Everyone was watching closely. Class 1 looked just as ready. The game kicked off, and the first to move were Leo and Duran. Duran was faster and grabbed the ball heading straight down. Leo ran to Neela to ask her to explain the rules. She said they were simple. You had to infuse your aura into the ball and shoot it into the hoop, either with your hands or feet. The first team to score 2 points wins. The blonde-tied Marcoa finished explaining. Duran got ready to throw the ball. Thomas was guarding the goal. Yeah, he was there. Duran fired with all his might straight at Leo, who had to dodge fast or he was toast. The ball went through the hoop, scoring a point for Class 1. The crowd cheered and hyped up Duran. Class 5 looked bummed out, and Tate said it seemed like Harry wanted to kick them out. Leo asked how they could get the ball back. Tate explained there were 3 ways: when the ball went out of the arena during the opponent's turn, when someone caught it, or when at that moment he shouted dodge. They were totally caught off guard, especially since Eliana took the ball right in the chest. Celia was the one who threw it. She was mad they were chatting so much during the match and demanded they focus. Tate explained they couldn't block or attack opponents directly. Eliana was knocked out by the ball, not by a direct attack from Celia. The only allowed attack was the ball itself. Leo thanked the explanation and said it was his turn now. With Eliana out, Class 5 was down 1 player. Sedan thought the team with players who had the fire attribute highly destructive had the edge in Bastet. Among those flames, the strongest were Serdinger's. Sedan said Harry accepted the match even knowing Celia was in his class, thinking it'd be tough for Class 5. Meanwhile, Harry was chilling asleep. Sedan muttered that at least once in life one should try to act like a civilized person. Harry asked if he remembered his first student, that brat from the Sodinger house. Sedan said how could he forget the Queen of Bastet. Harry smiled and mentioned his son was in Class 5. Sedan apparently hadn't realized until now. Meanwhile, in Class 5, the students were getting more and more demotivated, thinking they'd get kicked out and everything would end just like that. But soon they were blown away by something. Celia noticed and said Leo had finally woken up. He was focusing his phoenix power, getting ready to shoot the ball like a bullet straight at the hoop. But just when it looked like he was gonna score, someone raised a huge ice wall to block it. Of course it was Chloe. She said she wasn't gonna let it slide that easy. As long as she was there, getting through was impossible. Then Leo popped up next to her and said that meant it was possible. Leo was gonna make that point, so he jumped again to reach the ball and smashed it hard. He got ready to shoot the ball like a bullet fired straight at the hoop, but just when it looked like he'd score, someone raised a huge ice wall to block it. Of course it was Chloe. She declared she wasn't letting that slide. Not while I'm here, passing's impossible. Then Leo showed up beside her and said, "You mean possible?" Leo made that point, then jumped up again to snatch the ball and slammed it hard, making it smash right through the ice wall, shattering it to pieces. Sedan thought Leo's combat instinct was insane. Harry just smiled, and the Class 5 students started hyping Leo up big time. Sedan cracked a slight smile, thinking the real game was just getting started. The scoring system was like volleyball got a win by 2 points. The match heated up 2-1-4, 5-7, 6-9, 10. Everyone was trying to pull ahead by more than 2 points. Right when Duran went for the shot, Thomas caught the ball. Shockingly, he got engulfed in flames, electrocuted, nearly died, but still caught the ball. He was about to be pulled off the field. But then the ball landed in Leo's hands. Match point. The next point would decide the winner. Leo was solo against Duran, Celia, and Chloe. He grabbed the ball and started thinking while everyone else said he was clearly at a disadvantage. Chloe said even though she flopped the theory test, she wasn't about to lose here. She cast a spell that created multiple ice clones of herself. Leo stopped, crouched, and focused hard. Celia yelled at Leo to just get closer already, so he channeled his energy perfectly using fairy powers. Suddenly he vanished right in front of everyone. Nobody expected that speed from him. He moved like it was nothing, slipped into enemy territory, and passed by Celia before she could even react. Chloe realized Leo had also created an illusion but couldn't tell which one was real. The magic Leo used wasn't ordinary. Chloe barely made out the real one, froze up and got totally wrecked. She muttered that was star magic, and wondered how a human could even use elven magic. Leo scored, and Class 5 was declared the winner. Everyone started shouting his name, some even cried, thankful they wouldn't get kicked out. Sedan looked at Harry and asked what he'd done with those students. Harry said it was all just motivation. Class 1 was humiliated, defeated, feeling awful, said and sighed. He approached them and asked if they were upset about losing, but said it didn't matter. No matter the outcome, the match was over and they had to congratulate their opponents. Everyone worked together for Class 1's sake, and the loss didn't change the bond they showed. That's why they had to get up and be proud of themselves. His words pumped everyone up, but Harry couldn't resist roasting them, calling them losers, failures. He then concluded both classes did great. Class 1 showed mad talent and skills, but Class 5 didn't quit and showed even more determination. They pushed past their limits and handled the situation like pros. He hoped now both classes would work in harmony. Everyone held hands. Celia told Chelsea she did great, lasting way longer than expected. Chelsea was speechless. She fought insanely well. Thomas shook Duran's hand, even though he wasn't in the best mood. Poor Chloe was crying, feeling humiliated. Leo went over and offered his hand, telling her what she did was amazing, and with a bit more experience she'd be an impressive mage. Chloe asked if he was joking. Leo, confused, asked what she meant. He kept his hand out with a smile. Chloe thought someday she'd beat him and shake his hand then. A month later, Thomas was sitting at a table with Chelsea and Leo. Thomas asked what club they planned to join. Leo said he wanted to start a club, which shocked everyone. Chelsea said if he did, she'd join. Thomas asked what kind of club he had in mind. Leo explained he wanted to found the Heroic Research Society to dig deeper into the lost hero. The hero from the beginning, Kyle. Some said he wasn't forgotten, but just a fictional hero. Thomas said it looked like no one would join that club. Chelsea, realizing she'd be alone with Leo, thought, wait a sec, me alone with Leo? And quickly said she wanted to join, repeating it several times. Right then there was a commotion in the cafeteria. Apparently someone super important had returned. The group at the table also got up to see what was going on. The ones coming back were the 5th-year students who had gone out to clear a dungeon. It was explained that the hero record fragments were scattered all over the world and sometimes became unstable, spawning dungeons. The Lumenia students were in charge of clearing those dungeons like some kind of test for them. They'd be gone for 2 weeks or even a month. Leo thought his mom had done stuff like that too. Chelsea said they were the best in Lumenia. Tomas started introducing everyone since he already knew them. The strong dude up front was named Liamua, and a bit behind him was Jan Torua. And the guy with the hoodie was Alta, but Tomas said he didn't know the last person there. Then people stepped forward to see who it was. Suddenly someone grabbed Leo and whispers started spreading. That's the student council president. Thomas looked back where Leo was and wondered. Meanwhile, Leo was wondering why Celia pulled him so fast, and she told him they had a place to hit ASAP. They had to head to Lumenia to meet with the student council president. Leo asked why the president wanted to see him, but Celia said he wasn't interested in school stuff. He'd see for himself later. At a typical Asian restaurant, Celia said she didn't expect him to pick that spot, but she was hyped to see the person walking up. It was her older brother Richard Dinger, student council president of Lumenia and a 5th-year student at Lumenia Academy. With a smile, Reese said, "Nice to finally meet you, Leo Plop, the dude who wants to take all the classes at once." They started eating and Reese asked if the food was good. Leo said yeah, while Celia barely touched her plate. She'd never tried anything like it, but when she did, she said it was fire. Then Reese switched gears and said Leo was his aunt's kid, right? Leo asked if they'd met his mom before, and Reese said yeah, he'd seen her plenty of times. When she was younger, he said his mom was super famous back in her school days. Leo was shook. "My mom was famous," Reese confirmed. "Yeah, she broke records and did legendary stuff still talked about at the academy. For example, when everyone thought the dorm restaurant food was trash, she led a student rebellion and stormed the principal's office." Celia couldn't believe it. "That was my aunt who did that," she laughed firmly. Then they kept chatting until they finished eating. Leo thought to himself that this guy really seemed like the strongest in Lumenia, and it was only a matter of time before he became a hero. Reese asked if they wanted dessert, saying he'd covered the bill and the others could head out, but as he passed the door, Reese noticed something weird glowing in his pocket. Back in Class 5, Professor Harry had his feet on the desk and Eliana had a question. Harry said, "All right, let's hear your pathetic question, Eliana." She asked why they didn't have a class rep since she'd heard every class had one. Tate backed her up, saying she was right. Harry, surprised, muttered, "Class rep, totally forgot about that." Then he said, "Fine, Leo's the rep." Eliana complained, "Wait, no vote." Tate insisted it should be democratic, but Harry pointed to a pile of papers on the desk and said being rep meant handling all that paperwork and organizing stuff. "You want that?" he asked immediately. Eliana sat down without a word. At that moment, an announcement blasted through the school. In a few minutes, a joint hero studies class would take place. All first-year students had to go to the auditorium. Leo asked if they'd be going too, and Harry said, as expected of the class rep. Later, the halls filled with students heading to the auditorium. On the way, Thomas and Leo ran into Chloe, who looked wiped out. Chloe asked Thomas if he had any fatigue recovery points. He agreed to sell some, and she bought 2. Thomas said, "Unfortunately, I only got these 2. Leo said the year had just started and she shouldn't push herself so hard. But Chloe downed both at once and walked off saying she was fine. Thomas was impressed. No wonder she's the best in magic theory, he thought. All first-year students had to head to the auditorium. Leo asked if they'd go too, and Harry said as expected from the class rep. Later, the halls filled with students making their way to the auditorium. On the way, Thomas and Leo ran into Chloe, who looked wiped out. Chloe asked Thomas if he had any fatigue recovery points. He agreed to sell her some and she bought 2. Thomas said, "Unfortunately, that's all I got." Leo said the year just started and she shouldn't push herself so hard. But Chloe drank them all at once and walked off saying she was fine. Thomas was impressed. No wonder she's the best at magic theory, he thought. Chelsea said Chloe had no choice but to be anxious, right? Because the moment Leo caught up with magic, she'd totally be outclassed. Thomas asked, "What's wrong with being second best?" Chelsea snapped, "Dummy, she's a tower mage. I'm a battle mage, so theory doesn't matter much to me. But magical research and core magic study, that's all tower mages' turf. It's their pride on the line." Chelsea asked if he was really a mage, and he replied, "Yeah, of course I use magic to live." But his pride was in magical substances, which made her scream, "Die, kid!" She yelled so loud even Chloe heard her. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, he noticed something weird. The damaged page from the hero registry had reacted, and the one who handed it over was Reese. That shiny object he had before it was a fragment of a damaged hero registry page. Reese said the page was so worn it shouldn't have reacted like that, but he saw it with his own eyes. It reacted intensely. The principal asked if it reacted again later, and Reese said no. The principal started analyzing that small fragment and declared he needed to investigate. "All right, what's going on?" He congratulated Reese on the good work and told him he could head back, probably tired. Then he called his assistant Elena, who had to take that fragment to the auditorium where the first-year students were. The class was about to start. After Elena left, the principal wondered if the fragment reacted, because it came into contact with the hero the registry belonged to. Later in the auditorium, Ariana Nire, the hero studies teacher, asked everyone to be quiet, but the students kept chatting, ignoring her. Then Ariana focused her magic and dropped a solid warning to shut everyone up immediately. Her title was Ariana the Rocker. Realizing what she just said, she corrected her tone and thanked everyone for being there. And although most were silent, some students whispered, "Why are all the teachers at this academy so intimidating?" Leo thought she was a spiritualist in her past life. There were very few spiritualists back then. Then, Ariana announced the hero studies class was starting. She held a sheet that looked like a dagger or short sword. She explained that after the hero registries appeared, heroes started forming clans among themselves to open a hero world. A deeply connected object related to the hero, and that world was necessary. That way descendants would have an easier time opening it. That's why Lumenia Academy always preserved the hero registries, and the families linked to them kept a deep connection with the academy. Maybe that bond was the key to the great family treasure. Leo thought the class was really interesting. Meanwhile, Thomas, as usual, was asleep. Teacher Ariana then asked if everyone understood why hero studies were so important. Right then, Elena appeared in the auditorium, and Ariana reinforced that these studies were key because they allowed understanding the solutions of each hero world and, of course, learning more about them. As they approached their final year, students could choose which hero world they wanted to enter to study, clear their pages, and leave their legacy. Then Ariana saw that Elena was carrying the hero registry fragment and informed everyone that piece had been recovered by the 5th-year students. She showed it on the big auditorium screen so everyone could see it. She opened it slowly and everyone was amazed by its magical energy, but then closed it saying that would come later. Then she asked the students what they wanted to do when they became heroes. Celia expressed her wish to become a knight so powerful she would surpass all generations of her family. Ariana approved her goal. Chloe said she wanted to write a spell book containing only her own creations. The students kept sharing their dreams. Thomas, for example, said he wanted to help all heroes with his powers, and Ariana told him being a support hero was also very valuable. But Leo stood up and declared his goal was to completely annihilate Hermos. Both teachers and students were shocked by his statement, especially the staff. Ariana, trying to hide her surprise, said it was a good goal and moved on. Some whispered he was dreaming way too big. Sidon asked what Harry thought. And Harry said Leo wasn't the type to talk nonsense. According to him, millennia had passed since Erebos was split into pieces and scattered, but it had still resurrected many times over the years. The disaster always reset. Yeah, even if just one piece managed to escape, so he thought that kid's dream was to completely wipe out Erebos. Ariana took back control of the class and explained they'd now analyze that lost fragment of a hero record. After identifying which hero it belonged to, they'd learn how to cleanse it. She warned that unexpected stuff could happen, which is why the teachers would be watching the students closely. The students got nervous. It'd be their first time coming face to face with a hero record. Ariana then asked the class reps to step forward. Celia, Leo, Avad, and Samia stepped up, but the teacher explained that actually 2 hero records had been recovered this time. Only one would be used for class, but they brought the smaller second one to show that even tiny fragments were important. Leo picked first and grabbed the small one. At that moment, the hero record opened and started reacting. With a massive magic surge, the hero world began manifesting in an unknown chapter. Caden said that was no good. And the next second, everyone was transported into the hero's world. The first thing they got were new bodies. The scenery was insane, but the younger students were straight up terrified. Harry told everyone to chill. This was a hero dungeon. Sedan spotted a fortress in the distance. Leo, seeing it, thought he recognized it from the catastrophe era. That structure was the last line of defense, the final city, the walls of Gardaslon, and Leo remembered when someone told Kyle that even if their wish didn't come true, they'd still save the world. The person who finished that sentence was a woman who appeared inside the memory, and Leo called her Lysinas. She seemed made of magic since she was just a memory. So when she said her name, everything collapsed. The hero's memory snapped back to the origin point. Senna asked what the hell just happened. Harry ordered the class suspended, told everyone to line up and leave the auditorium. As the students left, the only one who stayed was, of course, Leo. He thought this was Kyle's page, that this was his record, he'd finally found it. Harry watched him, naturally intrigued. Later, some were totally shook by what Leo said. Eliana asked if he really saw the King of Wisdom, and Chelsea said she always knew Leo was insane. This was a historic event, so they wondered if this was the license record. Elena regretted not being class president, calling it a missed chance, but Thomas said she wouldn't have stood a chance anyway, which got them to start hitting him. Professor Harry showed up to shut down the noisy class and asked what they wanted. To study quietly or get kicked out. The silence that followed was total. Leo wondered why his hero record was the only one causing total chaos. He knew even if he didn't get why. He had no clue why he remembered Alicia's remembered the phrase she said. It was like someone had purposely destroyed his record. He thought a hero record was something that inherited the hero's power. If someone didn't want a new hero to be born, they sent it to Erebus. So he decided the first thing he had to do was investigate why his record was split. 1 month later, during magic class, Professor Len explained unique magic and said this would be the midterm practical test. Naturally, the students were kinda nervous. Professor Len explained that original magic was a type of spell that distinctly showed the mage's individuality. Nowadays, where activation techniques are common, mages don't focus much on creating original spells. However, original magic could become a secret technique to protect yourself in critical situations like star magic that every elf learns, which is just a cheap copy of original magic. Only one person in history managed to learn the authentic star magic. Its creator, the founder of Nebula Luna. While the professor was talking, Chloe was staring hard at Leo. She had clearly seen him use elf magic. Until Leo noticed the book in front of Chloe that was giving off a slightly evil vibe. She realized he had noticed it and quickly hid the book. Leo wondered if that was a grimoire. The professor ended the class saying everyone had to discover their own unique magic, and that was it for the day. When Chloe left the classroom, her face was deadpan. Leo stopped her by grabbing her arm. She didn't like it one bit, but Leo just invited her to lunch. Then he noticed she'd hidden the grimoire straight into her backpack. Chloe said she didn't have time for that and promised she'd beat him in the practical test. Thomas showed up, ruining the moment, and asked if she was seriously challenging the Queen of Magical Studies. Chloe said she technically already lost to Leo, but when it came to magic techniques, she had to win. She said no matter what, she'd beat him. Leo said if he let it slide, he'd take it as disrespect. Chloe felt it, and Leo said he'd get ready for the test. They shook hands firmly. Thomas thought that was how you should shake hands. Later, Leo was in the Hero's Tower thinking the Forbidden Library of Lumerin had to be somewhere there. If he managed to get there, he could find something about his last record. Some girls passed by asking if there were any rookies, then someone called him by name. Leo Plop. It was John Torua. From the 5th year magic department of Lumeria. She said Professor Wren spoke highly of him, and it was a pleasure to meet him. Leo bowed respectfully since she was a year ahead, but John Torua blocked his way and asked what he was doing. A first-year student in the Hero's Tower, Leo said he came to talk to the student council president. John Torua told him joining the magic department would give him that chance, but Leo said it wasn't necessary. Since he already had classes there, she smiled slightly and let him pass, but first said she hoped he'd choose to specialize in the magic department before the semester ended, hoping he got the message. Leo felt that and got on the elevator, but when he pressed the button, it didn't work, so he pressed it again and again. Someone else came and told him he needed to embed mana in his hand and then use the button. This person introduced herself as Li Hua. From the Knights Department 5th year said it was a pleasure to meet Leo Plop, the first-year class president everyone talked about, and asked what exactly he was doing in the Hero's Tower. Leo said he had business with the student council president. But Li Hua said Leo wasn't even a little scared of him and was used enough to go to the office without warning. Li Hua said he should consider joining the Knights Department, right? Leo let out a slight laugh since he wasn't the first person to say that. Then he arrived at the student council president's office, knocked and introduced himself. The president let him in since he was Celia's brother, Richard Ginger. Leo just said in a dry tone he wanted access to the Forbidden Library. Reese replied he knew Leo wasn't the type to mess around, but there were only 2 ways an average student could get access to that library. The first was to complete the hero's dungeon, and usually the dungeon conqueror personally returned the hero's record pages. Leo asked, and from there Reese said the second way he'd reveal after Leo joined the student council. Later on the way to the Knights Department practical exam, Thomas said the day had finally come. And it wasn't possible to just watch this little game without popcorn, right? Because he was selling popcorn. Chelsea said she was super hyped about her business, and Eliana added that was totally normal. He'd try to make money, even if he wasn't in Lumeria. Leo thought it seemed like Chloe hadn't come, but she was actually already starting. The first duel would be Hound Naive from Class 1 against Leo Plop from Class 5. Thomas noticed Professor Sedan and ran up to him asking if he wanted to buy a bucket of popcorn or a drink. Sedan asked, "Do you think I'd buy something like that?" and told him to ask Harry. Then Thomas looked at Celia, and Celia asked if the teacher couldn't buy popcorn for them. They must be fired. Everyone started pressuring Sedan, and he said he could buy one for each of them. The fight was about to start, and Leo said luck was on his side. Knife replied he didn't seem worried about his power and that he'd regret it. It was explained that the semester practical exam for the Knights Department was a duel-style test where you had to win 5 fights to pass. Everyone wanted to know who the strongest class rep was. Leo was studying up to 3 subjects, but still couldn't max out all 3 strengths, so he had to be weaker in cavalry. Knife was the 3rd best in Class 1. Right after Celia and Duran, he thought of Leo Plop as that arrogant dude always hanging around Celia. Alan said they had to treat this duel like a real battle, but the winner was the one who made the opponent surrender. But then Leo felt something super sinister coming from the gym, like some dark and evil energy. Meanwhile, Chloe was studying mad frustrated, saying she couldn't create unique magic with the skills she had right now. Then she threw the grimoire down and said she absolutely couldn't lose to Leo, but thought with the grimoire's power she'd win. She'd do whatever it took. Leo kept feeling that evil energy worried Nike took advantage of the distraction, saying it was a huge careless move on Leo's part, but Leo easily dodged the spear attack. Then Knife used the snake spear, aimed straight at Leo's chest, but he stopped it with his hand. The guy wondered, what was this power? Leo pulled the spear, dragging the poor dude with it, and punched him in the face, sending him flying to the other side of the field. Leo asked if he was the careless one. Nike told him not to be so arrogant because the real duel was just starting, claimed Leo couldn't use aura. Just because he was strong didn't mean his biggest weakness was fixed. Leo said that poisonous aura was super unique and used his flaming power. Nike replied if it wasn't flame aura at Celia's level, it wouldn't impress him. Leo said Nike was always careless because in the blink of an eye he was already in front of him. Without noticing, he was exhaling a ton of flaming power. Even Duran was paying attention to the fight. Chelsea was hyping it up and Celia was worried. Celia wondered when Leo had managed to boost his flame power so much. Even Knife realized he was stronger than back in Celia's time. He wondered if that dude had all the subjects and was still so good at everything. Said he wanted to use that power just to beat Celia and didn't expect to use it on a loser like him. Then he used the venomous snake skill. It wrapped completely around Leo's body, ready to devour him. Knight looked at the crowd and wondered what Celia would think about that. It was a skill he learned specifically to destroy her, but Celia told him to look at Leo again because Leo was literally melting, evaporating the snake, and it exploded everywhere. Knife could hardly believe it and charged with the spear, but then Leo finally drew his sword and blocked the hit, told him to watch the fire or they'd both get burned. And the winner was Leo. Plop. Chelsea, totally smitten, said as expected from Leo. Thomas said he knew he'd win. Knife thought that dude was really good. Now he got why he was on the same level as Celia. But Celia stepped up and said it was amazing until he got all shy. Of course, the next fight would be between Eliana and Lady Nisenia. From class 10, Eliana was super surprised, thought she was one of the top 3 students. And Senya bowed, wishing her good luck. Despite that, Eliana showed no fear and acted respectfully when the fight started. The first thing Senya did was use water magic. Eliana, of course, engulfed her body in flames and quickly charged at Senya, and Leo thought that was gonna hurt, and it really did because Eliana crashed into a water barrier that threw her way back. But Celia stepped up and said it was amazing until he got all shy. Of course, the next fight would be between Eliana and Lei of Nisenia, class 10. Eliana was shocked. She thought Lei was one of the top 3 students. Senya bowed, wishing her luck. Still, Eliana showed no fear and acted respectfully when the fight started. Senya's first move was water magic. Eliana, of course, engulfed herself in flames and charged at Senya. Leo thought that's gonna hurt, and it did. Eliana slammed into a water barrier that sent her flying. Just like that, Senya won. Eliana said it wasn't bad at all. Leo said that duel was a guaranteed loss, but could have flipped if Eliana fought smarter. The next fight was Celia Serdinger from the first class versus Duran Moida, also from the first class. Celia said this would be fun, but Duran didn't say a word. Thomas was there, stuffing his face with popcorn, and Leo said this was going to be really interesting. The crowd could feel the power from both, straight up impressed. Celia declared it was time to see who the top student really was. Duran said little, but threw the first punch. Celia blocked it. People were even overshadowed by their powers. Thomas asked Leo who he thought would win then. Leo snatched the popcorn and said from what he'd seen so far, Celia was gonna lose. But he noticed Celia's eyes were locked in. She'd give it her all to win this fight. Duran charged with crazy speed and managed to land a light cut on Celia's face. After that, they exchanged blows. Fast and furious, Celia cranked up her firepower, creating a massive flame storm like a tornado. Leo said that was her opening move. Leo explained the first-year training ground was pretty small and she realized she couldn't keep up with his speed, so she decided to control the battlefield. Now Duran was at a disadvantage walking through the flames. The heat messed with his vision. He was stronger, but not anymore. Duran got distracted by the heat and didn't notice Celia behind him. At the last second he dodged, but when he swung back, Celia just grabbed his sword, said gotcha now, and headbutted him out cold. The winner was Celia Serdinger. Celia said Duran needed to train his strength more. Still salty, he got up and shook her hand. The crowd was already shipping them, saying they made a great pair. Leo commented it looked like training had paid off for Celia. Even Professor Harry showed up munching popcorn, saying Celia had won. He said he really liked Leo's comment. Thomas asked when he got there. That wrapped up the practical knighthood exam. Celia Serdinger got 4 wins and 1 loss. Duran Moida also got 4 wins and 1 loss. Senya had 4 wins and 1 loss. And Leo Club took first place with 5 wins and 0 losses. A week later at the language exam, Harry said everyone did a good job and told them to give their best so they wouldn't fail and get kicked out of the academy. Then he slammed the door shut. Eliana said that guy only talks about expulsions. Everyone wanted to see Celia's answer sheet, and Leo was just chilling, almost dozing off. Nila asked how the exam went. Leo said it wasn't that bad, but Nila told him he could do it all soon. He had that look. Leo asked if he looked like an ass, and Nila said she could diagnose him to use healing magic on him. Thomas said his neck hurt bad. Celia gave him a pat on the back of the head and said that was enough. Then she asked how Leo's summoning practice was going since Tate told her he hadn't even shown up to summoning class anymore. Leo said he was practicing on his own time. Celia asked what rank he hoped to get on the summoning exam. Leo said it was simple, he'd come in first. So on summoning exam day, the narrator welcomed everyone to the big rookie event, the summoner race. He was third-year summoner Lombates and would be the event's commentator. Celia asked if this was really a test. Reese said the summoner race was a common tradition and well known at the academy. It was also used for friendly duels with other academies, of course. Thomas was there again selling popcorn, and Tate begged the crowd to keep it down for God's sake. The other summoners were super stressed from all the pressure. Elisa was there facing off against Leo. Senya and Alden were also present. Elisa said Leo did great on the night exam and was ready for the summoning test too. Leo said, "Of course." Elisa said he must be really bad, right, because she never saw him training once. Leo said, of course. Elisa said he must be really bad since she'd never seen him train. Others agreed, saying if this was a joke, he should just leave. Everyone saw he'd only summoned the chicken. Tate told everyone to chill. Others said they shouldn't get close to him because he was in the same class. They said Leo was nothing but a fraud. Xenia said the vibe was bad there. Then Lucen showed up saying Xenia had aced the night test, so this fight didn't matter much. Senya was mad as hell about that attitude. Alden was also annoyed by all the noise and said if he had to pick sides since he'd been following the summoning longer, it was better to disappear from their sight. Lucen asked Alden what he meant. Alden replied that if he thought he was the big shot, he better shut up because there were way better people than him around. Lucen asked if he was offended or if the comment hurt, and asked Alden if he hadn't even practiced before coming. Alden said he had no reason to train against guys like him, calling him a dummy who didn't even know how to control a griffin. Lucen was ready to throw a punch, but Leo grabbed his arm. Leo said if they were gonna fight before the test, they better be careful or they'd get disqualified. Tate told Leo the vibe there wasn't the best. Facts, Tate said summons usually create a huge power gap between veteran summoners and newbies. Since Leo and Xenia barely focused on summoning, they were close to the top. Second-year students started trash-talking the summoning class, especially Leo. Rumors spread that he skipped practical training and, well, you know how that ends. Leo thought he finally got why everyone was making such a fuss about him. Seems like his presence was just entertainment for others. Meanwhile, watching Leo and thinking the real action had started, an individual appeared stepping out of a portal. Meanwhile, Yusen was possessed by something, thinking he'd destroy all the lumbates. He said before everything started, he'd explained the basic rules of the event. Students in this test can only summon even if they're from two different classes. Aura and magic are totally banned once the competition starts. They have to take the griffins in front of them, pass through the summoning island, and circle around Silence Lake. After explaining all this, he dropped the question, who's going to be the top scorer in this test? Then it all kicked off. Everyone was super nervous, especially the competitors. Professor Yura told the rookies not to be so anxious and to do exactly what they practiced. Whoever stopped would fall behind. Her speech made everyone even more anxious. Then the professor told them to get ready. Apparently Yusen and another dude were scheming. That's when the guys used aura and magic against Alden and Leo just to knock them out of the game, but Leo easily blocked it. Tate kept worrying about his rep, and Leo told him to chill and not look back because he could keep going. Tate stayed worried. The crowd said it was a trap. Leo thought he knew they didn't like him but didn't expect them to team up to take him down. The narrator said they were trapped and even started using their summoning spells. Alden calmly walked to his griffin and asked Leo if he wanted help. Leo said no, and Alden turned and left without another word. Meanwhile, Leo was facing everyone at once. Chelsea was super worried because he was the only one left on their side. Yura thought all this nonsense against Leo was way worse than expected. Everyone teamed up to finish him off, and his specialty wasn't spirits but summons. She thought it'd be tough. But soon she was shocked because Leo was using fairy summoning magic, the spiritual language, and seemed fluent in it. While talking, he shot a look at the professor that left her stunned. She said she needed that guy ASAP. Meanwhile, in the sky, everyone was racing griffins. One said Leo had fallen behind and definitely wouldn't catch up. Elisa said she hated that because without that little help, she would have already beaten Leo and Alden. But she said she hated that because what would people think of her class now, Lucen? While talking, she shot a look at the teacher that left her stunned. She said she needed that guy right now. Meanwhile, up in the sky, everyone was racing griffins, and one of them said Leo had fallen behind. They said he definitely wouldn't catch up. Elisa said she didn't like that at all because without that little help, she would have already beaten Leo and Alden. But she said she didn't like it because what would people think now of their Loisen class? Loisen said it didn't matter that Leo was an easy target and no one would care, but Elisa told him to think about the future before acting and took the lead. Elisa thought that little job was just because he came from a rich family and thought they could boss everyone around. Loisen thought that if he kept this up, second place wouldn't be a problem for him. Besides Elisa, he was the best at controlling his summon in flight, but Senya was closing in and she wasn't even mounted. She was literally surfing on air. Loisen freaked out and said they had to take out that girl. Another summoner used her spirit to attack Senya, but she dodged it easily, then pulled a sick move over the girl and kicked her right in the face. The girl hit the ground saying she just got in the way. Senya said her kick wasn't even that strong. She hadn't even used aura and kept moving. Senya waved at Loisen and Loisen said competing with him was the worst mistake she could make. Senya replied she knew that, and also aerial combat was a total disadvantage for her, but he wasn't her only enemy. Suddenly there was a massive explosion deep down, and Senya said Alden seemed like the type who always pays back in kind. Alden was blowing everything up with explosions. Alden thanked the brat for the gift and said now he'd return the favor, launching a huge fireball toward Lucen. This took down almost everyone in its path and left Lucen super off balance. Meanwhile, the narrator said Leo plop, the first-year rep aiming to be a student in all classes, had fallen behind. He wondered if summoning would be his weak spot. Leo stared at his griffin with a wounded wing and said this was a disaster. When he pulled the reins, the griffin got really pissed. The narrator said it's not smart to force a griffin to do stuff like that. Celia asked why he was pushing so hard. Reese said he must have a plan, and Leo was pulling the griffin hard, said he didn't know how it felt. But now he needed it to listen and just said sit down. With a scary look, the griffin even laid its ears back. So he calmed the little beast, took the object out of the griffin's wounded wing, mounted up and took off toward the race. The narrator said Leo's griffin had a wounded wing, and when he finally fixed it, it took off, though it was still way behind. Leo said even though it hurt, he told himself to hang in there, recited according to the contract, I order you to appear. Then a small phoenix hatchling appeared beside him that filled the griffin's body with phoenix flames. Celia wondered what kind of flames those were. Reese thought maybe Serdinger flames but didn't feel it because it wasn't aura up front. In the race, people were falling behind because Alden was knocking everyone down with a spell, until they saw something else coming fast. That was Leo at full speed. Leo said now he could see the people in first place. He was about to speed up more, but suddenly stopped because he saw something huge. What Lucien was riding wasn't a griffin, it was a Fonir, probably a kind of dragon. That explained what happened minutes ago. Elisa said it'd be sick if she could pass Alden, but he created a summoning spell right in front of her, causing a huge explosion. Elisa almost got caught but dodged. She thought he was using advanced summoning magic. It wasn't. Just any spirit that could do that. Elisa knew Alden didn't have magic classes either, but thought even if his attacks were strong, if she dodged them all, there'd be no problem. Alden summoned an ice spirit and asked if she could dodge that. He fired a rain of ice stalactites, but Elisa used a spell on her fire-breathing griffin to repel everything. Breaking that ice spell, Alden asked if she'd powered up her own summon. The narrator said this battle was beautiful. Elisa managed to block Alden's attack and Xenia slipped between them while they were distracted fighting. But Xenia got grabbed by the neck with a spell from Elisa, who said she wouldn't allow it. She almost got caught by Alden's explosion spell. It was like both were against her, but she managed to dodge, break free from the rope around her neck and regain control of her griffin, surfing on it. Xenia said those kids weren't messing around. But everyone was shocked when they saw a black Weber. Lucen said he'd kill them all. Xenia said they had to do something because that wasn't a griffin. And it was against the rules. Lucen told her to shut up. That didn't matter. He ordered everyone to get out of the way or die. People were wondering if he had made a contract with the black giver, but they said it wasn't a giver, it was an irregular giver. Then everyone saw Leo zooming in like a rocket using the phoenix's fire as thrusters. Lucen asked how he got there so fast, and he said it didn't matter, he'd still kill him, but Leo just heard his words. Everyone was shook by the tone Leo used. He asked where that monster came from. Lucen asked if he was jealous. That was his power. He got it with his own skills, but Leo thought that dude believed it was a summon. However, he knew it was a Fafnir, a monster Tartarus mages used. It was also one of the creatures wiped out during the era of despair, so he wondered how that guy got a Fafnir. The Fafnir shot at Leo, who had to dodge fast along with his griffin, and the others did too. Elisa almost fell and the laser was heading towards Xenia. She thought it was already too late to dodge, so she tried to block it, but the impact was so strong it broke her defense and knocked her down. Leo, of course, went to save her, caught her midair and thought she'd passed out. He'd take her to a safe spot first. He yelled at everyone to land immediately, and people followed his advice. Lucen said that feeling of outrunning opponents was nothing special. The narrator commented all rivals left the route and landed. Too much was happening at once. Professor Yura asked if she was just supposed to narrate and kicked the narrator, then announced to all teachers and assistants that the race was paused. They needed to stop that creature. Siden asked what exactly was going on. Yura explained that Lucen seemed to have contracted a high-level demon creature instead of a summon, which shocked everyone. Yura added that the creature's influence would soon drive him crazy. Lucen was being controlled by a demon creature. But Harry said he shouldn't be the only one responsible. There had to be something behind it. Harry said Yura would kill the creature, while the other teachers protected the students. Harry and Siden would act together. Meanwhile, everyone had landed. Leo was rescuing Xenia, and when the others landed, Alden said he was coming too. Lucen asked if they were running from him. He said if they'd just stand there, the race would be boring. Leo replied he wasn't running, and what Lucen controlled wasn't a weaver. Lucen insisted he was a summoner's student and knew more than Leo. Leo told him that was a stupid demon creature of Fafnir. He remembered facing those creatures personally, many of which roamed the skies causing chaos and destruction. Leo, or Kyle, claimed he'd take down that ridiculous creature right here, right now. He faced the Fafnir again. Lucen just laughed at him like a schizophrenic. Elisa said that dude wasn't thinking straight. Lucen asked what he was saying. That bastard wouldn't let that happen. Then he fired another laser from the Fafnir that destroyed everything in its path, but Alden summoned a golem to block the attack and said he'd help Leo. Plop, it was the only thing on his side. A teacher asked if that was a magic golem. Elisa said Leo thought he was so important, but she'd help too. They needed to get that idiot off the demon. Alden said the golem would fall soon, and Leo was glad for the help. Lucen said that golem was weak. While his summon was truly amazing, after destroying the golem, he asked what they could do now, but Elisa used her spirit spell that almost hit Lucen. When he was about to fire another laser from the Fafnir, he got hit several times in the face. Alden said there was an opening for Leo now, and Leo in a blink appeared right next to Lucen and aimed at his face. then knocked him off the mount. The demon possessing him said it was a good idea to face the guy riding the creature, but that was the best he could do. Elisa and Alden were shocked. The Fafnir flew again with Leo on top. The demon asked if the hero candidate was scared. Leo replied he was that Tartarus manipulator creature, and asked, "Where's your original body at?" The demon asked if he knew who he was, saying he was a pretty interesting kid, so he couldn't be that far away. With a hero-worthy attitude, he announced that Lucian would die now. Lucian struck Leo, but Leo blocked the attack. Even though he was thrown off the top of Fafnir, Leo summoned Fiore and said it was his time to shine. He called forth the Phoenix Flames. Kale or Leo thought he was good at everything, but had never truly mastered anything. Aaron and Dueno outmatched him in aura, Luna beat him in magic, and Lycinas was a better summoner than him. Leo thought that's why he decided to combine all powers into one aura, and magic and spiritual energy and aura. Fiore took on a truly majestic form, and Leo said now it really looked like a phoenix. He thought Fafnir was reacting to the phoenix's power. The manipulative demon asked if he had a phoenix and who that kid was. Leo replied he wouldn't say. If he revealed where he got that Fafnir, the demon said he knew that creature from the Age of Despair, and that it shouldn't be alive in this era. Then Leo warned Fiore to block the next attack because it would be super powerful. Then he used the secret sword technique Serdinger Phoenix Breath the Prominence. Fafnir blew hard against Leo's power. Leo resisted using the flames. The manipulator declared that would be Leo's end, but suddenly, Fafnir started spinning like it was collapsing. Leo realized the summoner's original body had been attacked. That was his weak spot, so he fired a fire beam so powerful it burned everything in front of him. The manipulator didn't expect it, and Fafnir was completely reduced to ashes after the big explosion. Leo admitted Fiore did a great job, but mid-flight Fiore lost her powers. Leo realized he was in serious trouble, plummeting out of control. Meanwhile, just as the manipulator tried to finish Leo off, he was attacked by a crazy strong power Satan and Harry. They were facing the Tartarus summoner. The enemy asked if it took 2 Luminia pillars to take him on. The pressure was so intense he could barely use his skills. He admitted he'd have to wait for the next round, then teleported away. He had destroyed the original user's body but would soon reappear. Harry said he'd manifest again soon, so they absorbed the fragments of that entity, and Seren said Luminia was now in danger. Meanwhile, Leo asked Fiore to return to the summoning realm. Luckily, someone came to save him, Professor Yura. She was super worried but happy to arrive just in time. She caught him mid-air with her weaver and got him to safety. Meanwhile, one of the hooded figures said that manipulator was a disgrace. He'd been defeated by a mere hero candidate. The summoner said he wasn't ordinary, he had a phoenix by his side and knew the true identity of Fafnir. The hooded woman replied that was pretty interesting. Back at the academy, Leo thought the summoning test was cancelled. The summoner Yusen had died, and the students realized the danger of living in Numenia. Everyone was curious about how the contract with Fafnir was made, but the teachers decided to keep everything secret. That creature was supposed to be a black Weber, not Fafnir. Leo headed to Professor Len's class because it was the day of the practical magic exam. Everyone was shocked to see Chloe's appearance, which looked really rough. Leo and the professor watched her closely. When everyone was present, the professor asked them to pay attention. He explained he hoped each had prepared original magic reflecting their personality, even if it seemed like a pointless exercise. He called 3 people to evaluate 3 senior students who'd been the best 3 years ago. The first was Rilda Fetni, second Ida Manslak, and third Sinjus. The crowd got hyped. Thomas said it seemed like they'd helped this time, but Leo knew that wasn't help. The professor called Eliana the first to be evaluated. She was super excited to talk to the vets, and was so sweet to them some even felt awkward. Then she created a super bright power. Radiant as herself, Eliana explained that her main attribute was light. Rilda was impressed since that attribute was super rare. Eliana added that by combining it with the flame attribute, she could create a storm of fire and light around her like fireworks. She called it thermal light magic. Sinju was pretty impressed, but Eidman said it was just a simple laser beam. The judges made their notes, and when Professor Len checked the scores, he found Eliana had gotten 1 point less. The audience was shook. If she got a point less, the rest were in deep trouble. The next ones up got similar scores. Thomas, with his golden coin magic, pulled through once again. Chelsea earned her grade thanks to her ice magic, and both were hyped. The judges thought it wasn't bad, but still something felt off. The class seemed talented, but so far nothing truly mind-blowing had popped off. Eidemann got curious about the missing students since 3 of them were rumored to be exceptional. The next to step up was Abad Welling. The girls were all over him and everyone paid close attention. He wrote a huge formula on the board. Abad said he'd show a storm a high-level magic spectacle. He remembered the prep he did at Legaline's place where he set up a protective barrier for the spell. Then he focused all his power and created a cyclone inside the closed space, but it was so strong it broke the barrier. A small animal passing by got caught in the wind. Of course, Abad didn't want to hurt it. He gently picked it up, checking if it was okay, then showed his spell a magic that can boost the power of wind. Seemingly simple, but it needs precise execution from a well-trained mage. Thanks to that, he got extra points. Chelsea was mad proud of her bro. And now he was about to become Professor Len's new favorite. It was Leo Plop's turn. Leo announced the high-level magic he'd present. That day came from a system with no elemental attribute. The judges said they'd never heard of a concept like that. Leo explained that every basic spell has a base attribute, but his magic system would completely simplify the summoning process. The judges thought he was nuts. Sinju asked if he was seriously saying he was gonna create a whole new system to cast magic. Leo said yes. Professor Len was hyped, thinking this kid had what it takes to be a real mage. Aidaman showed disappointment, claiming he didn't come here to hear fairy tales. Still, Professor Len told Leo to keep going. He wanted to see it with his own eyes. Rilda also agreed to check it out. Leo started writing his notes on the board, and Rilda said only one mage in history had used a completely different system to do magic. Leo said he knew the lunar priestess of the constellations. Everyone mentioned her name. Sinju asked if Leo wanted to reach her level, if he thought he could catch up to the legendary lunar priestess. Leo was clear, of course not. He could never compare to Luna, she was a legendary mage. But you don't have to be a genius like her to create a new magic system. Sinju was super impressed seeing all the theory written on the board. Rilda asked if it wasn't all made up. But Aidman jumped in, pointing out that according to the formulas it was possible to use any magic without penalties. Chelsea admitted she couldn't even interpret the spell, and Thomas confessed he'd given up trying to understand it a while ago. Meanwhile, Chloe just watched Leo closely. Aidman asked why he wanted to create a new system. Leo said he wanted to freely use any existing magic. Aidman thought this kid was straight up crazy. But now he got why they called him a special student that year. He asked what the spell was called. Leo said it was called the Bible, a concentration of pure white magic with no corrupt attributes. Leo said the name was the Bible, a concentration of pure white magic with no corrupt attributes. Sinju was even more impressed. She remembered only one person in history had used that term. The Bible was the magic system created by the fictional hero Kyle, and she wondered if Leo would prove Kyle really existed. Then they handed the scores to the teacher, and he announced that Leo's club had the highest score. Leo thought that even though he couldn't complete his system in his past life like Kyle, he'd make it happen this time. At that moment, Chloe, who even had dyed hair, stood up. Leo asked if she was feeling okay since she'd be the last to present. Rilda said she'd heard Chloe was the best in class and asked what she had prepared. Chloe said her spell was a flame that never goes out. Some were shook because they thought her attribute was ice. Chelsea wondered if she'd picked an attribute totally opposite to hers. For the rest of the crowd, her presentation seemed pretty normal. The judges thought maybe it was magic on a way higher level. Rilda said that was it, nothing more to see, but Chloe insisted she'd show the real power of her magic from now on. Then she made a waterfall fall on the flame and it didn't go out. Even Leo was kinda surprised. Some wondered if Chloe had added permanence to the spell. Chloe said yes, unless it was cancelled directly the flame would never go out. Then she cancelled the spell and explained her theory. All spells follow a common rule. Any spell disappears without a direct supply of mana. Everyone paid attention when Chloe started writing the formula on the board. Aidman wondered if Chloe had created a spell that broke that rule. How did she do it? Chloe completed the formula for her spell, the Eternal Flame. Leo thought that was literally impossible. Creating an unquenchable flame was something even Luna hadn't pulled off. Only one living creature had ever used a flame like that, the one and only Herbus. Later, Leo was still super worried. He asked Celia to call Chloe immediately, but she said she was asleep, hadn't managed to rest while prepping for the test. Leo felt bad about that and left. Celia asked if something was up with Chloe. She said Chloe had been super sensitive lately, fighting with students from other classes and even her own classmates. She'd also heard rumors that Chloe was hanging out with delinquents from the Magic Studies program. Back in the present, Leo summoned Flora, rubbed his belly, but really didn't want to see Flora, he wanted to see his mom. Farina asked why the rush to call her. Leo said he was curious why she was also in Lumenia. After all, the Phoenix is the total opposite of a demon monster. Leo thought there had to be a reason Farina was there. Then the Beast explained that 5 years ago there was an attack in Lumenia. 2 students and 3 staff died, and the culprits were never found. Since then, the director had put her in charge of watching over the school, and she'd been hunting the responsible parties ever since. Leo mentioned he'd heard talk about the fake demon monster tamer. Leo asked if she thought Tartarus was behind it. Farina said she only had suspicions, nothing concrete. Then Leo asked her to pass that message to the director. He said there might be another student who'd had contact with Tartarus just like Lucen. Later, during the practical exam, along with hero studies and combat, everyone gathered. This time, Harry announced the class representative would explain the test. Leo explained that this practical exam, along with hero studies and combat, would involve forming teams and invading a hero's world. The objective would be the Seymour incident. Eliana asked what that was, but Nella was shocked she didn't know. Harry told everyone to pay attention to the rep, and Leo started reading the document. 30 years ago, a group of first-year Lumenia students was sent on a mission in Sedmer's Central Forest, but they were attacked by Tartarus. Professor Albi, the Magic Eye Mage and a second-year student at the time, was sent with a rescue team. Luckily, he didn't let the students get completely slaughtered. The goal of this test is to rescue the wounded and exterminate the demon monsters, and you'll have to assist Professor Massacred. The goal of this test was to rescue the wounded and exterminate the demon monsters, and they had to assist Professor Albi in his work. Harry said this wasn't just any test. They'd learn to be more cautious and stay alert at all times. Anyone who didn't show potential by the end of the test would be kicked out. But Harry smiled and encouraged everyone to trust themselves. They were already strong enough. Everyone was moved by his words, and Harry cut in saying that was enough. Now they had to organize teams, and Professor Ariana was in charge of splitting them up. It wouldn't be the students forming the teams, but rather they'd be drawn from a cauldron. Leo grabbed his number team 11, the last team. Ariana announced the teams were set, and that the first team would enter the summoning portal. Chelsea said she got lucky being with the Princess of Serdinger, which comforted her. Celia said they'd show the power of the Lord and Empire. Albie was the one who received the hero's record, Albie's world prologue, the Sedmore incident. They felt all that power entering Albie's world, then they just vanished. The observers said they barely arrived, but they were already fast. The kids of the heroic lineage were definitely different. Sedan said that since Celia was there, her high score was guaranteed. Harry wasn't so sure. Chelsea seemed pretty impressive, and clearly they were competing with their own students. Then someone showed up, surprising everyone. It was the principal. He said that team's speed was insane. Sedan asked what the principal was doing there. He replied he just wanted to watch the growth of the freshmen and apologized to Professor Albie for having to use those painful memories, but Albie said he'd sworn never to forget that incident. He should be grateful for the reminder. Shortly after Team 1 finished their attack, the principal thought the girls, Serdinger and Llewellyn, were as impressive as expected. They worked really well together despite both being proud, maybe because they came from the same country. Soon other teams also finished their attacks. Ava and Duran led the charge, the most powerful, which led them to victory. Nayla and Senna's team also wrapped up their attack. Their synergy was insane, and the principal was blown away by Xenia's moves, unusual even for him. Team 5 also finished their attack. This team had Alden, Elisa, and Eliana. The principal thought there were several incredible students, but the most promising were on Team 11. Leo and Chloe. Leo Plop gave him a certain nostalgia somehow. They were asked if they were ready and both nodded. Albie handed them the hero's record, the prologue of the Seymour incident. But then something weird happened. An evil energy appeared. The principal felt something was wrong. It was way more brutal than before. Only Leo and Chloe got permission to enter. The rest of the team didn't. Satan was shocked. The principal asked what was going on. Albie said they needed to finish the test immediately. A death demon mark had appeared. And it was right in Albie's hero world. The principal knew exactly what that was, the manifestation of a heroic dungeon. And Leo and Chloe were inside. Chloe said something was supposed to appear after the mission alert. Leo suggested maybe it was a heroic manifestation. Chloe denied it, saying it wasn't even one of those lost pages. It was the first time she'd seen a hero record page go out of control. Leo tried asking the professor what they should do, but got no answer. Chloe, desperate, said they had to pause the test. That they had to get out of there. She was sure they could make it. Leo replied they'd have done that if it was possible. It made sense, it was a heroic dungeon. In that case, they'd have to clear it alone. Chloe asked if he'd lost it. He said it'd be tough even with a team. She didn't remember the people who died 30 years ago. Leo said if they wanted out, they had no other choice. Chloe, desperate, collapsed to the ground, saying the whole forest felt like a huge trap. Then Leo asked if maybe Chloe wasn't the strongest freshman. If they worked together, they could get out of there easy. Chloe wondered how this dude could be so chill now. She thought she'd finally reached his level. Then she got up without help and asked Leo if he had a plan. Leo explained there were 2 conditions to finish the Sedmore incident. First, rescue the freshmen. Second, ensure those students' safety. The first thing they needed was reinforcements, but Chloe asked how they'd pull that off. No one from outside was supposed to get in, but Leo said they weren't the only students there. Chloe remembered those who died in the first incident, and it was true they were still alive since it was a memory. Then Leo stepped forward and Chloe asked what he was doing. Leo told her to hop on his back. Chloe asked why he'd do that. Leo explained they couldn't let Tartarus find the other students before them, and since she was a mage, she was too slow. Meanwhile, those students were facing off against Albie's past creatures. The demon from Tartarus behind everything was Barn, until they saw the rescue team Leo and Chloe riding in. The memory group was cornered. Barn said it didn't matter. Their targets were just hero candidates. They weren't a threat, for now, but then he felt the power, the combined strength Leo and Chloe had. That's when he realized Leo had no class. That piqued his interest. He recognized him as the hero Kyle. Meanwhile, Leo thought the closer they got to the center, the darker the forest became. He should use Arlen's skill, refine and manipulate his aura, and push all his senses to the max. Using hyperperception, he could see clearly and sprinted into the forest. He said there was a group of orcs up ahead. Chloe couldn't see them, but he was right. From atop Leo, she prepared another ice spell. She launched several spikes that killed the orcs in their path. However, Chloe noticed one orc was still alive, the one with the horn. If he blew that trumpet, everyone would be warned, but Leo sliced him in half, easily, also breaking the trumpet. Chloe realized there was still a gap between her skills and Leo's. She wondered if she'd ever be able to surpass him. They finally found the group of surviving students. Chloe asked if there were demons nearby, but Leo, seeing them, got pissed and told Chloe to cover him while he moved forward. She used ice magic to shield his body. The students tried to defend themselves but clearly had no chance against the demons. Luckily, one was cut in half by Leo. The other demons were just as shocked as the students. Leo wiped them out easily. A student asked if they came to help and Leo said yes. Just then a demon attacked him, but Leo wasn't even there. He'd already moved ahead. The demon sent more bloodsuckers at him, but Leo protected himself at the last second, covering up with his flaming aura. The surviving students found him absolutely incredible, and the previous student, a priestess, used incense magic with divine power. The demons were hit by a rain of divine meteors. Chloe realized she was a constellation priestess. She thought she recognized the girl. Later, of course, they thanked Leo and Chloe. The priestess said she panicked when the demon group appeared, but was super happy for the rescue team. Chloe apologized and asked to talk privately with her partner. While they talked, Chloe told Leo that girl was Alia Jiron, Professor Albi's younger sister. She died in that forest because of the demon Subarme. Chloe said she was sure he noticed too, but it wasn't possible to save Alia's team during the Sedmore scenario. That was because in that timeline they died there. Chloe said they had to find him. Barn was known to have night rank in Tartarus. Alia's team was the first to be attacked directly by Eli. Of course, they were wiped out. The Tartarus who started the Sedmore incident did it to eliminate Alia, who was a brilliant mage and a promising hero candidate to register her name in the hero registry. Chloe said it was impossible to save them with the skills they currently had. To meet all conditions, they needed to find another team fast. Leo asked if Chloe wanted to leave them behind. Die at the hands of Barn. Chloe said she didn't want that, but it was the only way to get out alive. Of course, they were wiped out. The Tartarus who started the Sedmore incident did it to eliminate Alia, who was a brilliant mage and a promising hero candidate to register her name in the hero registry. Chloe said it was impossible to save them with the skills they currently had. To meet all the conditions, they needed to find another team fast. Leo asked if Chloe wanted to leave them behind, to die at Barn's hands. Chloe said she didn't want that, but it was the only way to get out alive. In the real world, they were already dead. They died 30 years ago. Leo said he knew. They were dead, but he wasn't going to give up on saving them. Chloe asked if he didn't get the situation and yelled so loud it caught the group's attention. Chloe said he was incredible, all-powerful. She admitted it, but they didn't have time to think about that. This wasn't the moment to act like a hero. And she got so emotional she started crying. Then Leo asked if acting like a hero was a problem. She shouldn't say stuff like that out loud. Because she was a hero candidate too, they weren't just acting like heroes, they were in the process of becoming heroes. And poor Chloe, after getting hit with that cold splash of reality, was left speechless. Leo said the story was already changed anyway. The forest was already that dark when they found Alia's squad. At that point, they'd normally have been straight up killed by Barn. Chloe didn't want to fully believe it. She kept thinking it was a reckless call, but decided to leave the final call to Leo, who said they'd bounce with Alia's team. Chloe wondered if Leo was still way ahead of her, like way out in front. She still didn't have enough power to catch up, and meanwhile Dayat was telling the others it was kinda sus. Only 2 people from the rescue team came for them. Dina said she noticed that too. They looked about the same age as them, and Belak guessed it might be a Tartarus trap. Alia asked what that even meant. Like, would they have fought demons if they were enemies? Alia said that dude seemed pretty sick. Everyone was shook by that comment. Dina asked if she was serious, Alia talking like that, and Alia defended herself, asking if there was anything wrong with that. Dina said she thought at least her style would be more like her brother's. But then Leo stepped up, telling everyone to listen to their plan, bail through the forest as fast and far as possible. Tayad asked if that was really necessary. Since they had backup, they could stick around a bit longer and kill more monsters. Leo said no way, they couldn't risk it. There was a night-rank demon on their tail. Of course, everyone freaked out at that news. Belak said a demon that strong was seriously dangerous, and Dayad thought it was more powerful than a whole squad of soldiers. Leo explained that's why they had to avoid any direct fights. The main goal was to get out alive. Alia thought Leo kinda reminded her of her brother in some way. When Leo asked if everyone was ready, and after getting the green light they bailed from that spot, Alia noticed Chloe was seriously off. She had this weird vibe going on. Meanwhile, at the academy's library, everyone was scrambling. They were desperately hunting for any records of a hero who'd cleared a heroic dungeon. It was clutch. To save the students trapped inside, the director said the fact they still couldn't get in was actually a good sign. It meant they were still alive. Albi agreed, saying it was impossible to enter a heroic dungeon while the participants were still inside. That meant both were still kicking. Harry pointed out it had been 3 hours since the 2 students went in. He figured it must be getting dark in that world already. The director asked when Albi killed his Barney like 30 years ago. Albi said it was around midnight. The director thought the only thing left was to hope for a second chance. But then someone rushed in with urgent news they'd found the guy who sold the demon summoning catalyst to student Louisen. When the messenger tried to keep going, she freaked out, seeing Albi possessed with rage, ready to off the culprit. The director told him to chill. Albi said he needed to cool off, and the messenger got it. Expected from a hero-level dude, his hate for demons was totally justified. 30 years ago, they never even found his sister's body. The director asked who sold the catalysts. The messenger said it was a black market dealer set up in the alleys near Lumeria City. It was actually pretty popular among early adopters. The director asked if there was a Tartaros spy in Lumeria. The messenger said no, they didn't work directly with Tartaros, but it was clear the stuff came from them. So the director asked what the point was. Checking the report, he saw Chloe Muller had gotten a black magic book and ordered Professor Len called ASAP. Then he looked at his scars, remembering the past. His instincts, sharpened by countless battles, screamed at him hard. Meanwhile, in the forest near a lighthouse or tower, the students were there, and the director thought the danger was right under their noses. Meanwhile, a massacre was going down in the forest. Leo was wiping out every monster. He thought he'd been killing it using hyperperception the whole time. The others were hitting their limits too, so he said they'd stop and rest there. They chilled under a tree, and Chloe was acting weird. Alia got close to her, which made Chloe kinda nervous, but she wanted to ask her something. What was her deal with Leo? She asked if they were dating. Chloe said no way. Alia said her reaction said otherwise. Chloe thought that even though Alia was a veteran who joined 30 years ago, she was still a freshman at heart. Deep down, she wasn't all that different from the people she already knew. Then Chloe asked why she was asking. Was she into Leo? Aaliyah said her heart raced whenever she saw him. Chloe thought, oh, so it's love at first sight. She reflected on Yayeron, a legendary mage still talked about 30 years later. For Leo to catch her eye was straight up insane. Aaliyah, however, couldn't tell if it was love or not. How to explain it? It was kinda like how she felt about her brother, especially when she got super confused but still managed to crush her goals. In the end, Chloe asked if that magic eye guy was clumsy. Aaliyah asked what she meant. Chloe said, you know, the one with the magic eye. Aaliyah said yeah. Her brother always tried to challenge the impossible. Chloe said that was like Leo. At first he was just a friend, but now she envied him. Aaliyah said then they were alike. Later they sat down to talk. Aaliyah admitted she'd also felt mad envy for her brother. Someone with a laser-focused mind who conquered so much. At first she admired him too, but she had a little secret. His brother was always trying to challenge the impossible. Chloe said that was kinda like Leo. At first he was just her buddy, but now she straight up envied him. Aaliyah said then they were alike. Later they sat down to chat. Aaliyah confessed she'd also felt mad envy for her brother. Someone with a laser-focused mind who managed to conquer so much. At first she admired him too, but she had a little secret. The basic structure of original magic was created by her brother. She was really good at using stuff that already existed. But she sucked at creating from scratch. She even failed the college entrance exam twice. There came a point where she started hating him. Aaliyah had a serious inferiority complex, but then all that envy flipped into straight-up admiration. Chloe thought out loud, someone worthy of respect, maybe Leo. But Leo stood up and told everyone to get ready. Running was no longer an option. The demon power was closing in and everyone geared up. Leo told them not to be scared. They couldn't forget that they were all turning into new heroes, so everyone prepped their weapons and powers. Then his barn stomped hard, breaking the ground, and said he'd found that damn candidate for great hero Leo. He remembered the order Barn got during the Seymour incident was to eliminate all hero candidates, but instead of just following orders, he showed pure hatred toward him. Not only that, he also called him a great hero. Could it be he'd figured out he was Kale? Chloe started casting big magic. But Barn attacked her directly. She shielded herself with a massive ice wall. Then Leo used his blazing aura shining like a star and managed to slice Barn's neck. Some thought he'd been decapitated, but his neck regenerated, reattaching his head. Leo told everyone to stay focused. They couldn't let him get close. He was marked with the void, a curse that nullified any kind of attack. People wondered what they could even do against that. There was no way to beat him. But Leo said the void mark wasn't all powerful. Plus, Barn wasn't his summoner, so there had to be a time limit. Subarn asked if they really thought they had a shot at reaching the skies of a great hero. Leo answered, asking if he was that scared of a new great hero being born. Then Barn challenged them all at once. Aaliyah used constellation magic again, even though she wasn't fully synced with it. Barn still felt its effect. That constellation power was mad strong, and he thought his lady was right. They all had to die right there. While everyone attacked at once, Barn launched a super powerful strike. Leo had to dodge, breaking the ground and shooting shards everywhere. Dina and Velak got hit but survived, and Leo managed to save them. Aaliyah asked if everyone was okay. Dina said she could hold on, but Velak was worse off. Leo said Velak was fine, his organs weren't damaged, and told Chloe they needed to land something heavy. Chloe said she just needed an opening. Then Leo used fairy magic, splitting into clones. Chloe thought while Leo bought time she'd get ready. She needed something strong enough to break through the void mark. Then she opened a grimoire of dark power. She felt a very different magic, and the whole battlefield got wrecked. People were super worried but also impressed because Leo was facing Barn solo with his fairy clones dodging every hit like it was nothing and opening tons of cuts on the demon's skin. Teyad wondered if he'd ever fight like that. Dina said who knows, but that dude was insane. Aaliyah thought he was using constellation magic. She knew, but she also felt dark magic. She realized Chloe was inside a dark magic summoning circle. Chloe looked more like a demon than the demon himself. She warned Leo that if he stayed there, he'd get trapped. But possessed Chloe said it wasn't a problem if he came to, then shot a blazing beam. Leo wondered if that was fire since his attribute wasn't ice. Barn got hit full on by that power. Chloe said that was the fire that never goes out and ordered him to die in agony. Leo realized he was going dark and asked Chloe to cancel the magic, but she said a being like him didn't deserve mercy. So Leo lunged at her and cut the grimoire. When the power vanished, Chloe snapped out of it. Then Leo asked her to be honest, was that never-ending flame really her unique magic? Chloe said no, it was a spell she found in that grimoire. Barn was totally fine and thought those were the flames of Erebus. Then Leo told Chloe what she just used was dark magic. The grimoire was a demonic artifact. Chloe wondered what she'd done. She said she didn't deserve to be a hero anymore, but Leo told her to pull herself together. He explained that at no point was it mentioned that her barn, if it had the void mark, that meant Aaliyah's team had used up the entire curse while fighting. I could get why they were so scared 30 years ago, but they didn't give up and kept fighting. Until the end in a battle, they had no chance of winning. Chloe clearly remembered Luminia's motto, overcome the past and go beyond. Leo nodded at Chloe. Now she got it. She admired Leo from afar, a dude so sick he made you jealous. Then Aaliyah extended her staff toward Chloe, inviting her to grab it. Leo thought thanks to Chloe's magic, the void mark had disappeared. Now they'd finished this for real. He heard the spiritual language, and Chloe thought she'd push past her limits too, so she wouldn't feel embarrassed. In front of those who trusted her, Leo felt proud thinking that power was straight up insane, with a pure runic mage language just like in his past when he was Kale once. That gave him comfort. When his barn lunged again, Leo crossed swords with him with mad strength. His barn threw a hit so powerful it smashed part of the ground. Leo lost his footing and almost got punched but blocked it with his sword. Still, the impact sent him flying into a tree. His barn mocked him, asking if that was all the great hero candidate had. But then he felt the power of cold. Everything around him just froze. Leo said that in the past or present, demons would never be equal to heroes. Suborn asked why he said that, but Leo claimed that was his end. Chloe was prepping huge magic. She thought thanks to Leo she could finally complete her unique magic. Now she was really happy. Then she used the frozen world, a spiritual magic everything in her reach was completely frozen, wrapped in mist, and her barn was totally iced. Leo just stepped up and shattered the ice, killing his barn. Then he found the grimoire, and the first thing he did was stab it to set it on fire. Then they unlocked an achievement save. The first ones got an extra reward and defeated his barn. Leo told Chloe her magic was sick. Field magic was something he'd never mastered. Chloe said this time she'd tell everyone. Maybe she'd get kicked out for it, but Leo told her they couldn't kick out a candidate like her. He assured her she'd become a hero. Aaliyah showed up saying both of them had been savage. Dina said they were true heroes, and Leo admitted they'd done really well too. Chloe was super grateful for the staff Aaliyah lent her. Only thanks to that did they manage to beat her barn, but Aaliyah refused to take it back and told her to keep it. Dina said it was the least they could do. They had saved their lives. Dina also handed over her sword. That's when Al came running, yelling for his sister. Chloe said it was weird seeing him so young. Leo said it was wild 30 years in the past. Albie asked if she was okay. Aaliyah said yes, the rescue team arrived just in time. And she said she'd met someone who looked a lot like him. That's how they wrapped up this stage, Albie's world prologue thirst incident. Chloe thought she was lucky to have survived, but when they looked around they'd already vanished. Chloe said the heroic world was falling apart, and Leo noticed one last thing, a status window. He got an extra reward from that stage, personal belongings. After Albie cried a lot, Leo woke up. He was in the infirmary and Professor Albie was there. Albie was super thankful for saving everyone and told him to also thank Miss Muller. Then he left without saying more. Shortly after, the director came in and told Leo he didn't need to get up to talk to him and asked how he felt. Leo said he felt nothing out of the ordinary. The director asked exactly what happened in there, if it was related to the incident with Chloe's grimoire. Leo asked if he already knew about it beforehand. The director said before coming he confirmed that the place where student Lucen bought his summoning catalyst was the same place Chloe got her grimoire. He knew the black grimoire was a tool of the demon god. He explained. The director replied that before coming he confirmed the place where student Lucen bought his summoning catalyst. It was the same spot where Chloe got her grimoire. He knew the black grimoire was a tool of the demon god, he explained. The demon god's tools were fragments of herbis, that is a crystallized form of herbis. Leo thought that when demons used it, it became a powerful weapon, but when other races used it, it started to mess with the target's mind. Then Leo said he'd explain everything from the start and told the whole story, everything that happened. The director, hearing the end, asked if Leo believed the demon god's tool could affect the heroic world. Leo said yes, the heroic dungeon only stabilized when he destroyed the grimoire fragment for now. That was the best hypothesis they had. Suddenly, Chloe woke up scared, noticing the director was there. He told her she didn't need to get up, then called Elena, who was carrying something in her arms. The director wanted an explanation about those artifacts. Chloe had Aaliyah's staff, and the director commented that it was something that theoretically shouldn't exist. He wanted to know how they had gotten all that. Watching her reaction, he thought it seemed like Chloe hadn't received any reward from the system. The same had happened during the entrance exam and the Seymour incident. It was explained that in heroic worlds there are no rewards for strategy. Rewards are linked to the world owner. However, that rule had been broken. Leo asked if that reward given by the pact with the Elf King was something that could be received again. That's why Leo answered that's what he got in the end. The director asked if they were sure that was a strategy reward. Leo said yes, but he thought an anomaly had occurred. When the world turned into a dungeon, Leo thought since they were going to downplay what happened, they'd keep it secret. The director confirmed that apparently Miss Muller had no idea about this. It was a reward granted only to Leo. Chloe commented maybe Leo was the one who contributed the most to solving everything. Rewards should be given depending on each person's contribution. The director concluded that in that case, he would investigate this phenomenon in secret. Personal belongings would be handed over to the families of those involved after the investigation ended, and they had to keep matters related to the demonic god secret. Chloe, a bit uneasy, asked exactly why. The director explained that the enemy wasn't just outside, both had gone through tough times and now needed to rest. Chloe turned to Leo shyly while a slight blush colored her cheeks. She looked down nervously, intertwining her hands, feeling like she finally had to say something important. Leo, noticing her sudden change to a more serious tone, looked surprised. Chloe took a deep breath and her face flushed even more as she tried to start talking. Barely saying a word, however, right then the door burst open. Chelsea Celia and Thomas barged in excitedly, celebrating that Leo had woken up, totally killing the mood. The director appeared briefly, warmly greeting the rowdy students his presence caused excitement and some nerves among the hero candidates. With a smile, he announced that there would be a celebration party the next night. He also mentioned that students without formal clothes should visit Lumenia City before the event, joking affectionately about youthful energy. Leo and Chloe exchanged looks. She repeated the word party, reflecting on the unexpected news, while the atmosphere filled with tension and unspoken secrets. An elegant ballroom lit by huge golden chandeliers. A resonant voice welcomed everyone present, announcing the celebration for those who had passed the midterms. In the foreground, a shiny white shoe stepped on the polished ballroom floor. The presenter, identified as Lumbats, proclaimed the arrival of the first group of hero students, enthusiastically asked the crowd who would be the handsome young men and charming girls entering first. Thomas and Tide made their entrance dressed in formal suits. Thomas happily commented that the party was his reward, while Tide bragged that Lumenia Academy was easy for them. The celebration started with everyone elegantly dressed, chatting near tables full of food and enjoying the sophisticated atmosphere under the chandelier light. Thomas and Tide were already eating when Thomas wondered why their class hadn't arrived yet. Tide joked, saying that in Lumenia, heroes don't tolerate being late. Thomas looked up, surprised by new arrivals, as Lumbates enthusiastically announced the entrance of another pair of students. Eliana appeared wearing a dazzling gold dress, accompanied by Nella, who rocked an elegant silver white gown. The host praised both their beauty as they walked gracefully. Thomas and Tid reacted with funny expressions, almost spitting out his food from the shock of seeing them pass by. Stunned Thomas awkwardly tried to compliment them. While Eliana joked around and Nella held back a smile, Lumbites excitedly pointed again toward the entrance with flair. This time he announced two attendees representing the pride of the mighty Lordran Empire. Buddy Chelsea and Legoland entered with a cocky attitude. Wearing dark blue and silver suits, the crowd murmured, impressed by their noble presence. Some even called Chelsea a princess. Recognizing her status, Lumbates then introduced the next pair entering. Leo appeared dressed in a formal white jacket, accompanied by Celia Serdinger, who wore a striking red dress. Celia quietly felt glad she picked a color that matched Leo. From their table, Nella and Eliana were surprised to see them together. Nella enthusiastically identified the class president, while Eliana repeated the title in awe. Leo greeted confidently. Enjoying the attention he was getting, the celebration continued with applause from classmates like Nella and Thomas, who praised their group leader on stage. Host Ariana smiled energetically, asking if everyone was enjoying the event. Thomas responded with exaggerated enthusiasm, while other students laughed and celebrated loudly. One of them silently wished to be rescued from the host's over-the-top energy, who kept hyping up and thanking the crowd for their great response. Surrounded by floral illustrations, Ariana expressed her joy seeing the students having a good night. But suddenly she struck a dramatic pose, pointing seriously at the audience, and announced it was time to reveal the midterm exam results. The joy at Leo's table vanished completely. Thomas dramatically slumped down, wondering how anyone could enjoy after that. Leo knew he was the prodigy, while the others showed nervousness. Ariana, holding the mic, chuckled softly and admitted they expected that kind of reaction. From the hard-working student group, raising 3 fingers, she explained only the top 3 from each specialty would be announced that night. Full results would be handed out by teachers. The signal was given from the stage, and 2 teachers got ready to announce the winners. One of them, the attractive Professor Allen, stepped on stage. Eliana sighed excitedly from her seat, seeing the renowned Ice Knight. Ice-cold Professor Allen congratulated the students for their exam efforts and began announcing the best. From the cavalry department, an animation appeared on screen with icons and names of the top 3 over 1 places. Celia Serdinger took first place, followed by Duran, Moira, and Zinnia. Professor Allen read the names aloud, formally confirming Celia, Duran, and Zinnia as the top performers in the midterm evaluation. Celia, sitting at her table, looked thoughtful, her gaze lost in space, maybe hoping to see Leo's name among the department's best. However, seeing Leo completely calm while sipping his drink, she noticed with surprise he didn't seem to be among the selected. Later, Professor Len confidently approached the mic to announce the results. From the magic department, revealing that students Abba, Chelsea, and Emo had secured the top spots. Chelsea looked toward Leo, clearly confused for not hearing his name among the standouts. Leo, unfazed, offered a serene expression that seemed to say it wasn't a big deal. Thomas also leaned in, murmuring worriedly, noticing another notable absence. Chloe Muller, who usually ranked among the best, also didn't appear on the magic list. Celia glanced at Chloe, sitting next to her. Both, who used to be the top performers, had been mysteriously left out of the official rankings, sparking silent doubts among those present. Chloe lowered her gaze with a small, hard-to-read smile, showing no disappointment at not being mentioned. At that moment, Professor Len internally recalled that Chloe had been under investigation for the magical grimoire incident despite her obvious talent in the field. Suddenly, Professor Sedan stood up dramatically, pointing at Chloe and passionately proclaiming that to him she was the true number 1 in magical studies. Professor Harry sighed, clearly used to his colleagues' outbursts on stage. Len smiled, slightly amused by his partner's gesture. Meanwhile, Celia gave Chloe a gentle pat on the shoulder, and Chloe looked at her, blushing but happy for the kind gesture. Then the brilliant Professor Yura stepped onto the stage to announce the summoning results. She enthusiastically cheered on her students, sparking loud cheers, especially from the guys. On the screen, the names of the top summoners, Walden, Elisa, and Jordan, appeared as Yura read them aloud. Celia scanned the room again, her expression growing more worried when she noticed Leo wasn't listed in any of the announced rankings. From his seat, Abadi Welling also noticed, arms crossed silently, wondering why Leo Plop hadn't been named. The event host Ariana returned to center stage with a big smile. She asked if everyone was still enjoying themselves before announcing the night's most anticipated award, the student with the highest overall score, who would also be the academic representative of the year. The tension rose as cameras focused on the expectant faces of Celia, Abadi, and Walden. Ariana paused dramatically before finally announcing the result with great enthusiasm. She revealed the name of the top student, Leo Plot. Leo calmly looked up, showing no surprise. Thomas and Chelsea erupted in excited cheers as his name echoed, a mix of applause, polite claps, and confused faces spreading throughout the hall. The main screen projected his name clearly, right above his desk, momentarily interrupting the applause. Suddenly a hand shot up from a nearby table. An annoyed voice loudly protested. Imolu-chan, who'd placed third in magic, stood up angrily, demanding an explanation, questioning how it was possible for Leo to be the best when he hadn't even appeared in the top spots of any department. Leo smiled slightly, keeping his relaxed posture as murmurs grew among the attendees. More students began questioning how someone without standout rankings could get the highest recognition. On stage, Ariana seemed nervous, facing the challenge, stammering into the mic, assuring there was a specific reason for the decision. She started sweating under pressure, visibly unsettled, as the audience waited silently for her answer. Suddenly, her attitude completely shifted. Her eyes turned white with rage, and an intimidating energy surrounded her. She screamed furiously into the mic, visually transforming into a fierce-looking old lady known to all as Grandma Tenny. She shook her fist in the air and hurled insults at the disrespectful students, demanding they listen closely to her only explanation. From their seats, Professor Sedan and Harry watched with amusement. Harry sarcastically commented that it seemed like Grandma had possessed Ariana again. Sedan chuckled. The angry host laid out the first point: double-class students like Leo couldn't be evaluated within a single department, since their skill combos made fair comparison tough. She used Eliana Leiden as an example, who combined magic and swordsmanship. Though not the best in each individually, her mastery of both made her exceptional. Secondly, she firmly pointed out Leo had scored the highest among all first years in the combined practical exam, which included hero studies and combat. From his seat, Imolu-chan objected again, claiming other students also excelled in parts of that complex exam. Ariana mercilessly called him ignorant, revealing that Leo exceeded all expectations, which included hero studies and combat. From his spot, Imolu-chan objected again, claiming other students also stood out in parts of that tough exam. Ariana called him out, mercilessly accusing him of being clueless, revealing that Leo exceeded all expectations during the dangerous practical mission in the Hero Kingdom. Then she dropped the bomb that silenced the whole room. Leo was the one who defeated the powerful demon Subarn. The classmates who witnessed the ceremony were left speechless while silence took over the place. Leo stayed, calm, his red eyes glowing as he silently accepted recognition for his feat. Eliana and Thomas watched from afar, totally stunned. When they finally found their voice, Eliana muttered in disbelief. Did he really beat Barn? Thomas, just as stunned, asked if he'd pulled it off solo with Chloe and Leo. Chill. He leaned back and shut his eyes, saying nothing, keeping that mysterious vibe on stage. The old lady's personality, Tenny, suddenly vanished. Ariana looked wiped and confused, not sure how to keep going, but she tried to explain more. Then Professor Siden kindly stepped in, saying enough had been said and the students now got the decision. Professor Siden formally wrapped up the awards ceremony and invited everyone to keep enjoying the party. Easing the tension in the room at the teacher's table, Yura sliced his meat while calmly calling Lem by name to start a more personal chat about the results. Yura asked what might have happened if the double-class students' grades had been included in the rankings, thinking seriously. Len said it would have caused chaos, especially in the magic department, explaining that if students like Leo were counted, everyone else on the magic list would have dropped at least one spot. Yura, surprised, started to suspect who the real top magic student was and confirmed it was Leo. Professor Alan, hearing this, spun around shocked. Yura then realized the same must apply to the summoning specialty. Len avoided Alan's gaze while Alan muttered that Leo had to be the best at everything. Yura was also shook. Alan admitted trying to be number one in all specialties wasn't just some impossible fantasy. Len, determined, said he planned to guide Leo's magical talent. But Yura fired back hard, slamming the table, arguing that Leo's summoning skill was way rarer and more valuable. Alan looked at both sides and said Leo looked better with a sword, sparking another debate. Meanwhile, the assistant teachers, Carlos and Anna, watched the growing argument between Len, Yura, and Alan with tired eyes, both shaking their heads, clearly wiped out by the debate. The next day in class, Thomas was slumped over his desk. Chelsea eyed him seriously, mumbling he was the first person she'd seen look hungover from orange juice. Professor Harry came in holding a scroll, walked to the front of the room, and called for silence, cutting the morning chatter. In front of the school map, he announced he had details about the academic trip and reminded students their destination was the far-off Elven territory. Eliana and Tide couldn't hide their hype. Eliana said they'd heard they could pick the spot, and Tide mentioned places like the fruit-filled forest, but Professor Harry pointed firmly to a zone north on the big wall map, then revealed their class would be heading to Elfia, a northern region of the Elven territory. Immediately, Thomas, Eliana, and Tide froze with desperate looks. A note explained Elfia was a small, isolated country, known for its year-round cold weather. Eliana loudly complained about having to go somewhere so remote. Tide agreed, feeling it was a mistake. Professor Harry shifted blame to the class president, Leo, who'd made the call. Eliana looked at him, shocked, questioning his choice. Leo stayed calm with crossed arms. Thomas asked him straight up why he decided that, and Leo, chill as ever, told everyone to buy the supplies they'd need in Luminia City before the trip. Eliana realized she'd need warm clothes, starting with gloves. Chelsea agreed, saying a good winter coat would be a must-have too. Meanwhile, Leo thought quietly about Elsia. Though humans saw it as a no-name place, he knew it was a sanctuary for fairies. An image popped into his mind, the fairy king Syl rode smiling in a lush green sanctuary, waiting for visitors alongside a smaller fairy. Later, Leo and Nayla stood in front of a big fountain in Luminia's central plaza, ready to gather the materials needed for the trip. Leo efficiently assigned tasks. He'd handle the food and general supplies while Nayla hunted down the potions. Leo hit up a local butcher shop, holding up 3 fingers as he bargained with the seller, probably for the amount of meat needed. Then he bounced out of another store, nodding at the merchant after grabbing more provisions, walking solo down a sunlit street. He took a deep breath, feeling good about finishing his shopping. Suddenly his senses sharpened, he froze alert, sensing something off. He glanced toward a narrow alley where a sign marked Street 13. He instantly recognized the infamous Curaçao district. He knew that place was dangerous and key. With a serious face, he headed straight into the alley. In front of a shop with the sign Lutex, he confirmed it was the same spot where Lucian and Chloe scored dark magical items. He set his backpack on the steps, ready for any danger inside. Pushing open the door, he peeped into the dark interior. His red eyes locked in with determination. The inside was covered in dust and cobweb-scattered furniture, overturned and debris everywhere. A teddy bear stood upright on the floor. Leo analyzed the scene, thinking maybe the investigators had already cleaned up, but the pristine condition of the bear felt super sus. What was a teddy bear doing in such a cursed dangerous spot? Sword in hand, he stayed on alert, facing the bear. It was weird it was still there if the shop had been inspected. Suddenly the bear's button eyes glowed red, sinister as hell. Leo recognized dark magic vibes, wondering if it was some kind of mind curse. The bear violently twisted, bursting with dark energy until it morphed into a monstrous creature. Leo reacted instantly. Knowing it was a demon, swinging his sword, he faced the shadow. Multiple red eyes watched him from the darkness. He used light magic to shield himself. The demon fired a destructive beam that Leo barely dodged. He immediately understood this wasn't a regular beast but a high-level demonic entity. The creature with many red eyes fully emerged, taunting in a chilling voice, claiming to use mental decay spells and other nasty curses. The demon's voice sounded familiar to Leo. Eyes wide, he suddenly realized who his opponent was. Before him stood a huge, amorphous creature covered in glowing red eyes. The entity spoke with disdain. Recognizing Leo's sensitivity and skill in detecting cursed magic, though it noticed his talent, it wasn't impressed. Leo's mind raced, connecting that voice and power to memories from his past life. He feared it was a copy of the demon queen Silatuna, an ancient commander with massive power. In his mind, an image of the real Silatuna's body appeared, and he quickly deduced what he faced was just a disposable replica. The copy sensed Leo's mixed aura and his status as a magic swordsman, showing forced respect for his skill. Still, it slowly advanced with a threatening tone, then suddenly attacked with insane speed, slashing brutally with huge deformed claws. Leo took the hit and was dragged across the floor, feeling overwhelmed. He knew he had to bounce ASAP. Regaining his stance, sword in front, he searched for an escape while keeping a close eye on his foe. Silatuna's monstrous silhouette dripped dark goo as it loomed over him. It spoke maliciously, mocking and ironically thanking him for the meal. Its huge mouth opened, ready to devour him. Right then, a bright golden light exploded from outside. Leo sensed a powerful presence. Calm as he adjusted his tie, outside Professor Albie appeared, his glasses reflecting the intense luminous energy. He raised his hand and cast a sacred spell. The spear of light, a massive lance made of pure golden energy, descended from the sky, crashing through the roof and piercing the demon replica. The creature screamed in pain as the light consumed it. Before vanishing completely, it let out a muffled sound. Professor Albie, surrounded by a glow, extended his hand. The demon saw he was a cursed eye mage. The replica trembled in agony, its form dissolving under the attack. While the creature writhed, Leo held his ground. Watching without moving, the demon stepped closer, thinking having an audience would make the moment way more dramatic. The monster screamed in rage. Leo, caught off guard, spun around, seeing the beast burst into the shop like no cap insane. Albie coldly sized up the creature, calling the trash intense golden energy as it started swirling around it. Expecting another powerful spell, 2 golden magic circles popped up on the ground. The creature freaked out, seeing the power build up. Surrounded by blinding light, the professor sneered at the monster, calling it demon filth. Silatuna's copy twisted violently, unleashing dark energy, screaming its hatred right into the professor's eyes. Disregarding its fairy-like magical traits and threats, Albie stayed stone cold. His golden eye blazed bright with zero emotion. He said he didn't care about some copies leftovers. With one cold command, Albie unleashed his power, a pure light spear. It shot straight at the creature, wiping it out completely. Only darkness remained, slowly fading away. Leo watched everything blown away by the mage's power, recognizing him as the feared cursed eye sorcerer, but something else popped into his head. Another name, another title, the Tartar Destroyer. A quick flash showed him engulfed in flames. Leo guessed Albie had entered Luminia to get access to resources and permits for demon hunting. Then Albie asked for an explanation. Leo pointed to some damaged plushies on the floor. He explained the demon replica had come from one of them, a cursed bear. Holding the torn toy, he mentioned it carried a mental confusion curse probably placed by Silatuna to mess with minds and cause chaos. Albie took the object seriously and said Luminia's investigators would be grilled hard for missing such dangerous goods even with golden energy floating around it. Albie told Leo he'd let his unauthorized investigation slide this time considering the demon threat. He also offered future help, leaving the door open for an alliance against common enemies, making it clear his gratitude was because Leo had helped his sister Aaliyah during the Seymour incident. Leo, shocked by this personal connection, took it all in, silently slinging his backpack. He got ready to leave the safe house. Inside, the emblem of House Laurent was visible, one of the 3 founding families of the academy. A spark of determination lit up Leo's eyes, wondering if Albie's influence would get him into Luminia's forbidden library. Outside the shop, Neela greeted him happily, saying she'd already got all the materials for the trip. She noticed residual energy on Leo's arm and asked if he was hurt. She quickly cast healing magic while Leo downplayed it and thanked her with a serious look. Leo thought about the fight. Silatuna's figure confirmed his suspicion she was the one who got Chloe that dark grimoire. A week later, a huge blue portal shone on Luminia's grounds under a sunny sky. Students gathered, ready for their school trip. Leo waited near the portal while Neela and Eliana reaffirmed their promise. Nearby, Harry yawned just as Celia called Leo, grabbing his attention before departure. She came up confused, asking why he picked the icy Elfia as the trip destination. Though she said she hated the cold, she wished Leo luck. He silently returned the gesture, wishing her safety as she walked away. Watching her leave, Leo turned to his class and firmly told Group 5 it was their turn to get ready and cross the portal. Behind him, Chelsea hyped up the trip enthusiastically while Thomas shook like crazy, loudly complaining about his hate for extreme cold. Leo took a determined step toward the swirling blue energy, ready to face the journey to the sea with full focus. In front of the portal, Leo stood with Neela, Eliana, Thomas, and Chelsea. He clearly stated their destination: Elfia, a region in the Elven territory. Crossing the portal, they instantly arrived in a snowy land. Ahead stood a majestic building, the Serum Academy, not far away. A tense convo was going down. 2 arrogant elves were bullying a younger elf. Mocking his mixed heritage and humble looks, the young elf lowered his head, embarrassed by the insults raining down on him. Under the cold, hostile air, suddenly a firm step broke the scene. A red-haired figure appeared with a serious expression. It was Runia Rondoa, a first-year rep from a powerful family who sharply called out the bullies. Demanding they act like true descendants of the Serum lineage, the elf leading the mockery protested. He questioned if Runia really accepted a half-breed among them and threw shade at her simple clothes. With an intense glare, Runia called his behavior disgusting. The bullies were left speechless. Fueled by her words, her famous temper flared up and she said if their problem was the boy's clothes, then they should just wear his stuff. Intimidated, the bullies backed off, mumbling insults as they left. Calling her crazy once calmer, Runia turned to the young elf named Luke. She asked why he wore such poor clothes while offering him her scarf. Luke, grateful, explained his clothes had been stolen. He accepted the scarf with a smile. Bruna shivered without a coat and sneezed, jokingly blaming the bullies. Luke, worried, told her to get her scarf back, but she reassured him with a confident smile. Curious about her good mood, Luke asked why she was so happy. Runia answered with a big grin. Her familiar had finally been born. Luke clapped enthusiastically, genuinely congratulating her. She warmly thanked him. But she explained she had to leave to finally meet her magical creature and excitedly headed to an office to find her dad. Inside, Ilan Rondoa, an academy professor, greeted her with a smile. He reminded her to treat him like a teacher while at school. Ilan confirmed the news. Farina's son had been born successfully. Runia lit up with happiness, her eyes shining with excitement, asking eagerly when she could meet him. But Ilan's expression turned serious as he informed her that unfortunately, the familiar had already formed a contract with someone else. Runia froze, her joy turned into confusion, her ears trembling with sadness. Ilan tried to explain their situation and mentioned the message from Farina, but before he could continue, Runia slammed the desk in fury, demanding to know who had snatched her magical creature. Meanwhile, the group of students had just arrived at the now inactive portal site. Thomas complained again about the cold. Tay shivered beside him while Leo silently accepted the discomfort as part of the journey. Professor Harry appeared wrapped in a pink blanket, advising them to stay calm and not let Elfia's weather get to them. Harry explained they were in Belkia, the capital, and asked about its history. Chelsea raised her hand excitedly just as Thomas sneezed loudly. She explained that Belkia was named after the fairy knight Belshazzar, a disciple of the founder Luna, mentioning her heroic image. Leo silently corrected the common version, recalling with Luna and Aaron that the 3 had trained Belcha in ancient times. A slight smile crossed his face, thinking about how that proud figure was now revered as a legendary knight. The professor confirmed Chelsea's info matched official records and added that the Ersar family descendants of Belkia led the local council. In the distance through the snow, several figures began to emerge from the landscape, slowly approaching the newly arrived students. Professor Harry and Thomas noticed the group's advance. The silhouettes became clearer with each step. Nervous Thomas asked if there could be bandits even here. The professor calmly replied that unpleasant people could show up anywhere. From the front of the group, a friendly voice greeted Professor Harry and asked how he'd been since their last meeting. The newcomers approached with firm steps, their figures standing out sharply against the snowy white landscape. Leading the elves was a tall, elegant man with silver hair and intense blue eyes. He smiled confidently and was accompanied by others, elves dressed with great elegance. Eliana and 2 other students held their breath blushing at the imposing presence of leader Rune Ersar. He was the council chief and head of House Ersar. He warmly greeted Professor Harry, saying he'd been waiting for his arrival that day. Harry watched with a smile as the seemingly unshaken Rune Ersar, noticing how the elven leader hadn't changed since their last meetup. Meanwhile, Eliana, totally starstruck, clutched her chest, convinced she'd just met the man of her dreams. Next to her, Nella barely held back a laugh at her friend's over-the-top reaction. Leo, witnessing the whole scene, just watched with zero interest, wondering if the elf's old age even mattered to Eliana. She, confused, tried to joke, hinting if maybe he was jealous. Leo flat out denied it, reminding her elves lived for centuries and aged super slow, then threw a direct question. Considering elf longevity, how old did she think their host was? Not far off Professor Harry and Rune exchanged amused looks while watching the visitors' hype energy. Rune commented the group seemed pretty energetic, while his assistant pointed out previous groups were more disciplined. Harry explained they were just freshmen, still immature. Blushing, Eliana politely approached Rune and asked if she could get his name and age. Rune smiled at her boldness, admitting he'd forgotten to introduce himself properly, then revealed his identity, Rune Ersar, head of one of the most influential families in the region. Then casually he mentioned he was 97 years old. Eliana froze in shock. Professor, Harry laughed, saying Rune was still in the prime of his life. Thomas, standing beside him, shyly asked if Rune would be their guide during their stay in Elfsia. Rune confirmed he would, repeating his role as head of the Ersari house in the regional council. Thomas Pale accepted his greeting with tears in his eyes, thinking he was doomed. Harry, with a serious tone, told Thomas they'd talk privately later. The scene shifted to a traditional building at dusk, warm light spilling from the windows of the lodging assigned for the school trip. But inside it was a let-down, cobwebs-covered dusty stairs, and a fearless mouse scurried across the floor. Thomas and Chelsea reacted horrified at the state of the place. Thomas hesitated to stay, while Chelsea flat out refused to spend the night there. Eliana, on the other hand, looked at Leo with a knowing smile, asking if he had predicted this disaster and had a backup plan. Leo confirmed he suspected as much and had prepped an option to sleep outdoors. Before complaints could blow up, Thomas, oddly upbeat, urged everyone to unpack, praising the place like it was perfect. Later, students gathered in the main hall. Some chatted upstairs, while others downstairs complained about the cold, joking they'd turn into snowmen if they stepped outside. Suddenly, quiet footsteps echoed on the old stairs. Thomas and Tide were the culprits, sneak into the girls' dorm. When they hit the landing, they froze. Right in front of them was Chelsea in pajamas and curlers, gripping a toothbrush like a weapon glowing with ghostly light. Without hesitation, she cast a wind spell that threw them and several nearby students down the hall. Leo watched the chaos from a nearby door with a chill expression. Noticing everyone seemed to be loving the trip's madness, not interested in the ruckus, he decided to explore solo. He opened a door to the chilly elven night, but just as he stepped out, a clear, formal voice called him by his full title, Mr. Leo Plop. Surprised, Leo stopped. A blonde elf, dressed in a sharp white and gold uniform, waited outside. Her stance and outfit screamed military authority. She informed him that the head of the Ersar house, Rune Ersar, wanted to see him immediately. Leo briefly weighed the unexpected invite, glancing at the cold outside from the doorway. Then the scene switched to Rune Ersar's office, stacked with books. The elf looked up from his papers and kindly invited him in, apologizing for the abrupt meeting and asking for a few minutes to finish his work. Leo politely from the meeting and asked for a few minutes to finish his task. Leo politely said no problem. While waiting, Leo checked out the place's decorations with interest. Old swords, a shield, a globe, lots looked like historical relics. Suddenly something grabbed his attention hard, a decorated dagger, mounted on the wall. His red eye lit up when he recognized it. He whispered its name silently. Erkin, a relic deeply tied to his past life. Rune jumped, asking how he knew it. That name, since his story was exclusive to the Leo family. Realizing the slip-up, he improvised, saying he read it in the Lumenia library. Rune accepted the explanation, considering that library had info on everything. Leo approached the weapon, sensing a faint trace of solar energy, but confirmed it had no real power. His mind traveled to the past, recalling the true story of the real Herkim in a memory. Leo then saw Kale resting by the fire. Aaron proudly showed off a dagger he'd made for Luna. She called Kale over to show him the gift. He put down his book, throwing a bored look, saying it looked like a knife stolen from a goblin. Luna got mad. Then Leo remembered Luna gave that dagger to her favorite student, Belche Ersar, before her last campaign against the Tartars. Belche had lost that weapon, which made Luna really sad. Back in the present, Rune explained that the version of Erkin on display was just a replica, a reward his ancestor won in a heroic world simulation. Also, he clarified these weapons are tied to whoever earns them and can't be used by others. Leo finally understood why that replica felt empty, like an object without real essence. Rune gestured for him to take a seat in front of him. Once seated, Leo confirmed the info provided by Professor Harry was correct. He currently held the position of first-year general representative at Lumenia Academy. Rune, a bit embarrassed to ask a favor on their first meeting, confessed he had an unusual request. Leo, curious, waited silently. The council leader explained he wanted Leo to meet his granddaughter, hoping that interaction might motivate or positively influence her. He detailed that the girl was also a first-year student enrolled in the prestigious Serum Academy located in the capital. Although she got in thanks to her great performance on the entrance exam, she soon lost all enthusiasm for her studies, which deeply worried her family. Rune handed Leo a small decorated key. Leo hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was right to get access to a private room, but he obeyed the request and headed to the indicated door. Opening it gently, he found complete chaos. The room was covered with closed books and papers everywhere, with barely any free space on the floor. He coughed lightly from the dust, and his attention was caught by numerous pictures stuck in a messy way all over the furniture. Examining them closer, Leo recognized they were all depictions of legendary heroes. Then he realized the owner of that messy shrine was an obsessive fan. He cracked a funny smile, realizing that while hero collectors weren't rare, this girl's level of devotion was unusually intense. In a wardrobe hung a perfectly ironed uniform from Serum Academy, contrasting with the chaos reigning at that moment. A sleepy voice called him, thinking it was her grandpa, a young elf, Irin Ersar, second-best first-year student in Seidon, sat up groggily, complaining about the interruption. Leo stayed at the entrance while she, still not realizing who her visitor was, got up from piles of stuff. When she fully opened her eyes and recognized him, her expression instantly changed. Irin let out a panic scream, seeing an unknown human, and reflexively hid under her blanket. Leo subtly pointed to one of the books about Kale, implying he was invited by her grandpa. Peeking cautiously from the blankets, Irin looked like a nervous caterpillar coming out of its cocoon. Leo waited patiently, grabbed one of the books about Kale, and thought about how elves represented their history. He read aloud a passage about the campaign in the northern mountains and commented that the info was well organized. Recognizing the effort in the collection despite the mess, Irin, still under the blankets, shyly asked him. Recognizing the effort behind the collection despite the mess, Irin, still wrapped in blankets, shyly asked if he shared her interest in heroes. When he nodded, his eyes lit up with excitement. The girl asked if he knew about the Battle of Darnos, a famous showdown where several heroes teamed up against a demon. Leo calmly replied, mentioning that was where Luna first used star magic, showing off his vast knowledge. Irin got hyped right away. In her mind, Leo already seemed like a hero straight out of the stories she loved. Embarrassed for talking so much, Irin introduced herself and apologized for acting like a superfan in front of a stranger. Leo smiled back, saying those old heroes would probably be stoked someone still remembered them. Pumped up, Irin shared her theory she thought the history had left out a major hero like 1/5 of the story, and that the official records were incomplete. She said her goal was to join a club and find Lero and Kale on her own. Leo thought that was a dope idea, but as soon as they mentioned school, Irin's hype faded. Her face went dark, remembering her situation, Leo noticed, and asked straight up, why, if she was so passionate, she didn't go to their academy? Irin shrugged, saying she didn't feel like Serum Academy was the right place for her. She compared herself to her classmates and thought her dreams weren't serious enough. Leo noticed her perfectly kept uniform and realized she hadn't really given up on her goals. He told her his class was visiting and his buddies would probably love to meet her and hear her stories. Irin was speechless, surprised at the chance to meet other students. Leo stood up, fixed his uniform, and mentioned that humans also had schools training heroes just like Serun. He said goodbye with a friendly smile, inviting her to check out Luminia's students if she was really curious, but when he opened the door, he unexpectedly ran into Rune, Irin's grandpa, who looked just as surprised as he did. Rune, skeptical, asked if he'd really been chatting with his granddaughter that whole time, and Leo calmly confirmed, touched. Rune wiped a tear, murmuring that Irin hadn't talked to anyone in months, so grateful. Rune offered Leo a magical item as a reward. Leo politely accepted, knowing refusing would be rude. Rune took him to the family treasure room packed with gold and relics and let him pick anything. Leo's eyes scanned the treasures until they landed on one in particular. He pointed at it without hesitation. Rune explained it was a jewel with a tiny carved fairy inside. Obtained 1000 years ago, said it had a special purpose. Leo accepted the gift gratefully. Holding the glowing gem, Leo fully realized that what many thought was just a sculpture was actually something way more important. Looking closer, he uncovered the shocking truth. Inside the golden gem was the sleeping body of a tiny royal fairy. At the student dorm, Professor Harry gathered everyone in the main hall to announce the field trip schedule. He explained they'd have a tough routine starting with forest training at 6 a.m., followed by missions. Eliana immediately complained about how intense the program was, saying they were supposed to be on a trip, not a boot camp, but the professor calmly reminded them the trip's purpose was training. Then he revealed that Leo himself had organized the whole itinerary. Leo just smiled, explaining the forest was perfect for combat practice, lightly challenging his classmates to keep up, which left Eliana silent and resigned. With that, the professor gave them freedom to enjoy their last hours of rest. Before the hard work started, later alone in his room, Leo sat on his bed staring at the jewel, amber, which he'd gotten from Rune. He recognized the powerful spell protecting it created by the Fairy King himself. He understood why no one knew its true contents. The king's contractor had disappeared so long ago that no elves remained who could identify its magic. But to Leo, that power felt familiar. an energy he recognized from his old friend Silroad. Remembering his promise to the king, Leo knew it was time to keep his word. He focused his energy and the jewel began to crack. In a burst of golden light, the seal broke and a tiny fairy woke up in his palm, glowing with a soft green shimmer. Upon opening his eyes, the tiny creature stretched, thinking his dad had finally set him free, but seeing Leo, he looked annoyed, demanding to know who that bold human was to treat him so casually with a proud attitude. The creature introduced himself as Kiram, the eldest son and heir of the Fairy King, expecting awe and respect. However, Leo, uninterested in his exaggerations, gave him a light tap on the forehead. The fairy staggered, surprised and hurt. Leo seriously reminded him that even his own father was always respectful, which made Kiram furious. Kiram tried to headbutt Leo's finger, a brave but totally useless move. Soon after, the fairy, calmer now, asked trembling if Leo was the chosen one. Leo confirmed indifferently, and Kiram changed his attitude, thinking a contract with a human wouldn't be so bad. Leo gently petted the fairy's head, guessing he must have been a huge pain for his own dad to seal him, trying to regain his pride. Kiram told Leo he seemed like a real contractor. Leo told him to take him to his kingdom to summon the king, but Kiram immediately refused, explaining he couldn't return until he recovered his 6 lost wings, and suggested they start the search in the forest. Leo smiled. It seemed fate had brought Silroa's son together with the right guy at the perfect time. The next morning, the sun rose over a snowy mountain landscape. Professor Harry led the students to the entrance of a vast fairy forest whose white depths looked as beautiful as they were intimidating. The students bundled up against the cold, marveled at the winter scenery where Chelsea knelt in the snow, muttering in disbelief that her opponent had defeated her using only wind magic. A hand reached out to her. It was Leo with a kind smile, offering help to get up while hinting she still had a lot of training ahead. Flashing back to the recent past, Eliana appeared annoyed, confronting Leo and demanding to know if he really planned to force her to train with sword and magic. Embarrassed and frustrated during the trip, she complained about his decision to make her train alone. Leo stayed calm, just looking at his own schedule, while the other students protested his demanding plan. Thomas and Ty also expressed their anger, with Thomas especially pissed because Leo had pointed out his lack of control over his summoned beasts. Then Chelsea stepped in, recalling how Leo had criticized her wind magic knowledge during the entrance exam. Determined, she challenged him to a duel to prove her true power. Leo accepted her challenge with a simple calm word, which only raised Chelsea's expectations. Knowing Leo always exceeded expectations, Chelsea prepared for the worst. She knew she had to strike first to keep him from reacting. She unleashed a powerful wind tornado that threw Leo backward, but he had already anticipated it, and with a calm expression summoned a dark red energy that burst from his hand, colliding directly with Chelsea's magic. From the edge of the fight, Eliana watched amazed. Chelsea was famous for her spellcasting speed, but Leo matched her pace effortlessly. Determined not to give up, Chelsea summoned magical wind chains to trap her opponent. The chains spun around him, but Leo didn't flinch. He stared at her and calmly said her name, while a dark red energy began wrapping around him. A knowing smile appeared on his face, as if everything had gone exactly as planned. He recalled the warning he'd given earlier and with a simple gesture shattered the chains to pieces. Using a burst of his own power to drive the lesson home, Leo clenched his fist and unleashed his own version of the wind spell, a spear of dark concentrated energy that flew past Chelsea, barely visible as it struck some trees in the distance. As a final taunt, a pile of snow fell from a shaken branch, completely covering her. She stood frozen, her face pale with humiliation. After his quick and decisive victory, Leo sheathed his sword while an ethereal dragon made of wind magic spun. Behind him, slowly fading away. Chelsea, still in shock, doubted if the magic she just saw could even be called normal. They shook hands as the other students watched, trying to figure out how their class rep was so damn powerful. Professor Harry explained that although Chelsea had great power, it was Leo's deep understanding of wind magic that decided the duel. He recommended everyone focus on mastering their current skills and follow Leo's lead. To improve their basic magic, though, Eliana and Thomas complained about being cold and hungry, totally defeated in spirit. Later, the herb gathering mission began. Leo was alone on a snowy trail, ready to dive deeper into the massive fairy forest. His official task was to collect herbs, and he already had one in his bag. He smiled, knowing his buddies were too wiped to keep exploring, which gave him the perfect chance to investigate on his own. Suddenly, the little fairy prince Kiram showed up carrying a bunch of herbs. Proud of his efficiency, Leo praised his work, but Kiram insisted he wasn't just any fairy. After stashing the herbs in his magic bag, Leo announced the real mission was about to start, finding the lost wings of the fairy. With Kiram perched on his shoulder, Leo moved through the snowy landscape until he suddenly stopped. The fairy asked why he stopped, and Leo seriously talked about a powerful illusion covering the whole forest. He recognized it as a type of magic similar to the Fairy King's, but slightly different. He understood the source of that magic was an ancient energy activated a century ago, right when Kiram was exiled. He concluded the fairy wings were being used as the core of the enchantment. At that moment, a threatening voice echoed from the shadows. The crunch of heavy footsteps in the snow made Leo and Kiram turn as they sensed a dark presence among the trees. A skeletal figure emerged, questioning what a human was doing in Celtic lands. Leo shot back that the weird part was an undead being here. The creature laughed dryly, claiming the forest was under the dark influence of the Tartars. Kiram got mad, saying this was a sacred sanctuary and demanding explanations. The skeleton looked at him with disdain and mocked. implying all fairies were weak. Hurt by the insult, Kiram exploded with green energy and flew at the creature like a magic missile. The skeleton's red eye glowed with malice as it watched the frontal attack. Though the hit was brave, it wasn't effective. Kiram landed nearby, complaining about the enemy's arrogance. Leo just sighed at the fairy's impulsiveness. Kiram tried to justify himself, but soon noticed his life magic was being corrupted by the enemy's death energy. The creature explained that even a low-level fairy was a living entity, making the corruption more effective. Green and black energy filled the air, and Kiram covered his nose, disgusted by the foul stench. The skeletal warrior gripped his huge sword, charging it with dark energy for a final blow. A red aura burst around him as he prepared to crush the fairy. Leo, with deadly focus in his eyes, shouted desperately at Kiram to get out of the way. The sword slammed down hard, breaking the ground right where the fairy had been a second before. The undead knight stood firm, surrounded by his corrupt energy. Kiram, trembling, saw a wave of dark energy coming at him. Just before impact, a glowing sphere wrapped him up and whisked him away safely. He landed on Leo's thigh, still scared but safe. Leo calmly explained their opponent was an ancient Tartar creature, a feared being from another era. He revealed his identity as a Death Knight. The skeleton roared his name, Kargor, loyal servant of the great Lich King. He raised his cursed sword, ready to keep fighting. He wielded his massive sword, vibrating with dark energy, preparing to launch another devastating attack against Leo and Kiram. In response, Leo drew his sword, which glowed with crimson light, tearing through the darkness. Facing the imposing undead figure, Leo got ready to fight, but Kargor emitted such a lethal presence that a pressure wave shook the air. Kidan, shocked, clung tightly to Leo's shoulder. Kargor unleashed his sword with brutal force, but Leo stopped it with a shield of condensed blue energy. The knight stepped back, surprised, unable to believe a human had unleashed such a powerful defense in such a short time. Despite the shock, he launched another furious attack, but Leo blocked it with his sword, sparking a shower of sparks. Kargor mocked, saying resistance was useless. Seeing the fight, Kiran jumped in bravely to help, but he was easily knocked down by the enemy, falling frustrated to the ground as Kiran tried to get up. A sacred flame ignited around him, not from the enemy but from Leo. The knight felt a new colossal power emerge on the battlefield. Wings of fire burst from Leo's back, wrapping him in legendary light. Kiran watched amazed, realizing Leo was also a spirit pact holder. Leo summoned an ancient spirit. A giant bird made of roaring flames appeared behind him. Desperate, Kargor raised his sword to defend against the sacred fire torrent. After the attack, a tiny Ignia bird, a miniature phoenix, landed on Leo's shoulder. Kiran looked at it in disbelief, not believing he was seeing a real phoenix. The bird, annoyed by the stare, started pouting. While Leo watched the scene with a playful smile, Kargor understood the threat. Two beings of vital energy were poisoned to his existence. The damn bastard stabbed his sword into the ground and unleashed his final move, summoning an army of skeletons. From the cursed earth, the dead rose with glowing red eyes. Leo watched without fear, and Kiran taunted him, thinking his energy was gone. But Leo smiled confidently now, surrounded by a vivid blue energy. Revealing he was using Kale's mana, which the phoenix recognized happily, Leo triggered an earthquake that shook the ground, easily destroying the first line of skeletons. Kargor and his remaining troops could only watch, powerless as their army was reduced to rubble. Then Leo slammed the ground hard, unleashing a technique from his past life, a whirlwind of energy that absorbed and shredded the rest of the undead. The knight demanded an honorable duel, but Leo reminded him that just moments ago he'd summoned an entire army, making his request worthless. Knowing he had no chance, Leo tried to escape. A red flash enveloped him as he fled the battle, leaving the knight and his soldiers behind. With the threat gone, Leo sighed and asked his two magical companions to enter his bag. While searching for a safe clearing, he reflected on what happened and wondered why Tartars would send a dark knight to a supposedly peaceful forest. A growl interrupted his thoughts. A last skeleton that survived the whirlwind stepped out from the trees. Leo turned to face it, hand on his sword's hilt, ready to take it out. However, before he could move, the skeleton was cut to pieces by a swift, invisible attack from an unknown figure. Leo stopped, loosening his tie as his expression turned serious, bracing for whatever came next. An elf in a white uniform appeared, accusing him of summoning the creature. Leo recognized him as a Seiran Academy student. Though he denied the accusation, the elf didn't buy it and launched an attack. Leo easily dodged the clumsy rushed strike. With an annoyed look, grabbed the elf's arm and hit him with the pommel of his sword, leaving him kneeling and immobilized with a single move. A calm voice broke the tension. A young woman with long red hair emerged from the trees, introducing herself as Runia. She apologized for her companion's behavior and begged Leo not to judge all Seiran students by that incident. Leo accepted the apology with a nod and asked what a Seiran student was doing in such a remote place. Runia explained she was there for practical training, while Leo mentioned he was on a school trip. As they parted, Runia offered a traditional elven salute, wishing the Belchia forest would protect him. Leo repeated her name quietly, Runia Rondoa, feeling he'd heard it before. As they left, Runia angrily shook her clumsy companion, embarrassed by the scene he'd caused. In front of the student he'd attacked for no reason. The scene shifted to a large hall where Rune, Professor Harry, and Leo presented a report to the Elven Council about the incident with the Death Knight. Rune confirmed monsters had started appearing in the sanctuary. Though luckily the forest's demonic corruption wasn't severe yet, Harry defended Leo, making sure he wasn't someone who lied, and that jumping to conclusions only led to mistakes. A serious-looking elf with a stern face and glasses named Herdian Wind showed up. He was the advanced serum class teacher and coldly introduced himself to the council, asking to hear Leo's testimony directly. Inside, Gerdium doubted everything, thinking the kid had confused a simple skeleton for a real death knight. His gaze clearly showed skepticism as he looked at the young human, making such bold claims. Then Gideon asked Professor Harry if he really believed his student's story, to which he replied without hesitation, affirming that Leo was the general representative of Lumenia Academy, a position with huge responsibility that spoke for itself about his skill and trustworthiness. Surprised, Gerdium admitted that if the story was true, it could be valuable experience for his own students. Intrigued, he asked Leo if, besides being a leader, he was confident in his magic talent. Seeing an opportunity, he proposed a joint class between his students and the visitors from Lumenia. The next day, a lavish reception was held for the joint class where students from both academies mingled in the grand hall. Thomas and Chelsea were impressed by the event, comparing it to an imperial party. Eliana and other students were hyped to check out Serum's teaching style, while the teachers chatted between bites and sips of wine. Leo watched everything quietly, realizing Gerdium had planned the event to test him. Runia approached Leo with a thoughtful look, asking if they had met before. Before he could answer, she flashed a charming smile and asked him to dance. Leo agreed, and they moved gracefully in the center of the hall. Runia, surprised, asked how he also knew the steps of a traditional elven dance, and just as she asked his name, everything changed. Hearing Leo say plop, her face hardened, intense anger filling her eyes as she grabbed him by the tie, accusing him of stealing her summon. Leo recalled an old incident with a pact bearer and realized Runia was the original intended owner of Fiore. She held him furiously, insulting him with restrained rage. Leo responded with a calm smile, mentioning that Flora was fine. His relaxed attitude only made the elf angrier, losing control completely and lunging at him. Right in the middle of the hall full of guests, the teachers immediately stepped in, and Runia was forced to awkwardly apologize. Gerdium made her bow and ask forgiveness for her shameful behavior. Leo accepted the apology politely, though he knew she only obeyed out of obligation. As the Lumenia group left, Gerdian stopped Runia to sternly warn her that as a representative of Serun, she must never make such a public mistake again. She accepted the scolding, but something inside her sparked. She declared that Serun had to prove its superiority in the joint class. Her determination surprised even her professor, who ended up encouraging her to show that her academy was the best. However, he later worried he might have pushed her too hard. But it was too late. Runia was consumed by the desire to outshine Leo for Serun's honor. The next day, the joint class started in a large auditorium. Professor Harry welcomed the first-year Serum students, explaining they'd experience a class in Luminia's style, which sparked murmurs of interest. Then he called Thomas, Eliana, and Tyra to the front, surprising the three, who didn't expect to be chosen. He hyped them up, telling them they were among the best survivors of Luminia's tough training, and now it was their time to shine. Moved by his words, the three students prepared to show off their skills, Eliana with sword mastery, Thomas with alchemy, and Tyra with summons. The Serum students watched closely, taking notes on human techniques. Professor Gerdium, pleased, reflected on how seeing other races' methods could spark new ideas and awaken hidden abilities. However, he noticed Leo still hadn't shown anything, which also pissed off Runia. After the demonstration, the three reps bowed while Chelsea excitedly praised her teammates. Gerdium then took the floor, praising the Lumenia students. By his level and showing Satan's teaching method, he drew a complicated magic diagram on the board filled with Celtic runes, explaining how his approach was based on using magic as the foundation for a balanced education. Leo found it curious that despite talking about balance, all his theories revolved around magic. With a critical eye, he thought it was just another display of the elvish pretension he already knew from before. While the teacher continued his lecture, an image showed Leo struggling to stay awake, which didn't go unnoticed by his master, who was starting to show visible signs of annoyance. Annoyed by the lack of attention from the Lumenia students, Gerdium decided to end the theoretical part of the class and move on to a practical demonstration with pride. He pulled out a shiny red star-shaped crystal and announced he would show the true essence of Serun's power. Leo watched with a calm expression, his red eyes reflecting the magical glow of the gem. Gerdium raised the crystal with a proud smile, explaining that elves were by nature a race connected to magic. As he channeled his energy, the classroom ceiling transformed into a spinning cosmos, full of stars and magical symbols lighting everything with a golden shower. The Lumenia students were mesmerized. Chelsea exclaimed in awe, recognizing the stellar magic and ancient and complex elvish technique. Eliana and Nayla also marveled at the presentation, their faces lit up by the magical light. Gerdio explained that the spell was based on the legacy of his predecessor, the Lady Moon, whose formula was the foundation of all stellar magic. Smiling with self-satisfaction, he asked if they didn't think it was beautiful. Then, in a condescending tone, he invited Leo to ask questions, not expecting the human to show real interest. Leo didn't hesitate and stated the spell's interpretation was wrong. The statement shocked Professor Harry and caused a furious glare from Runa. Herodium's confidence crumbled, surprised and annoyed, and demanded Leo repeat what he said. Unfazed, Leo reaffirmed that the spell as written wouldn't work. Jermia mocked him, explaining it was an incomplete spell known by everyone, and that their ancestors had only managed to partially reconstruct it after losing the original legacy. but Leo knew the truth. That spell had been created by his friend Luna to be passed only to him in his past life. With a subtle smile, Gerdium challenged him to show how it should be done correctly if he was so sure. Harry worried. Understood the conflict could escalate, sweating nervously as tension grew while Leo approached the board. He thought that modern elvish magic was just a flawed imitation. He had received the authentic version, but died before he could pass it on. When he touched the board, green sparks shot from his fingers and he began writing. The Seiren students murmured in surprise. They had never seen that formula. Runa looked at him with a mix of anger and confusion. After a few minutes, Leo stepped back, declaring the formula complete. The rune shone with a new, fully restored energy before the whole stunned class. Gerdium trembled, asking what kind of magic it was and if Leo had used it before. At that moment, Leo remembered when Luna first showed him that stellar technique. Excited that he had perfected it, saying it was a gift just for him. Back in the present, he channeled that energy, making a bright golden flower bloom in his hands. Immediately, the classroom filled with magical flowers and butterflies, leaving everyone amazed. Nela and Eliana watched him in awe. Eliana whispered that their class rep had just pulled off something truly extraordinary. Runya, incredulous, wondered if Leo had really interpreted the Lost Founder's legacy correctly. Professor Gerdium fell to his knees, moved, questioning if the purpose of stellar magic was to create beautiful flowers. Leo explained that during the Calamity era, flowers almost vanished, and for Luna, that spell was a wish for peace and beauty in a world free of conflict. That deep truth made Gerdium shed tears, joining his hands in respect. Still in shock, he looked at Leo, unable to understand how he could know such ancient secrets. Leo bowed and whispered his name, without further explanation, with a carefree smile, claiming to be a self-taught genius and denying having elvish blood. Leaving Gerdium more confused than before, Harry stepped in to calm things down, apologizing for his student and announcing that the joint class was over for the day. He advised Gerdium not to make an official judgment just yet, but Gerdium had other plans. Suddenly, he grabbed Harry's hands desperately, his eyes shining as he begged to transfer Leo Plova to the Seiren Academy immediately. Harry was left speechless, totally shocked by the unexpected request. Later, Chelsea and Eliana took part in a cooking contest. Eliana enthusiastically presented her deadly risotto, confident she'd win Thomas Titi, and Nayla watched nervously, and Nayla, a bit anxious, offered her elf bread as a way safer option. Their fears were confirmed when Eliana started pushing Thomas way too hard to try her intense, questionable dish. After one bite, Thomas was drenched in sweat, pale, and about to throw up amid the chaos. Rune, Elzar, and Professor Harry showed up laughing just as Rune called the class rep. Leo instantly got serious. Putting on a stern face in front of the Elf Council leader, Rune dropped his usual smile and stepped forward to deliver the official verdict from the Grand Council about the Death Knight from a nearby door. Irin watched silently, feeling the sudden tension fill the room with a dark vibe. Rune announced that the council had confirmed sightings of multiple undead and dark knights in the fairy forest, which was supposed to be protected. That's why formal cooperation was requested from the Luminia and Seiren academies to investigate this strange and dangerous phenomenon. Eliana, Chelsea, and Neela listened from the entrance, visibly curious about eavesdropping on the conversation. Rune clarified that due to the risk, the most advanced Seiren students would lead the mission. Then, with a soft smile, he admitted he had another reason for visiting. He wanted to see Leo right then. His granddaughter Erin peeked shyly from a door, revealing she'd also come because she wanted to see the young man. Upon leaving, Leo greeted her warmly and invited her to meet his friends, much to an excited Chelsea's delight. The introduction was chaotic. The girls swarmed the shy elf with a flood of questions while Nayla quietly murmured how adorable she was. Overwhelmed by all the attention, Irene blushed hard, stammered, and bolted upstairs in a panic, leaving Eliana and Chelsea baffled. Chelsea wondered if they'd done something wrong, while Eliana thought she was just super shy. Before leaving, Rune seriously spoke to Leo, entrusting him with the mission after he left. Leo stepped out onto a cold balcony where he found Erin sitting alone, hugging her knees, clearly down after running away. Without saying much, Leo draped his coat over her shoulders. She was surprised and worried he'd be left without protection, but he brushed it off with a calm smile. Leo got straight to the point and asked why she'd left Seiren. She looked down, saying the usual. She felt like she didn't have what it took to become a real hero like the others. Erin remembered that when everything got overwhelming, she met someone warm like the sun with a face that lit up. She confessed she deeply admired Runya, who she saw as a real hero, strong, kind, and confident. Inspired by that admiration, Erin pushed herself to reach the advanced class, training hard with a heavy shield. But during a combat test against Runya, something went wrong, and since then she thought Runya looked down on her. Leo listened quietly, thinking maybe he should just talk to Runya directly to get her side of the story. While Erin drifted off, an image of her legendary ancestor, the hero Belchia, popped into her mind. She admitted she'd been seeing her in visions lately, which made Leo smile softly and ask if she liked those stories. Erin answered excitedly, then Leo compared her admiration for Runya to the path Belchia took under her master's guidance. He advised her not to stress so much about others and to follow her own path, extending a hand with a kind smile. Inviting her to come back with her crew the next day, students from both academies gathered at the edge of the fairy forest to start the joint research mission. Runya, furious, approached Leo, demanding to know how he'd earned Erin's trust so fast. Leo calmly explained he just told her she didn't have to be scared, which left Runya even more confused. He clarified that Irin had been so nervous during their fight she thought Runya hated her now. Runya was surprised, confessing she'd just been focused because she thought Irin was really talented and asked Leo to watch out for her. At that moment, Professor Gerdium arrived with a group of senior students who would lead the dangerous mission. Among them, a purple-haired elf stepped forward confidently. It was Werelgra, the third-year rep from Sidon Germium Academy. He greeted warmly, praising a recent thesis of his that he considered very promising. While shaking hands, Leo noticed a simple black ring on the author's finger. Curious, he asked Runya who that student was. She explained it was Lauter, the highly respected senior rep. She added that his grades had improved so fast everyone was talking about him, which made Leo even more suspicious. With everyone present, Professor Harry announced it was time to assign teams for the mission. Gerdian started reading names, revealing the first group would be Leo Club Runya Rundoa and their leader third-year Lauter Algra, who greeted them with a confident smile. Ready to command the quirky squad, Leo thought to himself in disbelief that this couldn't be real. Behind him, Runya walked with an annoyed, tired expression. In her mind, she recalled Gerdium's words, who hoped they'd get closer after this chance. Runya showed a face of disgust, with eyes that looked like they were throwing fire. She didn't get why she had to team up with a thief. She saw the problem crystal clear. Silently and coldly questioning the situation, still pissed about the theft issue, her head felt like it was about to explode. Her face showed hardness and rejection. She didn't recognize Leo as Fiora's contractor. Leo, on the other hand, barely glanced back and stayed chill, not giving it any weight. The map showed how the team split up to explore a land covered in ice and snow in the fairy forest zone. Each group was assigned Leo Runya, and Lauter went deep into the forest. Irin and Chelsea's crew handled the forest entrance area. Eliana's team explored the herb zones. Nayla accompanied Thomas in the pine area. And finally, Tide's group watched another forest entrance. Runya looked up and scanned around, noticing Lauter was missing, having split off, even though they were supposed to move as a group. Leo recalled Lauter enthusiastically saying he'd go solo and they'd meet back at the forest center. He figured Lauter probably had some solo business to handle. Suddenly, as they moved Leo's hand, he thought he probably had some solo business to handle suddenly as they moved forward. Leo felt an aura growing on the ground. Runya appeared and carefully scanned both sides, his eyes full of worry they had gone way too far and still hadn't run into any zombies, even though last time there were tons. Leo's face tensed up. Realizing something was off, even though everything looked the same as before, he raised his hand for Kiran to check more closely. Soon he discovered it was an illusion spell, a magic from the Spirit King, but it didn't seem like the same magic as his dad's. He remembered that in those lands there was a curse, something that hadn't existed before. Only someone who'd lived a century could recognize it. That disaster, in a shadowy castle, a skeleton king was kneeling, holding his sword. He was Erebus's most loyal subordinate commander of Tartarus, who had survived the great tragedy. Leo's face darkened as he recalled the Death King of the Underworld, Kaiser, on a silent night. He remembered when Kaiser appeared before his subordinates. The Death King never acted alone, that Chaos Knight could be his proxy. Back in the present, Leo rested his hand on his thigh, ready to stand, then raised his hand and looked up at the sky with determination. There was something in the fairylands that Silroa wanted to protect. Runya watched him confused, not getting what was going on. Suddenly, Leo's eyes widened in surprise. Something was coming from deep in the forest. He got on guard, gripping his sword. At that moment, Lauder showed up with a cheerful look, asking how the investigation was going, if they'd found any zombies. They said no, and Lauder congratulated them, remembering that Leo had been the first to see a Death Knight. Leo shook his hand respectfully, but doubted in his mind. He noticed a black ring and linked it to something he'd suspected about Lauder. Instead, Lauder confused him more by saying maybe he was wrong, giving him a couple pats on the shoulder while laughing. He said there wasn't a single dead one, well, except one Death Knight, and that was normal. That first-year students got so hyped up. Then he explained that the most powerful undead needed necromancers to constantly supply them energy, which is why demon summoners were always near Death Knights. Runya's heart raced as she put a hand on her chest. That meant maybe there was a demon in the forest. Lauter, confident, explained they were in Belsia, the capital of Elsavetia, protected by a constellation spell created by the founder Lady Belsia that blocked demons from entering. However, Runya stood firm there was no rule saying a necromancer had to be a demon. Leo, with a cold face, added that other creatures could also use dark power. Then Lauder made a grotesque face, laughing in a creepy tone. He suggested even fairies could be an interesting example. He stared at Leo with a defiant smile and reminded him of the pride of the fairy race. Then Lauder turned around and gave the final order to complete the investigation and meet at the forest entrance. Leo, watching his silhouette, realized that man was looking for something else. Runya next to him caught a flicker of fear in his eyes. Both understood Lauder knew something important. The sun set, giving way to night. Under the white snow, a voice echoed in a nearby house. It was Thomas, who reported his group hadn't found the Death Knight either. With a bored look, he leaned on the chair and said they hadn't even seen an undead. Chelsea, hearing this, jumped up full of excitement and suspicion. She remembered the director had said zombies had been seen there. So how had they suddenly disappeared? At the start of the investigation, Thomas smiled tiredly and pretended to be exhausted, showing a lifeless face before going to rest. But Chelsea, furious, grabbed him by the collar to stop him. Meanwhile, Leo jumped out the window and landed on the ground, eyes locked on a fancy building. That was the Seiron Academy dorm. A door opened and Leo's cold figure entered. His hand grabbed the sword hanging from his waist. On the table was a notebook with the name Lauter, Leo looked at it closely, thinking just like he suspected. Someone had snuck out of the dorm. Suddenly his eyes fixed on the map spread on the table. He touched the marked spot and understood it was the back entrance to the spirit forest. At that moment, Runya climbed through the window, frowning with anger. Leo turned his head at the sound and quickly covered the girl's mouth so she wouldn't make noise. She looked at him reproachfully, crossing her arms. While he kept a worried look, Leo kept thinking about Lauter, who had already escaped into the spirit forest. However, a whisper behind the door caught his attention. Someone mentioned Lauter, who was supposed to be asleep. Leo, in a sudden move, put his arm around Runya's shoulder, hugged her, and lifted her up. Without hesitation, he jumped out the window with her, catching her off guard. In another room, Irin was reading a book when a strange noise made her stand up. She slowly approached the window and looked outside. Her eyes widened, seeing Leo tenderly carrying Runya. The book slipped from her hands and her legs trembled. Immediately, a story popped into her head, the love between Leo and Runya, more beautiful than a flower. She imagined the handsome Leo gently stroking the girl's hair. While she watched him with affection like he was a prince, the scene in her mind was brighter than the sun. A secret romantic meeting under the snow and the night wind. Her cheeks flushed red as she cupped her face. Lost in the illusion outside her fantasy, Leo walked ahead with his hands in his pockets, showing a bored expression while Runya followed seriously, her face hardening. Thinking about the possibility that a veteran was involved in what was happening, but the dates didn't match. That dark night had appeared days before the man arrived at the academy. Runya stopped, suspicious. Behind them, Irin appeared, exhausted, kneeling on the ground. The distance between the three was clear. Runya turned around with a worried face, surprised by the sudden appearance of the other girl. Leo, on the other hand, showed no surprise. Nervous, she started repeating that student romances were forbidden, that it was wrong for a guy and a girl to be alone. Her face turned completely red as she claimed she had seen everything, even how they left the dorm together. Runya froze while Leo scratched his head awkwardly. Not knowing what to do, Irin, full of embarrassment, kept repeating how good-looking they both were. It was weird, and she had seen a lot. Runya didn't know how to respond, her lips trembling. Leo tried to get her to clarify the situation. But before she could, something strange happened. A bony, trembling hand emerged from the ground. Everyone panicked. Leo immediately recognized the threat. It was an undead. Determined, he drew his sword. At that moment, a dark voice boomed, welcoming them to the fairy spirit forest. Leo, with a cold tone, confirmed they were advanced creatures, undead. Runya gritted her teeth in anger, not understanding where so many had suddenly appeared from. Before attacking, Leo asked if Runya was ready. She knelt and traced a magical fire circle to prepare for battle. Then Junior, full of energy, unleashed a skill, a massive storm of flames that engulfed the enemies. For a moment, the girl got distracted, proud of her feat, but the undead advanced again through the fire, causing alarm. Irin reacted quickly, stepping in front of Runya and raising her shield to block the attack. The girl stood firm, recognizing these creatures were from Belgia. No matter how strong they attacked, Irin resisted thanks to her armor. Gathering all her strength, she made a powerful leap and charged with her sword. With a clean cut, she decapitated the creature, whose remaining body was absorbed by a purple vortex. Runya clapped happily, admiring her skill. Irin shyly scratched her head, and Leo nervously assured that it was normal. Leo also felt it, surprised that she had that ability. Afterwards, Irin questioned them about why they were out so late. Runya got uncomfortable, but Leo quickly denied any suspicious connection. Runya, regaining her composure, explained they had only gone to the senior student's dorm to investigate. Irin, a bit shy and surprised, asked if that was true. Then she pointed at Leo and confidently said that if the problems were related to romance, that would keep him from focusing on his studies. She also mentioned that if that was the case, he'd have fewer rivals. She wondered why they were avoiding him so much. Then she muttered in denial, insisting it wasn't that. Irin placed a hand on her chest to express her opinion, saying Runya was the best student, and that she hoped she'd always stay the best because someday she'd become a hero. Runya was stunned hearing those words. She realized that was how Irin saw her. The advanced combat class evaluation at Seirin Academy was something she still remembered. Irin stayed silent, breathing heavy, still struggling to stay standing, holding a sword in one hand and a shield in the other right in front of her. Plus there was a shield shaped like a honeycomb standing tall. Runya blushed with excitement watching the scene unfold. Just as expected from Irin, she still stood strong among all the rookies. Only Irin could face Runya. The corner of Runya's lips curled into a slight smile, but her expression quickly shifted. She raised her hand, gritted her teeth, and cast a spell. Determined to give it her all, Irin was left speechless seeing Runya. Her pupils widened in surprise. She frowned in panic, her face turning pale with fear. After a loud explosion, a cloud of fiery dust burst out. At that moment, Runya finally understood the expression on her friend's face and why she hadn't gone to school. She closed her eyes, sighed, and thought about what happened. Then Runya gently took Irin's hand and assured her she wanted her to keep attending school because she was her friend. Irin hesitated to accept right away and asked if they were really friends since she thought Runya hated her. Runya replied with a sincere smile, reminding her they were friends and also rivals, so she hoped Irin would always face her. Irin's eyes opened with interest and she murmured in awe those words, friend and rival. Though her mood dipped for a moment, she glanced sideways at Leo with some suspicion, then pointed at both of them and asked if there was really nothing going on between them. She blushed in surprise and let out a nervous scream. Runya tried to clear things up with effort, assuring her it wasn't like that. Irin stayed still and sighed, thinking that young people really grow by facing each other. The scene shifted to a deadly forest, the cawing of crows echoing eerily. A voice from the underworld floated through the air saying they were surrounded by mages. The skeleton turned sarcastically, mentioning there were unwanted guests. A man appeared under a cloak and questioned why he had to handle this. If it wasn't the knight's job, the man took off his hood and cloak, greeting with a deep voice the Death Knight Kargor. Kargor locked his gaze on Louder, gritting his teeth in anger, advancing step by step, pronouncing each word firmly. No one could order the Death Lord's knights. Kargor wanted to use his aura to pressure Louder, scolding him for treating him like a subordinate. Louder, unfazed, raised his hand, showing his ring in response, reminding him the Death Lord had chosen him. Then he covered himself with the hood again and turned, saying once the summoning circle was done, he wouldn't need the Tartars' help anymore. He laughed sinisterly as he walked away. Kargor's eyes glowed red with cunning thoughts and replied that until then, he'd keep trusting him. The scene shifted to another forest where the full moon lit up the silent branches. Runya, walking behind Leo, asked if he thought an upperclassman was connected to the spirit forest's problems. Leo said it was just a guess and shouldn't be taken too seriously. Irin, confused, stammered, saying it seemed colder than before. Looking around, she explained they were in Belsia's cold region, but it was still very cold. Runya also felt her spirits drop, remembering something was off. Leo frowned cautiously and said he felt a curse. Then he traced a magic circle as a warning, indicating they needed to prepare before moving on. At that moment, Kiram appeared, saying this was his entrance. Shortly after, Flora showed up. Raising her hand in greeting, seeing them, Runya's face darkened with anger and she ran toward them like she wanted to confront them. Although her voice sounded sweet when naming Fiore, Runya clasped her hands anxiously, watching the little creatures above Leo's head. She wondered how something so beautiful could exist. Then Runya introduced herself as their older sister. Irin's eyes widened in amazement, wondering what those summons were. Leo pointed at Fiore, who was on his head, and introduced her as a little phoenix. Then he pointed to the other being, presenting him as the fairy prince Kiran. Irin excitedly exclaimed that it was fire that Leo had contracts with both a phoenix and a fairy. Leo coldly reminded them there was no time for chit-chat and they had to get ready. Since they were heading to the heart of the forest, the three kept moving forward, knowing what was coming would be way more dangerous. Leo swung his sword with determination and quickly took down several monsters. Runya waved her hand, launching fireballs that hit the enemies dead on. From the purple smoke rising off the defeated bodies, moving skeletons started to appear. Irin's eyes popped wide in panic as she recognized them as corpses. Runya immediately realized there had to be a necromancer nearby. Leo, with his sword hardened by flames, attacked fiercely, taking out 3 zombies at once. The flames spread from his weapon to the undead bodies, then he turned his head to look back, denying what he'd just seen. Runya still couldn't believe how an orc had turned into a bone golem. Then Leo looked at Kiram, who was touching a zombie's skull and explaining that those creatures weren't created by a necromancer. Runya was shocked and wanted to know what they really were. Leo's answer left both girls shook. It was a death curse. Runya couldn't hold back her shock and thought she'd never heard anything like it before. Irin lowered her head sadly because that curse made bodies appear nonstop all around, turning the whole place into a death zone. The image of disaster flooded Irin's mind, and the one responsible was none other than the Tartars' commander, the underworld necromancer king, named Kaiser. Fear ran through the girls as they realized that meant Tartars were planning a major attack soon. Still, they insisted they had to report to the teachers ASAP. Suddenly a strong wind picked up in the forest, making the trees whistle. Runya covered her face with her hands while Irin looked on confused. Through the thick white fog came the voice of Kargor, who introduced himself in a sinister tone, welcoming them to the land of the dead. Kargor swung his sword and charged at them. Leo calmly raised his own weapon to block him. Kargor, laughing and losing it, went full-on crazy, swearing they'd regret stepping into that cursed forest. Meanwhile, Irin and Runya covered each other, facing the undead in front of them. Leo took charge carefully, assigning tasks he'd handle. The Dark Knight Irin had to clear the path of creatures, and Runya would prepare the strongest spell she could. The 2 girls immediately agreed, determined. Kargor was surprised by Leo's decision to fight him head-on, but quickly mocked him as a naive kid. With a growl, he unleashed all his strength into his sword, wrapping it in darkness. Leo frowned, pressed his lips and channeled his secret energy into the blade, infusing it with fire until it glowed like a torch. Gathering all his strength, he launched a direct stab at Kargor. The impact forced the enemy to retreat, shocked by what he saw, a phoenix-shaped fire. However, Leo clarified it wasn't just that, because inside the sword also resonated the fire energy of the Surdinger. Kargor's steel started melting little by little under the scorching power of the attack. Confused, Kargor turned into a red whirlwind and vanished under the bloody moonlight, but soon reappeared with an army of undead behind him. His eyes locked on Leo's in disbelief, unable to understand how a first-year student could get this far. For a moment, he even felt fear seeing that golden glow radiating from his rival's eyes. Then an orange dazzling light appeared in the sky, forcing Kargor and the zombies to shrink back. A gigantic fireball floated high above Runya's handiwork, which she triumphantly hurled at the enemy. The fireball descended violently, devouring the creatures in flames under Runya's control. The destruction was total. She, with a proud face, seemed unleashed, like she'd finally shown her real power. Irin, on the other hand, paled, seeing the scale of what happened. Kiram held tightly to Leo's hair to avoid being dragged by the fire. Surprised by how brutal that spiritual power could be, the forest was left devastated, and although it seemed like the end, Leo reminded everyone that they weren't done yet, suggested chasing them down, but warned that the deeper they went, the more weird eyes were watching them from the shadows. Freaking the girls out, the place looked more and more like it was cursed by death itself. Suddenly Lauder showed up, scolding the students for daring to investigate at night without permission. Runia recognized him instantly and asked why he was there. He said he was tracking the undead. Then the young ones spilled what they'd found out. It was an ancient, super powerful curse. Lauder frowned, shocked at how serious things were. Leo explained it all started because some rookies messed with corrupted Tartarus artifacts, unleashing dark energy. Lauder was stunned. Leo pointed up to the sky, where a glow lit up a red magic circle surrounded by bones and corpses. Under the moonlight, the scene was straight up terrifying. The light seemed to pierce hearts, filling Runia and Irin with dread. Leo said that power could only come from someone who'd teamed up with Tartarus, since only dark magic or necromancy used monster flesh as a catalyst. Lauder, with a bloody hand, laughed bitterly. His look showed he'd made the call to work with that dark power, even if it made him feared and hated. Lauder lost his cool, covered his face, and gritted his teeth. He pointed at the first-year students there. And what he said next froze the two girls in horror. According to him, Lady Luna's heroic deeds and what they did here. Lauder, getting more shameless, raised his voice, claiming the council knew he was useless and didn't even know that existed. Saying he used Tartarus to reclaim his legacy wasn't a mistake, but Irin couldn't accept it and firmly rejected him. She saw it as an insult to a great hero and accused Lauder of only wanting that legacy for himself. Runia rolled up her sleeves, ready to throw down, telling Leo to get ready to handle him, since she was down to smack that disgusting face and drag him to the teachers. Before she charged, Leo called out to Runa, reminding her that from now on she had to fight like she was seriously ready to kill a superior. The two girls were shocked by that. As soon as Leo finished, Lauder summoned a sphere shooting purple lightning. In a flash, it pushed them all back with electric energy. Lauder kept firing shocks at the three while Leo raised his hand to cast magic, not forgetting to teach the others to stay calm. He explained that's just how it is facing Tartarus. Lauder rubbed his chin and smiled with interest. He was surprised a human could use primitive magic. Inside, he was uneasy but stayed calm. He just nullified a spell in a second and admitted Leo's ability to spot him as an enemy, and his combat instincts were next level. He soon noticed Irin and Runa too. If they joined the fight, things would get real dangerous. No other choice. He flicked his ring finger and the electric current surged even harder. Leo, alarmed, told the girls to duck. Lauder unleashed the Arteaga spell right where they stood. Boom! Rocks and dirt flew everywhere. Irin, without thinking, used her shield to protect Runia, pushing her down while she coughed, trying to get up. She recognized with awe that was Arteaga. Even though it was a basic spell, its power was insane. Her eyes went wide, totally stunned. Runa's eyes dilated and her face went pale with panic. In front of her, Leo collapsed exhausted. 3 purple spheres, headed straight for him under Lauder's control. Runia yelled desperately that they had to help him. Irin felt determined. Suddenly Kargar appeared in front of the two girls. His presence and voice totally dominated them. He announced this was the end of the road for them. Runia stood firm while Irin rose to cover her. Lauder lowered his head and looked at Leo, still on the ground with a mocking smirk. He asked if he had any last words before dying and accused him of being way too cocky. Leo called out clearly to Kiram. Lauder was shocked to hear that name. The purple spheres floating beside him were destroyed by Kiram exploding violently. The impact made Lauder lose his balance and crash hard to the ground. At that moment, the tables turned. Lauder, now like a demon, was weakened while Leo stood tall with eyes full of killer intent. Lauder gritted his teeth, cursed, and complained about his injured leg. His pupils turned red like he was judging the sins in front of him. He trembled in fear seeing Leo's gaze and, terrified, began to beg but didn't get the chance to finish. Leo raised his sword with determination and decapitated him. Kiram cheered, hyped that the crazy spirit had been taken down, and shouted that now it was time to crush the damn skeleton. However, before he could celebrate more, Lauder's voice rang out again, leaving everyone shook. A lightning bolt struck, startling Leo and Kiram. The Altera hadn't disappeared completely. His head reattached to his body as he spoke with disdain, calling Leo a half-breed and acknowledging he could summon magical beasts. His face was twisted on one side, transformed into a demon, and his voice sounded like it came straight from the underworld. He mocked being happy to be the one sending them to death and claimed he also possessed the power of the Death Lord. Kiram stepped back scared while Lauder spoke arrogantly, saying that with the founder, Lady Luna's power combined, he could crush arrogant kids who only trusted their talent. At that moment, he raised his hand with great force and unleashed a massive magical power, ordering Leo's death. But Leo didn't hesitate. He gripped his sword's handle tight and braced himself with all his strength. Leo thought sure that the Altera had failed to fully accept the demon's power. Then he charged forward like a whirlwind, his sword tracing an icy glow through the air. In an instant, one of Lauder's arms fell to the ground. Leo aimed again at the bleeding wound with his cold blade. Lauder's scream of pain was gut-wrenching. Leo, with a cold voice, said that those who got power through shortcuts always lacked true battle instinct. He challenged Lauder to keep regenerating, promising to cut him again and again until he ran out of energy. Lauder groaned, trying to resist, and looked ahead, wondering if the human in front of him was really his target. He decided to quickly complete the summoning circle to seek the sealed power in that land. Lauder was determined. If he could absorb that power, he'd have the advantage. Leo looked at the two down below and thought they were holding up pretty well, but He realized he had to deal with his direct enemy first. Lauder looked at his hand and wondered why it hadn't regenerated yet. Kiram pointed at Leo and both he and his rival looked that way. From the severed hand, bright red lightning began forming, drawing a strange matrix. Blood suddenly gushed from Lauder's mouth, but he gritted his teeth to bear the pain. Suddenly Lauder threw his head back and a torrent of dark blood shot out of his mouth, splattering the air. It was too late. Irin and Runya were shocked by the scene. The red fire matrix was finally complete. Kargor stood still, silently watching what emerged from the Altera's body. Slowly, a purple aura began to condense behind him. The air whipped violently, fierce gusts swept the area, and dust rose from the ground. Huge cracks appeared, spreading like a spiderweb. A gigantic hand burst out, smashing rocks and earth, creating a suffocating, deadly atmosphere. Shikamaru's eyes went wide seeing that, but Leo stayed calm. The Skeleton King was rising, one of the most powerful undead out there. A thick cloud of smoke spiraled and twisted as if something was taking shape inside. Lauder laughed like a madman as his arms slowly recovered, overflowing with power. That was the founder's strength. Leo gritted his teeth, seeing the summoning circle complete. His enemy had fully embraced dark magic. The young man leapt forward suddenly, each step pounding. Twisting and writhing like something was taking shape inside, Lauder. Rio went wild. As his arms slowly started to heal, it was overflowing with power. That was the founder's strength. Leo gritted his teeth, seeing the summoning circle complete. His enemy had fully embraced dark magic. The young man lunged forward suddenly, each step hitting so hard it shook the ground and cracked the stones, gripping his sword tight, convinced that dirty power couldn't belong to Lady Luna. Suddenly a giant hand lunged at him, trying to crush him in one hit. At the same time, a bunch of bones flew his way like deadly arrows. But Leo didn't hesitate. He took a solid stance and analyzed every move Lauder. Rio made coldly. Convinced he now had the power of the Death King, Kiram worriedly suggested retreating. That skeleton was way too strong, but Leo calmed him down, pointing out that the Skeleton King wasn't healing properly. Kiram didn't get it at first, so Leo explained the summon had been rushed, forcing a forbidden pact. The enemy didn't meet the ritual's conditions, so that creature wouldn't last long. He knew the basics of summoning. Spiritual energy was the key. Meanwhile, if they held on long enough, the power keeping that skeleton alive would run out. He decided to fight and asked Kiram for help. Kiram felt it and firmly extended both hands. Ready to team up, Leo also started casting a spell. The whole area lit up with a golden glow, radiating violent, dangerous magic. The Skeleton King watched silently, his eyes suddenly glowing red. He gripped his sword tight as a growl escaped his mouth. At that moment, Leo shot up fast. Even though there was a huge level gap, all they needed was to buy time. A mischievous grin spread across Lauder's face, and he shouted the spell as Sernia. Leo gritted his teeth in fury. Runya raised her hand and created a bright barrier to hold him back, a phoenix shield. She ordered Leo to focus on the Skeleton King. While she handled that crazed old man, Leo worried because that meant Irin would have to fight the Death Knight alone. But Runya calmly trusted her teammate fully. Irin chose to face him head-on. Kargor drew his sword and Irin raised her shield firmly. Kargor's blade came down with crushing force. His roar echoed, calling her arrogant, as he laughed fiercely for daring to face him solo. Irin doubted if she could really hold her ground, but she carefully watched every move of her opponent and suddenly shouted and charged at him. She knew if she failed, everyone was screwed. Her sword stabbed with all her might into Kargor, but he burst out laughing cruelly and countered with a devastating strike. Irin was violently thrown back, losing her shield on impact. She thought she never wanted to be a hero, but looking up and seeing Kargor smash her shield, she realized she couldn't give up. Even if she was less experienced than the other two, at least she didn't want to be dead weight. She was sure her teammates would become great heroes someday. Kargor declared he'd cut off her head and then help the necromancer. According to him, she didn't stand a chance, but Irin held her head high. Great. Heroes always had loyal companions by their side. She remembered the promise of her ancestor Sir Bella, who followed a great hero and swore loyalty. She gripped her sword's hilt tight. She must never doubt true heroes. Kargor was surprised. That conviction was the power inherited from Irin's ancient bloodline. The warrior growled, irritated by the girl's arrogance. But she was full of determination. That technique had been passed down for generations. Kargor raised his sword high and slammed it down like lightning, shouting she would die. Irin, with seemingly endless energy, lifted her weapon with a defiant yell, charging it with power that felt infinite, a vigor that refused death. The blow was so strong, Kargor's figure started fading into thin air, his body crumbling into dust bit by bit. Before disappearing completely, he weakly muttered that a Death Knight couldn't have lost. To someone like her, Irin was exhausted, her whole body trembling after that attack. She dropped to her knees, breathing hard, shoulders heavy, and her vision blurring more and more. Still, her mind was clear. She had to get up and help the others. Trying to hold herself up, her determination didn't waver. Elsewhere, Lauder smiled wickedly. He was still breathing, and a dark spell appeared in his hand, which he launched without hesitation. The energy shot forward fast, but was repelled. A figure emerged, Runya, accompanied by a huge fire turtle. With a proud gesture, she made the flames swirl and attack Lauder head-on. The flames violently engulfed him, sending him flying through the air as his body crashed to the ground. Burned and blackened, almost unrecognizable, Runya turned her head. Nothing seemed special about the scene. But she immediately stayed on guard. Lauder raised his hand, unleashing a wave of demonic energy straight at her. Leo, seeing this, gripped his sword tight and charged forward. A fierce clash erupted and black smoke covered the whole place. Kiran called out to Leo, worried if he was okay, noticing his hand was injured. But Leo didn't stop. He knew that curse was dangerous. At that moment, Fiore appeared in front of him. Leo's sword burst into flames thanks to her power completely engulfed in fire. With that boost, Leo soared into the sky and launched himself at Kargor. Runia watched with admiration. He showed no fear of death. That made him shine like a true hero. She extended her hand, creating a red-orange glow aimed at Lauder. The enemy responded coldly, dismissing the fire. However, Runia reminded him that the flame of their Rundoa family was tied to an ancient pact with the phoenix. As her words echoed, the flames intensified and the air around them turned into a blinding golden light. It was the forbidden magic of her lineage known as sacred fire. The flames engulfed everything, and even though the caster herself risked burning, Runia didn't hesitate. Lauder, still resisting, tried to seize the moment. His ring glowed with dark energy and began to slowly devour her. Runia watched alarmed but couldn't stop it. Lauder screamed in desperation until he finally vanished without a trace. The ring fell to the ground, rolling slowly. Runia, shocked, knelt down. She didn't understand what had happened. The necromancer was dead, but the skeletons were still active. The ring on the ground glowed with a sinister red. Demonic energy surged toward the Skeleton King's avatar, releasing a killer aura that chilled the air. Leo recognized that energy. Up high, sitting on a throne, a hooded figure appeared. Though his face was hidden, his cruel smile was clear. Leo understood the underworld's energy was present. The Skeleton King's power was flowing through that demonic energy. With calculated moves, the Skeleton King's avatar Kaiser headed toward the Fairy Kingdom's main gate. Leo reacted immediately, calling for Kiram's help. The Skeleton King raised his sword and clashed it against Leo's. The fight was brutal. Every hit made the ground shake. The protective shield began to crack. The Skeleton King attacked hard, sending Leo flying through the air. The blow created a shockwave that shook the entire place. Runia and Irin called out desperately, fearing for his life. But Leo got up, looked around, and was shocked by the desolation surrounding him. Now he was in the Fairy Kingdom. A memory flashed through his mind. He thought about handing a dagger to Belcia. She looked at him confused, thinking the weapon was useless and worthless. But Leo knew how many life-or-death battles he'd survived with it. From a distance, a group called him. It was time to leave with one last act of affection. Leo gently ruffled Belcia's hair, leaving behind that silent promise. Then he raised his arm and walked away with the group. Leo watched him leave in silence, muttering bitterly that the kid was way too arrogant. His eyes fixed on the dagger he held. He clearly remembered how that young guy said he didn't need it. Suddenly the blade began to glow with a bluish light. Leo stared in awe as the glow grew and the magic sealed inside was unleashed. The light wrapped around him, blurring his silhouette like he was dissolving into energy. He then understood that power had been sealed in the weapon for thousands of years, waiting for its true owner. That certainty filled him with satisfaction. The weapon had recognized its rightful master, Leo himself. He measured the amount of energy now surrounding him, recalled his fight with the Skeleton King, and began calculating which spell he'd use to finish his opponent as fast as possible. A slight smile appeared on his face at that moment. Runia and Irin watched him, worried. The massive amount of magic energy he'd released left them trembling. A power circle formed with such force that both looked up in desperation. Runia thought if he really was the one who made a pact with the Phoenix, then that was just a glimpse of what he should be capable of. Leo stepped forward with calm strides. Around him, the space started filling with shining stars, even though it wasn't the true form of the spell. For those young ones, that was a priceless gift. Irin remembered reading in an ancient book about a stellar spell capable of dyeing the whole world with the light of the stars, the most powerful spell, Apocalypse. The stars flew fiercely toward Kargor, catching him completely off guard. When it was all over, Leo calmly stepped back after settling the conflict. He extended his palm and Kirami appeared, immediately roaring with fury, claiming he'd be the one to finish off the enemy. However, Leo stayed chill and assured that everything was over. Kiran was left baffled, not understanding when it had all happened. Then Leo ordered him to go get his wings first. Suddenly, Kiran remembered and took off flying in a rush. Runia and Irin called out to Leo, worried, wanting to know if he was okay. Irin, with a weak smile, confessed she trusted they'd get through the situation. Runia, full of curiosity, wondered what kind of magic that had been, since it seemed like something straight out of a legend. Leo looked at the dagger, convinced the power it gave off was linked to the ancient hero. Irin confirmed it in awe, believing it was a legendary relic. Runia suspected that Tartarus had their eyes on that place precisely because of that object. At that moment, Kiram shouted excitedly. He'd found the wings his dad had hidden and asked for help to free them. Leo got ready to do it calmly, but Runia stopped when she saw something else, a fragment from the hero's records. At that moment, they were taken into the memories of a hero. Runia, confused, didn't understand what it meant. Suddenly, a mocking voice echoed, saying Leo intended to face Erebos. The sarcastic tone called him crazy, but at the same time admitted that challenge was perfect. The echo's laugh boomed loudly, making it clear they understood what Tartarus was really after. At that moment, a young woman named Luna appeared with a radiant smile. She declared she'd become someone who'd shine like the stars in the night sky and make them proud to have her in their squad. That moment was etched as a fragment of Kyle's heroic journey. Alright folks, that wraps up Season 1. Thanks for sticking around, and catch you in the next resume.